Welcome to my channel. If you're looking for an amazing novel, visit my Patreon page. Your support will help turn this story into an exciting audiobook. Join me on this journey. Overlord, Reborn as an NPC. Chapter 1, Death and Rebirth. A/N. This is a future note by me as of Chapter 25. This story was inspired by Yellowness on fanfiction.net by MidasMan. At the time of writing, I used his FIC as a baseline for mine. This is why the first 6 chapters are pretty much copy/paste and not something I'm not proud of, as I didn't put my own spin on things. If you can bear those chapters and push through, I really do thank you from the bottom of my heart. It does get better and the plot begins to change once you get past it. With that in mind, I hope you enjoy the fanfic. Narrator's POV. Life after death. It's a thought that goes through everyone's minds at some point in their lives. Do you get judged and sent to heaven or hell? Perhaps you go through a cycle of reincarnation like in Hinduism. Maybe there is no life after death. You'll just cease to exist. Those were some of the questions that ran through the head of Ajax Dalton, a person currently on the verge of death due to a bad gunshot wound. The reason? He was a soldier serving the U.S. military who was sent to the front lines of the Russo-Ukrainian War. Yes, an all-out war broke out between the two countries due to increasing tensions over the area. Ajax was one of the few unlucky people to have already been stationed in Ukraine before the war started. When the Russians launched the first barrage of missiles and troops, they were caught off guard. Of course, Ajax didn't want to die without a fight and fought with ferocity. He shot anything that wasn't an ally with his standard, trusty M4 carbine. Alas, as he was in a shootout, he felt a sharp pain in his stomach. Shit. He fell to the ground, unable to stand due to the loss of energy. He attempted to quickly take off his gear to look at the wound and reduce the blood loss. The red liquid was already spewing out like a mini fountain as he slowly started to feel nauseous. Fuck. He internally screamed, quickening the pace at which he ripped his clothes off his body. He unbuckled his gear. Then, Ajax undid his shirt. Blood and sweat covered his toned muscles from staying in shape. He looked at the wound and sighed with regret. Damn it, the wound's too deep. I have no clue where my squad is thanks to the fucking walkie-talkie not working. I'll try and reduce the blood loss, not sure if it keeps me alive though, Ajax thought. He was already using his ripped shirt and some of his gear to add pressure on the wound. However, it was too late. Ajax had lost so much blood by the time he saw the wound. At this rate, he'd only have a few minutes left. Maybe it hit a more major organ such as his lung. Ajax was no biologist or doctor, but if so, he assumed 1 minute maximum. Either way, he'd be dead. Ajax laid on the ground, which was covered in his blood, taking deep breaths in and out. He thought about many things, such as reflecting on his life. He was a young adult that turned 20 not long ago. He was the type of guy that seemed to be well off in life and fun to be around. He had good grades, was well built, smart, but wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty or be vocal about something he didn't like. He liked playing games and watching anime in his spare time. But he was no otaku, as he owned no figures or posters. But he did read light novels or manga of some anime. Ajax was also fairly good looking when not fighting for his life. Blonde hair of medium length gelled to the back and almost perfect skin complexion if you don't include his scars from battle. While not model levels of handsome, enough to make a girl's heart skip a beat, Ajax's vision started to blur as his breathing was slowed down. The sounds of explosions and gunfire, previously loud and unbearable to hear, start to deafen. I guess I'll die here. Fuck. I wish I could say goodbye to my mom. God bless her soul. My friends too. They were cool. His body felt cold even though the fire from explosions kept the area he was in hot. The solar rays of the sun already made his previously blurry vision impossible to see. The wound throbbed and pulsated with pain. He could still feel blood slowly ooze out of the layers of cloth and onto the dirt floor where he lay. I wonder what death is like. It's so dark. Ajax thought in a more calm tone than his previous thoughts, full of anger and frustration. The pain slowly got less and less painful, making his muscles less tense. Ajax could feel a finger or two still twitch, signaling he wasn't dead yet. When is this going to end? He thought. Will I go to heaven or hell? Probably hell. I've killed people and have done some weird shit in my life. He continued to talk to himself in his head. It felt like an eternity, just laying on the ground. He couldn't feel his fingers move anymore, or the blood drip down his skin. Yet, he was still conscious, thinking about his life and death. Why, am I still here? Am I dead, or is my mind making up things? Ajax thought. Is this the famed moment where someone sees a light at the end of a tunnel? I heard from a talk by Neil deGrasse Tyson that it's just the lights above an operating room. But why is nothing here? Ajax asked himself. Is this death? It surely had to. He couldn't feel his body anymore. He couldn't see or smell or move. Everything was pure black like the night sky. Yet, if this was death, why could he still think? Shouldn't death be the lack of consciousness? This is bizarre, he thought. Ajax didn't know how long he had been in this void. However, he did hear a faint conversation. It was like trying to hear someone whisper when they were in another room. You knew people were talking but you couldn't make out anything audible. Did paramedics arrive? Am I in a hospital of sorts? Ajax pondered. He tried to zone in on the conversation. To Ajax, it sounded like two excited people talking about something. He could tell from the different changing tones and pitches. All of a sudden, Ajax was blinded by a sudden intense light. He couldn't open his eyes even if he wanted to, as his eyes hadn't adjusted to the sudden shift in location. He felt as if his ears wanted to bleed from the sudden influx of sounds. Ajax's senses were overwhelmed. It took a couple of seconds for his brain to get used to and process all the sudden information. Although he still had a pounding headache, it was bearable for the time being. Ajax slowly opened his eyes. He first expected to be in a hospital, either back in his military base or back in the United States, possibly with his mother and comrades next to his recovery bed to greet him after surgery. But that did not happen in the slightest. He wasn't lying on the ground where he was shot or on a hospital bed. Instead, he was standing and in a neutral pose, similar to how a character poses when customizing them in a video game. He didn't even see a gun wound on his body. He went to move his arm but couldn't. He tried a little harder, yet he still couldn't move his arm, let alone his entire body. It was as if his arms were out of his control. What the fuck? Move. He tried to shout. It was then Ajax realized he couldn't move his mouth. He could breathe just fine but couldn't say any audible words, as if his mouth was sewed shut. He started to freak out but remembered from his military training to keep calm and analyze the situation. Okay, calm down, Ajax. Let's see here, you were in a war, got shot, entered a void of sorts and woke up here. Is this all a hallucination created by my brain? Maybe I was reborn? But that doesn't explain why I can't physically move any part of my body. Ajax thought of some possible conclusions. Ajax stopped thinking for a moment and looked around the room he was in. From where Ajax was standing, the room seemed to consist of 2 levels. However, there could be more that he couldn't see. The area was devoid of any furniture minus a mirror on the wall and a table with a few oddities and trinkets he couldn't recognize. What caught his eye was the person in the mirror, which Ajax thought was himself. However, he looked completely different. Although Ajax was a fairly handsome person, he was nowhere near model levels of hot. But when looking at the mirror, he swore he saw a god of sorts. Is that me? I look so much better than before. Was I really reborn? Ajax thought. He had to have been reborn. The face and body of the man were well proportioned. Visible muscles that could put a Greek god to shame, perfect skin complexion with no scars, and messy blonde hair. The man in the mirror, or Ajax's new body, was wearing something quite odd. It was something a cosplayer would wear, or a Halloween costume. His costume consisted of all black shoes, pants, and a shirt a noble would wear. Over that, he wore a robe that went down to the floor with a flared-up collar covered in black feathers and a hoodie that was down. On his robe, there were some patches of different shades of gray that were sewed on it, probably to cover up some holes. On his hands, there were unknown gauntlets that were colored dark gold. Ajax was going to continue to look at himself and the area around him when he heard footsteps from outside the room he was in. Somebody is coming. Hey, help! Why can't I move? Ajax tried to shout again but couldn't for the life of him. The door suddenly burst open. The heavy wooden door creaked loudly as they opened, revealing 2 inhuman figures. Although one seemed to have human proportions, the other figure was more of a monster. The being that had human proportions seemed to be a birdman, something that came out of a fantasy book. The birdman had majestic white feathers all over his body with trims of gold to complement the look. In fact, all he was wearing was gold. Gold gauntlets, gold leg guards, gold mask, gold robes, gold everything. The birdman also had 4 wings with the same color design. While you could describe the birdman to be an angel of sorts, the total opposite could be said by the other person. The other person barely had any human features. There were no visible facial features such as eyes, mouth, nose, and ears. This thing had long tentacles that extended down from the side of its head to where its knees would be. The same could be said about its fingers. Each finger seemed to be as long as a forearm. It reminded Ajax of a squid or octopus. The eldritch squid horror wore pure black, contrasting the gold of the birdman. Black straps, buckles, and chains tied across his body with minuscule trims of gray. It also had a large black robe, making it look more intimidating. To say Ajax was shocked would be an understatement. A part of him felt fear. That was a lie. Every fiber of his being was screaming at him to run. He tried to but couldn't move. No matter how hard he tried, his body didn't listen. Okay, calm down, Ajax. Maybe these things aren't here to hurt you. However, they do look familiar. Where have I seen something like this? Fuck, my mind is still fuzzy. Ajax thought, trying to remember why these things reminded him of something. It was at the tip of his tongue. Okay, Tabula, you've been bragging all the holy shit? Did you make a male NPC? The birdman exclaimed, shocked by his friend's creation. That's right, Pararonkino. This is our newest NPC of Nazarick, Citronidas. The eldritch horror, now identified as Tabula, excitedly exclaimed. Nazarick, Tabula, Pararonkino? Where have I heard those names? Ajax thought. Oh, I really like Sidon Citrus Cypress. Fuck. Why is that name so hard to pronounce? Pararonkino said with frustration and annoyance. My name is Citronidas. Ajax wondered, listening to the conversation. I know. The name is hard to pronounce at first. But, it's thematic. It's a term of alchemy. Nigradu is first. Then albedo. And then, this. I won't break the theme for no reason. Tabula said firmly. Theme. The birdman questioned. The words don't even sound related. He finished. It's not my fault how the magnum opus's 3rd stage is called Citronidas. Tabula sighed. I'm guessing you made the NPC male because the name doesn't match the first 2 NPCs you've named so far along with Project Roberta, the one consuming all Nazarik's resources. The Birdman rhetorically asked. NPCs? Nazarik. Ajax was confused until it dawned on him. Holy shit. I've reincarnated into the Overlord anime and as an NPC of Nazarik. This can't be real, none of this can be real? Fuck. Let me out for fuck's sake. It was to no avail. Ajax had no mouth, yet he must scream. Precisely. Tabula simply stated. Well, I do like his outfit. Very cool, dark and chuyuni. The Birdman complimented the look of the NPC. Well, I still haven't put on his mask and hat yet. Tabula corrected his friend. Then put it on. I need to see how he looks. Pararankino begged. Tabula sighed, agreeing to his friend's request. He tapped some buttons on a hologram screen as a mask appeared on Ajax's face, completing his look. The mask was that of a plague doctor which was long and white with black trimmings. Why is this mask on me? Take it off. Ajax was enraged as his face was covered up. Oddly, even with such a mask on, it didn't reduce his sight. I went with a plague doctor style because firstly, it pretty much suits the whole alchemy/doctor theme I was going for. Besides, I think the outfit creates an unsettling feeling. Nigredo is visual horror, albedo inspires lust. Citronidas will be the horror of mystery and the unknown. He keeps his identity hidden to all but a select few. Tabula exclaimed. Sheesh, he looks badass. However, I do have my suggestions I want you to hear. Pararankino said, making Tabula sigh in annoyance. What? He asked, fed up from his friend's mischief. Turn the man into a very hot girl. Denied. The Birdman's request was quickly denied. When you do turn him into a girl, will you go for a MILF aesthetic, or lowly aesthetic? Pararankino asked, clearly ignoring his friend's statement from earlier. Neither. Tabula comically shouted. Why not? I am giving perfectly valid reasons as a man of culture. Pararankino retorted. You think with your penis too much? Tabula sighed yet again at his friend's suggestions. Anyways, unless you're going to keep on asking me about turning Citronidas into a girl, you can leave. Tabula gave a little ultimatum, to which the Birdman agreed to the former statement. Ajax listened to the antics of the 2 players in front of him. Quite fed up and not in the best of moods. Although he was a soldier and knew how to keep a calm mind in any situation, he was losing his cool. Ajax wanted to move, wanted to break free from his invisible shackles. But, couldn't. Fine, as a man of culture, I will take the higher ground and sincerely apologize from the bottom of my heart. Pararankino sarcastically said. To which Tabula ignored. Jokes aside, what's his race and build? The Birdman asked, this time more serious about the topic. Well, he is Nazarik's best alchemist, of course. However, Tabula was cut off by Pararankino. Best? But aren't you an alchemist? Surely you can be better. The Birdman said, clearly confused from what his friend said. Yeah, I know. In terms of alchemy, he is better than me? This is because of his race homunculus and how many levels of alchemy I spent on him. Tabula said. How many levels did you spend on? The Birdman asked. Tabula thought for a bit before answering. 60 levels. He finished. Jesus Christ, that sounds so inefficient. What is so important for you to keep him? We need those NPC levels to create other NPCs. While I admit that having an alchemist for Nazarik is useful, we do have you. What can handsome blonde do that you can't? Pararankino gave his thoughts. That's quite simple. Prepare for your mind to be blown. Tabula said, making mini jazz hands. Tabula tapped some more buttons on the floating screen. Strangely enough, Ajax was able to understand what it said, even though he only knew English. Can I understand what the text says because of a skill I have? Ajax wondered. Tabula gave Ajax some materials to transmute with the trading function of Yggdrasil. Ajax was resisting as usual but couldn't do anything. Because he was an NPC, he had to transmute whatever the players wanted. Ajax's body started to move without his volition. What? Why am I moving? Stop. Ajax tried to resist but no matter how hard he tried to thrash, he couldn't do anything. It was like someone possessed his body. He couldn't control his actions. Unwillingly, he raised his arms as it started to glow a bright blue color before mixing some ores into some vials and heating them. He didn't know what he was doing but he couldn't complain. He was a mannequin being forced to move, like a puppet on strings. Transmuting silver ore to adamantite ore. Oh, that ain't bad. While it would save us some Yggdrasil coins, it wouldn't be Pararankino stopped talking when Tabula tapped his virtual shoulder. Just watch this. He simply said, giving Ajax more materials and tapping more buttons on the floating hologram. Transmuting adamantite ore to silver star ore. Pararankino froze out of pure surprise and gulping his virtual saliva that collected in his mouth. Tabula giggled at his friend's reaction. It was understandable. Prismatic ores were a priceless treasure even greater than adamantite. Comparing the worth of both ores was like comparing Play-Doh to stainless steel. That's Citronidas's hermetic class. Holy shit. That was all that Pararankino said. How did you figure this out? Screw that though, how has nobody figured this out? He yelled, turning to Tabula and shaking his shoulders back and forth like a cartoon character. Do you know of the guild called Prismatic Forge? The guild that claims that their base is on a prismatic mine? Tabula asked. Yeah. Isn't that a homunculi onl hold up? Pararonkino stopped to think for a moment. What a coincidence, right? A homunculus-only guild that required you to spec into alchemy. Tabula knowingly replied. Holy shit. We can blackmail the Prismatic Forge Guild into selling prismatic ore to us at better rates. Pararonkino exclaimed. I know, right? I'm gonna tell Mominga this soon. I can't wait to see his reaction. Ha ha ha. Tabula laughed. That means we can finish Robeda's build? We need the prismatic ore to create the caloric stone? Wouldn't this also mean that Ulbert's attempted world item can also be made? Revelation upon revelation kept rolling through the Birdman's head. Shit, I have no idea myself. Either way, this is a game changer. Tabula exclaimed. Anyways, I gotta go to bed. Work and all that. Tabula said sadly. Pararonkino huffed. Well, it is late. I should get some rest. See ya tomorrow, tentacle hentai. The Birdman said quickly before logging off. Welp, I guess I should put some stuff in the oven, thought Tabula, pressing some buttons on the floating screen again. Suddenly, Ajax's body started to move again. Damn it. Ajax sighed. Tabula teleported out of the room before logging off, leaving Ajax to transmute all the materials. When will this suffering end? Transmuting copper ore to silver ore to mithril ore to celestial uranium X100. Ajax watched as his body moved on its own. His hand took a book from a nearby shelf. His other hand poured a vial into another, slightly larger vial. He lit up a flame under an unknown pot of sorts. They were pre-programmed movements made by the developers. How long will I be forced to do this task? When will I be able to rest? Fuck, I need information. Ajax grew irritated, but there was nothing he could do. He could only wait until Ajax was all alone, stuck to perform the task presented until completion. Transmuting copper ore to silver ore. Please, make it stop. Chapter 2, The Passage of Time. A/N, this is a future note by me as of Chapter 25. This story was inspired by Yellowness on fanfiction.net by MidasMan. At the time of writing, I used his FIC as a baseline for mine. This is why the first 6 chapters are pretty much copy/paste and not something I'm not proud of, as I didn't put my own spin on things. If you can bear those chapters and push through, I really do thank you from the bottom of my heart. It does get better and the plot begins to change once you get past it. With that in mind, I hope you enjoy the fanfic. Ajax's POV. I raged for an unknown amount of time, being forced to transmute different materials for hours after Tabula left. Time seemed to blur for me as my awareness ebbed and flowed. I was only awake when I was being used for some task or edited by one of the guild members, or simply summoned. After a short while away from them, and given nothing to do, I would sleep until the next interaction happened. Being awake or sleep had both its advantages and drawbacks. On one hand, I need information about myself and the outside world. Stuff such as my classes, lore, and the other NPCs of Nazarick would be important to know. My mere existence changes how things play out. Nazarick never had an alchemist NPC, which is the reason why Ins, currently Mominga, kept Enfiria Bearer under his protection. That's what I believe anyway. However, being in sleep mode lets time pass faster. What could be days of inactivity would be the blink of an eye for me. The closer I am until the game shut down, the closer I'll be to finally having free will. For a time, I went through the stages of grief. Not in any particular order: denial of my situation, anger as to why this happened to me, sadness at the futility of it all, bargaining with any higher power that would deliver me from this living hell, and eventually, acceptance that I was stuck here. There is only so long a person can repeat just wake up before reality sets in. Reality? What a joke. This was Overlord. The light novel/anime from the real world is about a gamer otaku who gets transported to a new world with his guild base full of NPCs. They find themselves in a world wholly unprepared for them. After a series of goofy, from the audience's perspective, series of events, Ins embarks on a campaign of world conquest. It was funny. It was serious. It was entertaining. And now, it was real. This is Nazarick, the home base of Ins Oolgown. Ins is still just plain old Mominga, the guild master of Ins Oolgown and its 40 other members. Naturally, I couldn't show any of this. My new form was that of a puppet on tight strings. I could take no action without prompting from any player. I have no control over myself in any way. These people had taken everything from me, knowingly or otherwise. My entire existence twisted beyond anything I could ever imagine. I was no longer human. Hell, I was no longer a living being. Just a bunch of ones and zeros in a program. All that being said, there is still a glimmer of hope for me. The new world. This tomb and all of its inhabitants would be taken to a new world and given sentience. That was my lifeline if there ever was one. But seeing how the whole guild is together now, and that the story began with Ins, now Mominga, being the last member of Ins Oolgown, I fear I might have to wait for quite some time. I have no idea how long I'll last. For now, all I could do was wait. Forced into the role of a glorified vending machine. So Tabula stopped talking to you for a while. Item created Titanbane. Yeah, he just can't take a joke. Item created Titanbane. Now that you say it, it does sound kind of silly. Item created Titanbane. I know, right? It's just a throwaway line in Shaltair's bio. Not like I told him he needed to write the same thing in Handsome Plague Doctor's bio so they would match. Item created Titanbane. Well, what did you write exactly? Because I do know you have a habit of going a bit far in your descriptions. Item created Titanbane. Yeah, I kind of understand that. But this was different. I mean, I'm not against writing that relationship. I mean, I did give her the brides. But looking at the two of them, I think it would be more wholesome than anything else. Item created Titanbane. You didn't answer the question, Pararonkino. What did you write in her bio? Item created Titanbane. Well, are you gonna tell me or what? Item created Titanbane. Look, if you want to know, I just wrote that she wants to be Citrinidas's wife. I mean, how can that be considered anything but wholesome, I ask you? The moment that these two see each other in the upcoming meeting of NPCs, it shall be love at first sight. If only Citrinidas was a girl. Yuri is the best kind of love. Item created Titanbane. Wait, that doesn't sound, oh shit. I wonder how long it has been since I was transported here. Time flowed strangely when there were no clocks or indications of date. However, I did notice the increase of players growing within the base. So, I assume we're still in the heyday of In's Olgaun. Meaning, I'm stuck here for quite some time. I was eventually introduced to the other NPCs. It felt quite refreshing to exit the alchemy lab I inhabited for what felt like an eternity. Saying introduced implies we talked amongst ourselves. No, not so much a meet and greet, but more of a fashion show. Right now, the players were introducing their NPCs to each other. They all gave their thoughts and compliments on looks and builds. This is good, I can finally see what my build is and gain more information. I thought to myself. At least I don't have to make shit. There was Touch Me's Sabas, the calm butler. Albert's Demiurge, the archdevil with a scorpion tail in a striped orange suit. I noticed the young twin dark elves Aura and Mare, both cross-dressing. Momengaz Pandora's actor was not here for long, the good-natured teasing from his guildmates made him dismiss that NPC rather quickly. Ah, there's the alchemist NPC. The goat demon with a toe fat exclaimed. If it weren't for him, I'd never be able to get all the costly materials to attempt the Armageddon evil experiment I've been working on. Sadly, it only came up as a divine class item. Albert finished with a tint of sadness. Great, another aspect of the future has already changed. I thought. Tabula. He called out. You have to show me his build? Maybe what's also under the mask? Albert asked. The other players gave glances to Tabula, seeing what he would say. Yeah, Tabula. Show Shaltir what's under the mask? As his wife, she must know. Pararonkino jokingly said, making Tabula sigh. I'll have you know that I will change Citrinidas's lore because of you. Tabula said, walking towards me to reveal both stats and identity. Before I reveal what's under the mask, Buku, are you ready? Tabula asked with a teasing tone. Ready to see your creation's face? Please, like it would do anything to me. The gelatinous slime rebuked. Well, if you say so. Tabula said. He inputted some commands and revealed both my face and stats for everyone in the room to see. When the mask was revealed, loud gasps could be heard. Ah, handsome boy. The red slime was the first to say something. Why, if only I had the talent to design characters like that, Tabula, said the guild leader. Humph, Tabula huffed. There is a difference between art and giving your NPC a bowling ball ass head. Tabula said, piercing a non-existent arrow through the skeleton's heart. For a moment, I swear I could see a glimmer within Shalter's eyes and a change of hue on her cheeks. That can't be good. I thought to myself. Something similar also happened with the few Pleiades maids that were stationed in the meeting room. So many troubles. I need information. Damn, even though he specs into alchemy, the magic he can use makes him the strongest NPC magic caster, but nowhere near the big four in terms of raw combat. Albert gave his thoughts. Yo, Tabula went ham with the lore. Punidomo exclaimed. Okay, that's something new. I thought happily. It's good to know where my boundaries lie. But, to my displeasure, my creator closed the NPC editing panel just as quick as he opened it. Shit. All I know is that I'm a mysterious NPC that never shows his face. I also know that I'm Nazaryk's de facto expert on anything magic related. Though not the best, that should be enough to get by when I arrive in the new world. I thought, trying to focus on the brighter side. The players continued to talk to each other about various things. Stuff like the outside world, which I found interesting. I knew from the anime and light novels that their future was bleak. You need air filters around at all times and there are harsh work hours, borderline slavery. Even though being stuck here is no good, I don't think living in the outside world from where this game was made would be good either. Poor Hiro. He wasn't kidding when he mentioned that his job was killing him. I thought, making me put aside my anger and feel sympathy for the man. As a former military soldier, even though I just turned 20, I saw some fucked up shit. The outside world sounds like a hellhole. I continued to think. Soon, the meeting was eventually stopped and they went back to playing the game. I was sent back to my alchemical lab to make more items per usual. Speaking of the alchemical lab, many things have changed. From its previous dull colors and rooms devoid of basically everything, items and furniture quickly filled the space. Although most were props such as furniture and chests, they'll become real in the new world. From magical books from the game and theories crafted by my creator, to magical artifacts. From scrolls to samples of every resource in Yggdrasil. Even septic tanks that displayed exotic and rare creatures from the game. It was a sight to behold. It truly did have everything. There were multiple rooms connected by compartments filled to the brim with everything magic related. The place was lit by candles that emanated a yellow/orange that gave a home-like feel to the place. What was also interesting was that Tabula created new NPCs for me to command. They were quite similar to the homunculus maids of Nazarick, except instead of cooking they helped around the alchemy lab classes such as scholars, herbalists, you get the picture. However, as a 20-year-old male at heart, I must say they were very beautiful. Even with their plague doctor outfits, they would be at least an 8.5/10 on the hot/sexy scale from my old world. I'm not sure of their names yet, but having extra work around the place when transported would be useful. They, along with myself, have personal sleeping quarters connected to the alchemical lab, although not as extravagant as mine. They were still decent enough to get a good night's rest. Sleep. I remembered the feeling with fond memories. How'd I wish to experience proper sleep again. I've seen what my room is like once or twice. Although it did have a bed, it was more of a Gothic Victorian study filled with all manners occult artifacts that just happened to have a bed in the corner. Again, just another set of props for me to stand around and look pretty. Nice and expensive looking Victorian-styled props, but that's all they were. Just props. A bed I could never sleep in. A closet filled with mysterious and Gothic outfits I could never change into. A bookshelf with texts I could physically never read or pick up. Sofas, chairs, and a table all around a fireplace. A grand yet old-looking piano that I could never play. Even had an old-fashioned music player that played ominous yet classical music on loop. You'd expect the alchemical room to be some dark and creepy lair with my whole aesthetic going on. However, with my creator's love for contradictions, it was to be expected. God, I wonder what contradictions he made in my lore. I thought with a heavy sigh. This brought another issue, the flavor text aspect of the game. Normally, flavor text such as making an NPC's description would be harmless in a game like Yggdrasil. After all, who'd expect the game to become real? Let's say for example that some player made the description of an NPC to be a sadist. While harmless here, they'd become a sadist in the new world when transported. Factors such as race, jobs, racial buffs, and debuffs are all taken accounted for. I wonder if I'll lose my humanity just like what happened to Ins in the series. No, I won't let that happen. I thought to myself. I won't become a twisted being in this inhumane tomb. I'll never allow myself for that to happen. I continued to think, making tear scrolls as I thought of the future. What's interesting is the whole alchemy process. Some items took seconds, others minutes, and others hours. I remembered a time when I had to make a potion called Dragon's Spitfire and Messe. That shit took 1.5 hours to make and I had to make 54 of them. I had to continuously make that for over 3 days. But, I couldn't argue. Like a good puppet, I obeyed. I've had to do this countless times as the world seemingly went around me without a care for my plight. Item created greater health potion. So, he decided to leave, huh? Item created greater health potion. Yeah, works caught up to Punito. He left his items with Momonga. Item created greater health potion. Reminds me, I have work too. The boss keeps on piling work on me. I don't think I can continue playing much longer. Item created greater health potion. You got a point there, comrade. I had to get another air filter. The old one broke. Item created greater health potion. Oof, that's gotta be a dent in your wallet, huh? Item created greater health potion. Yeah, my yearly bonus, all gone. Item created greater health potion. I think In's owl gown is in decline now. Some of my regulars have stopped showing up such as Whiterim, Bell River to name a few. To be honest, a part of me misses them. Only a part, though. They're all distinctive enough. Physically, I mean. Why pay attention most of the time when your body is on autopilot? Technically, I have no frame of reference to the passage of time, given the whole lack of awareness when nobody is around. For all I know, it could have been hours, days, weeks, or months between the times I am aware. Though, there are still people using my talents for potion making. Just the other day, a group of people, led by Momonga, came in to get some potions. Powerful ones of fire resistance. Then, they all left. Seconds later, they all talked about what they learned about those fire resistance potions they used last night. Honestly, I couldn't be happier. The fewer people that are in the guild, the closer I'll get to the new world, thus, gaining my freedom once more. I mean, I hope to gain my freedom and not the whole worship the last supreme being ordeal. But being in control of my body, I couldn't wait. Item created fire flask. Item created fire flask. Item created fire flask. Is there even a point in coming now? Create item ice flask x5. Item created ice flask. Item created ice flask. Item created ice flask. Maybe this time. Item created ice flask. Item created ice flask. I think the end is nigh. For some time now, I've only seen Momonga. Not even my creator Tabula shows up anymore. Just Momonga. He comes into my lab alone, gives me orders, complains to himself that nobody comes anymore. So, why bother? Them argues that if someone does come back, he ought to have everything is ready, just in case. Then, he'd walk out and I'd go to sleep. He'd do this over and over and over again. Honestly, just like Hero, I kind of felt bad for the guy. He'd complain about the acid rain that melted through his apartment's power lines. He'd talk about how he got lucky to afford a pay raise to afford synth meat for dinner. How he was forced to work unpaid overtime, but was glad he wasn't fired afterwards. There was rampant corruption in every corner. An ongoing corporate war between a pair of neighboring archaeologies that resulted in actual bombings of civilian targets. Eco-terrorists, broken air filters and so on. Like, holy shit. The real world outside the game sounds hellish. No wonder why so many people spend what little money they have left on video games. Still, I can't wait to get my body back. Just a little longer. Item created greater potion of invisibility. Item created greater potion of invisibility. As the last rounds of potions finished, Mominga swiftly took them from my inventory. Unlike every other time, he didn't leave immediately. Instead, he wandered around the lab for a while, looking at the trinkets scattered across the place. After a minute, he shook his head. This place was the pride of Tabula. You were the pride of Tabula, even though he never said he had favorites. I should get ready. Even if only a few show up, everything needs to be perfect. For the last day. Wait, did he say, last day? Is it time? Will I finally be free? I mean, it has been quite some time since anyone other than Mominga has shown up. But, I didn't think time would pass so quick. My sense of time has been fucked up so much, I thought. For the first time in a while, I felt something. Anticipation? Joy? I didn't know. Mominga looked at me for a moment, thinking of something. Unlike the real world, you should at least have the decency to pass on in your room. Not a factory line, he said to me, putting in new commands on the console. Before he dismissed the console, I was moving. I turned my back to the player and walked, rather marched, to my room. The door to my room promptly opened as I crossed the threshold and shut just as quickly as I entered. And so I stood there alone. Sound played softly in the background. How long is this going to take? I sighed, breathing in the air. Suddenly, my mind went into a screeching halt. I was breathing? Was I free? I could feel my muscles tense as my fingers twitched. Before I knew it, I was on the floor, crying my heart out. I'm free. After so long, I'm free. I tried to collect my emotions together but continued to cry. After what felt like hours, I wiped my tears and stood up. I need to prepare. Chapter 3, Testing Boundaries. A/N, this is a future note by me as of Chapter 25. This story was inspired by Yellowness on fanfiction.net by MidasMan. At the time of writing, I used his FIC as a baseline for mine. This is why the first 6 chapters are pretty much copy/paste and not something I'm not proud of, as I didn't put my own spin on things. If you can bear those chapters and push through, I really do thank you from the bottom of my heart. It does get better and the plot begins to change once you get past it. With that in mind, I hope you enjoy the fanfic. Citrinidas's POV. Freedom. I never imagined the day when I can finally move my own body. I thought to myself, softly closing my eyes as a few tears fell down my cheek. At first, I wanted my first act of freedom to curl up onto my bed and cuddle a pillow. But, this was Nazareth. A dangerous place filled with monsters. I can't act weak. Not in this place anyways. I also need to prepare for the upcoming shitstorm. I thought to myself, wiping my tears away. I'm no longer Ajax Dalton, as much as I want to be him again. I'm the alchemist plague Dr. Ovens Oolgown. I'm the mysterious NPC that never shows his face. I'm the strongest NPC magic caster. I'm Citrinidas. If I'm gonna survive in this place, I need to blend in, I thought. Firstly, I need to put on my plague doctor mask and hat I took off. My creator wanted me to embody the horror of the unknown and mystery. As such, I keep this mask on my face at all times unless when I'm eating, when I take a shower or when I sleep, all things I do alone. Other than that, the mask stays on 24/7. I do have to admit, the mask is pretty badass and unsettling. The mask itself is about 3/4 the length of the average human arm. The end of the mask was as sharp as a kitchen knife. There were no straps that held the mask to the face due to the use of Yggdrasil magic. The mask was pure white at the front and turned to a dark white/light gray at the end of the mask. Around the eye sockets were trims of black lines. When the mask was put on, the eye sockets glowed a faint white light that contrasted the black trimmings. What was also interesting was that the mask didn't disrupt my vision at all. When wearing a plague doctor mask, you'd expect to see the long beak within your field of vision. Along with the glowing eye sockets that made me more ominous, the mask should have been useless as you couldn't see jack shit. Is it because the mask is a magic artifact? Most likely, I thought to myself. Magic brought up another issue. The issue was, I knew no magic at all. Well, I did know the magic that was related to alchemy such as transmuting or appraising. It's just that I don't know what spells I can use that are related to fighting like your typical fireballs and magic arrows. Unlike when I was a vending machine for the players of Nazareth, I never fought anything such as players or other NPCs. I only stayed in my alchemy lab and made stuff like flasks and ores. As there was nothing to do, I turned my attention to studying the alchemy process in depth. The reason? Well, I figured that if I didn't pay attention to how to do alchemy, I would have no knowledge of how to do it in the new world. And, if I didn't know alchemy, how would I fulfill my role as an NPC? I believed that if I couldn't make stuff for Mominga, soon-to-be-ins, I'd be tortured by Demiurge and thrown into his happy farm for not being useful to the last supreme being. My body shuddered to the thought of the archdevil flaying me alive and using me for scrolls. When being forced to make multiple potions on repeat, especially over a decade, the formulas and ingredients to make them often stick to your head. The other reason I studied alchemy was that I was bored and not doing anything would have probably driven me to insanity. Let's do some experiments, I said to myself. Though I quickly adjusted, it did take me a bit by surprise to hear a different voice come out of my mouth. Maybe it was just the mask that affected how I sounded, but my new voice was eerily calm yet mysterious, soothing yet disturbing. My voice had a bit of an echo to it and was slightly deeper than my previous voice as Ajax Dalton. It did remind me of how SCP-049 sounded in my past life. A perfect mix between a voice that's hypnotic and mysterious. Before doing anything rash such as exiting my room, I wanted to try out something simple. A spell that could analyze objects and give them descriptions. Pretty much an appraisal spell. Though I've only used them when finishing creating an item for a player, I wanted to see how it worked in the new world. For curiosity's sake and for information, I wanted to see how powerful the clothes I was wearing were. Were they the best of the best? Maybe they were common artifacts. Though it was highly unlikely, they could have been just simple fabrics used solely for decoration. Appraisal. Blue light emanated from my hands as I pointed it at myself. It stayed that way for a few seconds before dissipating. Items too high ranked. Cannot be appraised. The information of the spell I used filled my head. That was weird. I thought to myself. When I used the spell, it was like I already knew how to use it in the first place. Like it was already a part of me. I continued to think. Using the spell was the equivalent of breathing or blinking. It came that naturally. If using appraisal came so naturally, why don't I know other types of magic? Do I have to test each spell out? I continued to think. I theorized that the spell couldn't analyze what I was wearing because it was a third-tier spell that I used when dealing with low to middle-class items. That along with my clothes being more powerful than what the magic could analyze. But the feeling when trying the spell still surprised me. There was a difference between having your body automatically casting the spell and then actually trying to use the spell itself. Sort of like the difference between knowing the rules of a sport and then actually playing the sport itself. Not the best analogy, but the concept was similar. Let's step things up a bit. I thought. Maybe this spell can identify what I'm wearing. All appraisal magic item. Again, a blue light emanate from my hand as I chanted the spell. This was a 7th tier spell that was much more powerful compared to the first spell as it could tell me about a magic item's creator, manufacturer. You get the idea. Oh, the spell worked. I exclaimed in awe. Unlike with appraisal where the spell couldn't give me the status of my gear, all the information about everything I was wearing was sent to my brain. The spell worked differently compared to Yggdrasil. There were no panels to read all the information from. When I cast the spell, I immediately knew my clothes' properties. To summarize, the gear I was wearing was the best it could get. While I didn't have any world items on me, the majority of my gear consisted of divine class items such as my mask, main outfit, shoes, and my gauntlets/gloves. The rest of my gear consisted of other very high-classed items. That's all well and good. But what if I try and use a fighting-related spell? I thought. That was the next test I wanted to try out. The issue was that I don't know what offensive spells I can use because I have never used them before. I've only seen myself use alchemy-related skills. Thus, I know what to say to cast the spell and how to use it. I'm not sure what proper terms are used to cast offensive magic. For example, do I say fire blast or fire blaze? Is the difference of one word be enough to change what spell is unleashed? Maybe nothing will happen. I'll never know unless I see it in action or try casting them myself. Because of the anime and light novels, I knew the names of some spells. I just don't know if I can use some of them in reality due to class restrictions or other reasons. Then there's the issue of spells that weren't in the series and out of my knowledge. That opens up a whole new can of worms. I thought to myself, pushing that idea to the back of my brain for the time being. Fuck it, I'm thinking too much. I said to myself. Let's hope this works. Maximize magic, fireball. Unlike the blue glow that emanate from using appraisal, a fiery light of red and orange flew out of my right hand, releasing a fairly big fireball that flew directly towards my bed. Shit, my bed. I internally scolded myself for how dumb that was. The bed looked so comfortable too. To top it off, I don't know any spells to fix that mess. Not yet at least. I sighed as my bed lit up to flames, burning all the expensive-looking sheets and flames. The fire continued to burn the bed until it became ash and dust. Why didn't I call my maids outside to fix the mess? Truthfully, the thought passed my mind. I was just mesmerized by the bed burning down and succumbing to the flames. Meh, I'll figure something out later. That's the least of my worries. I thought, shrugging my shoulders. Hell, I'm not surprised if I have something like sleep immunity as a race trait or something similar. Though I really want to sleep again. I'll find a way to deactivate sleep immunity if I have it. Before casting the fireball, I knew absolutely nothing about what could happen. I had no idea how much damage the fireball would do, no idea how much mana the fireball would consume. Hell, I had no idea the fireball could work with maximize magic. That was something I said last second. But, just like with how I suddenly knew how to use the appraisal skill after using it, when I released the fireball, I also knew how to use the spell like it was always a part of me. I wonder what other spells I can use. I thought to myself. I guess it will come to trial and error. Once I cast that fireball, I knew everything about it. Will it be the same for other offensive and defensive spells? I thought, pondering all the possibilities. I shouldn't have used offensive spells in my room. That was stupid of me. I said. Maybe I should try a more harmless spell like a buffing or support spell. I talked to myself, agreeing with my statement. The NPCs could fly in the show, right? Maybe if I try. Fly. I said the name of the spell, remembering it being used in the show. Instead of a glow coming out of my hands like the appraisal and fireball spells, I slowly felt myself being raised in the air until I couldn't touch the ground. Holy shit, I'm floating! I exclaimed. It has been every child's dream to fly above the clouds at some point in their lives. And here I was, doing exactly that. I moved around the room at a fairly quick pace, avoiding hitting chairs and bookshelves. Just like when I cast those other spells, I suddenly knew how to fly properly as if I was experienced it before. This is such an odd feeling I have to get used to. I'll have to read whatever books that are in my lab or Ashurbanipal and pray that there is a list of spells for me to learn. I'm supposed to be the strongest NPC magic caster in Nazareth. If I want to blend in, learning all those spells is a priority, I thought, landing on the ground softly, not making a sound. Let's see. I've tested some spells I knew related to alchemy. I tested out offensive magic and tried flying. I'll do some more magic casting tests later. Maybe I should try transmuting stuff and see how that works out. I muttered under my mask. Yeah, I should try making a potion. I thought of my next test. I went to my desk and took out some simple ingredients to make a lesser health potion. There was no need to exit my room as the materials to make such an item were cheap. I had everything I needed to make the potion here. Back when I had no control over my body, just like how my body cast appraisal, transmuting things together was automatic. I wanted to test the difference and see how alchemy works here. Will I be able to perfectly transmute ingredients together? Maybe stuff will blow up if I fail? I needed to know about all these things if I were to blend in. Let's see here. If I remember correctly, I needed half a vial of magic boar blood and 1 leaf of elfheim to make a lesser health potion. I got the ingredients that were laying across my room and put them over a transmuting circle that was on my alchemy desk. So if I do this, transmute. My hands started to glow a different shade of blue as I started to move my hands over the ingredients. The process came naturally to me as the ingredients on the circle eventually changed to a lesser health potion. Now that's pretty fucking cool, I said to myself. I concluded that every time I cast a new spell or made a potion, all information relating to it would go to my brain and I'd be able to use or make it perfectly. The hard part is figuring out what spells I can and can't use. It took a few tests to come to that conclusion. However, it's better safe than sorry. Figuring that there were no more tests I could try, I decided to leave my room. I made sure everything I was wearing was perfect and that I got into the role of a mysterious and unknown NPC. Okay, let's fake it until you make it, Ajax, or Citronidas, I thought, opening the doors of my room and walking into the alchemy lab. The alchemy lab was the same as before. The bookshelves were still there, same with the furniture and the aquariums connected to the walls. However, before they were just props. Now, they were real and functional items. I noticed a few NPC maids wandering around the lab going about their daily business. Some were on the second level, some were cleaning and others were in other rooms of the alchemy lab or their rooms. It was a weird sight to get used to. When I say maids, I really meant assistants for myself to delegate jobs to. Unlike the 41 maids that wore identical dresses composed of blues, whites, and gold trimmings, my assistants wore more unique clothes composed of blacks, grays, and whites. My assistants were also not carbon copies of each other unlike the 41 maids. They had unique heights, facial features, and hair. Not all of them wore plague masks. The ones that did usually kept their masks off and attached to the waist, only using them when experimenting. I'm not sure of the reason, however. I did overhear some players talking about Perarankino winning a bet against Tabula at one point. As much as I hated the Birdman, I did have to thank him for letting me see those beautiful, cute, and sexy faces. There were a fair amount of assistants that didn't wear plague doctor outfits. Some had traditional anime-styled maid outfits which took inspiration from French maid outfits. Others were styled to look like witches with their pointy hats and wands on the waist. Either way, they were all very hot. Before, all the NPCs were just like me. They were all pre-programmed with a set of ones and zeros to follow and complete the task they were given. They moved stiffly like robots and dutifully completed whatever task was given. Now, they were full of life and emotion. They moved like real beings. Something that I haven't seen in years. I guessed one of the maids noticed me looking around the area. One of the maids started to talk. It sounded like she was afraid of what to say next, not wanting to displease her master. Is that the type of authority I have here? I wondered. Master Citronidas, is there anything wrong? The maid said in a shy and slightly quiet voice that sounded cute and feminine. Oh God, will all servants sound like that? I guess since I have a high authority it would be unusual to refer to me as master. But that sounds so cringe. I quickly calmed myself down and got back into character. Yes, something is wrong, I stated. My voice was both authoritative, ominous, and mysterious from the slight echo my mask created when I talked. Adding to the fact that I didn't explain why something was wrong made me more ambiguous. The maid's eyes seemed to widen as her hands started to shake, thinking she did something wrong. Did I do something wrong, my lord? She struggled to speak properly. The other maids nearby seemed to stop or slow down whatever activities they were doing and listen into the conversation I was having. Shit, I sound that scary? Geez, the girl looks like she saw a fucking ghost. I better clear up this misunderstanding, I thought to myself. Well, I thought of what to say for a moment, trying to think how a mysterious and ominous NPC would say. However, the silence of my thinking made the maid more agitated and fearful. Something happened to Nazareth, I stated. This seemed to make all the maids listening in more fearful. Has something happened to Nazarick? Is Lord Mominga safe? One of the other maids exclaimed. The maids seemed to agree with her question, looking at me for an answer. He is fine, I simply replied, making the maids more relaxed. But Nazarick is not in the marshlands of Helheim anymore, I said, remembering the first episode of Overlord. Then, where are we? Another maid asked. I do not know. I need more information. I simply stated. Okay. So far so good. It seems my acting skills are working. Or maybe is there something in my flavor text that is making me more believable? I'm not too sure. Just fake it until you make it. I cheered to myself in my mind. As I was about to say some more bullshit I created on the spot, a maid with a witch-like attire along with long white hair interrupted me. Lord Citronidas. She called out in quite a rush. I turned to face her. What shocked me was that she looked just like an anime character from my past life. Elena. I suddenly broke character out of pure shock. What the actual fuck is this chick doing here? Did her show exist in Mominga's old world? I thought. Fuck, it might have been the work of Pararankino and his expertise as a man of culture. Not that I'm complaining, but this changes so many things. What next? Cocytus being replaced by his death. My mere existence already making NPCs that didn't exist now exist. I sighed. For my lord to know of my name. I'm not deserving of your grace, master. Elena exclaimed out of shock. Shit. I need to think of something quick. Random bullshit, I choose you. Be quick. Why are you interrupting me? I cringed at the words that came out of my mouth. I sound like my superiors in the military. Do I have to talk like this? I thought. I hope you do forgive me, master. However, Lord Sabas wishes to speak with you. It's an order by the Supreme One. Elena kindly and calmly stated. Sabas? The Iron Butler, huh? One of the kinder denizens of Nazarick. At least it isn't Demiurge. I thought to myself. Let him in, I said, to which the witch nodded in acknowledgement and quickly shuffled out of the main alchemy room and to the big wooden door that lead here. With precise steps, Sebastian entered. He looked just as he had when I first saw him. Sharp features, graying hair, crisp black suit, and eyes akin to a bird of prey. Despite the man's gentle and human appearance, he was a dragonoid. Dragonoids share characteristics of a dragon, can have a dragon form, share strengths and weaknesses of a dragon. But, of course, not anything like dragons. Elena closed the door behind him, yet she remained in the room. Her posture was demure, not in a sense of submission, but as a sign of deference. Whether it was Sabas or myself, I couldn't tell. Sabas looked around the room, taking in its features before turning his gaze to me. Though I felt his eyes all over my body, he must have quickly stopped doing that when I looked at him. Sabas then started to talk. Thank you for seeing me on such short notice, Lord Citronidas, he said. It's nothing. I waved off his reply. It's what happened to Nazarick. You knew what happened? He questioned. I guess I should roll with what I said to my maid assistants earlier. Damn, saying my maid sounds so cringe. I internally shook my head. Not necessarily. I replied in a more ambiguous tone as I looked around the room. All I know is that Nazarick is not in the marshlands of Helheim. As usual, everything was normal. Then, I snapped my fingers for dramatic effect. There was a change. A shift, if you will. It was for a split second, but it was enough for at least me to know that something happened to all of Nazarick. I lied through my teeth. I didn't feel some shift. I was crying my heart out and sobbing on the floor of my room. The Iron Butler seemed to process what I said in his head. That is precisely what happened. Nazarick is now surrounded by empty grasslands. He calmly replied to me. I went ahead and pretended to process the information. Anyways, what brings you here? I calmly stated. If Sabas was offended by my bluntness, he certainly didn't show it. The overseer, Lady Albedo, has called for an inventory check on all of Nazarick's stores. Sabas said. Are you suggesting that something is missing from my lab? No, Sabas replied a little too quickly for my tastes. Given the extraordinary circumstances, it would not be impossible for whatever force to have transported the Nazarick to have pilfered our stores. With a force that can bypass the defenses of the supreme beings themselves, nothing should be assumed. I guess that makes sense. I thought. What should I say now? Random bullshit jutsu, go. I'll perform a full inspection of all our stores and have them written up in an hour. I told him. You can pick it up from one of the assistant alchemists when it's done. I stated. Very good, Lord Citronidas. He accepted, which was a relief to me. Now, if you excuse me, I have other matters to attend to. I will return for the report in an hour. After a short 45-degree bow, he went towards the door, which Elena opened and closed just as quickly. Having literally no clue as to how my alchemy lab was laid out, and not wanting to do any tedious work such, I called out to my assistant maids. You heard me, do a full inventory check. The maids all frantically rushed around the alchemy room, doing what I ordered them to. Maybe they were excited to do some work I had given them. Maybe it was how I worded my sentence along with how I sounded that made them quickly start the task. Either way, they started to do a full inventory check of the place. On the plus side of things, I don't need to count everything that's in store. Not yet at least. I need to familiarize myself with all this. I thought to myself. To start, I went to the closest bookshelf on the wall and took out a few books and read their titles. Of course, the books were all alchemy themed. From the title to the cover, the words of Iwas, The Book of Laws, Ipsissimus's Decrees, Magnum Opus. They were a few examples of alchemy books, all of which were huge books that were 2.5 inches wide or just below 6.5 centimeters. Some books looked brand new with white pages. Others were more worn out from the passage of time and were more yellow. There were hundreds of thousands of books in the alchemy lab all like them. As much as I hated reading, if I were to blend in as an NPC, I must read and amass knowledge about alchemy. Hell, maybe there's something in my flavor text that can help me absorb knowledge more easily like a dry sponge. Either way, I have a long way to go. Time to start reading, I thought to myself, sitting down on my main alchemy workstation, slowly gaining knowledge one page at a time. Chapter 4, The Floor Guardians. A/N, this is a future note by me as of chapter 25. This story was inspired by Yellowness on fanfiction.net by MidasMan. At the time of writing, I used his FIC as a baseline for mine. This is why the first 6 chapters are pretty much copy/paste and not something I'm not proud of, as I didn't put my own spin on things. If you can bear those chapters and push through, I really do thank you from the bottom of my heart. It does get better and the plot begins to change once you get past it. With that in mind, I hope you enjoy the fanfic. Citrinidas's POV. To say I hated reading would have been an understatement. It's boring, it's repetitive, and to top it off, it's unimaginative. I'm more of a visual learner. Now, some books I can get behind as long as they're interesting and captivating enough. Luckily for me, alchemy is an interesting topic I can get behind. As alchemy was only theoretical and non-existent in my old world, it was good to find a new topic to engross myself in. The problem is the sheer amount of books I have to read. Piles upon piles, shelves upon shelves. If I'm going to survive this place and not be seen as a fraud, I need to amass as much knowledge about the topic in as little time as possible. Now, although I studied alchemy when I was a puppet, I still need to know the theories behind it. For example, you could learn how to play a song on a piano or guitar. However, if you didn't know the theory on how to play the instrument, the song you'd play wouldn't sound as good as it could be. I just picked the most interesting titles that caught my mind. My current favorite book was Alchemy, A Guide for Dummies. A really helpful book with theories behind the topic and everything in between. Though to my maids and assistants, it looked like I was bored and reading a silly beginner's book to amuse myself. Time passed as Sabas came back to the alchemy room and took the list my assistant, Elena, provided. I was going to continue to absorb knowledge about alchemy theory when the Iron Butler dropped the equivalent of a nuclear bomb on me. Lord Citrinidas, the Supreme One, has requested you, along with the other floor guardians, to arrive at the amphitheater on the 6th floor within 1 hour, he said calmly. I waved a hand of affirmation to him before he closed the door and left. I guess it's the part in the show where the floor guardians submit absolute loyalty to Mominga, I thought, putting down the book I was reading and leaning back in my oddly comfortable chair. This means that in 3 days, Mominga, Laterans, will appear in Karn Village. Though I acted calm and collected, I was freaking the fuck out. Not in the exciting way where you'd get to see your favorite characters. Quite the opposite. Some of the floor guardians are easy to deal with, such as Aura and Mare. The issue lies with the other floor guardians. Call me a coward or fearful, but this is Nazarick. A tomb filled with eldritch horrors crawling at every corner. This is no longer the anime you watch while lying on the sofa in your living room. This is real life where torture is a possibility and death is a mercy. The most dangerous beings among the floor guardians are Albedo, Demiurge and Shaltir. Each one is equally as dangerous as the last. Albedo, my older sister, is a being that can inspire pure lust in any being by just smiling. Because Mominga edited her flavor text at the end of the game from being a slut to a crazy and obsessed Yandere. I swear in the 9 circles of hell that if I say anything less than a mini paragraph's worth of flattery to the salaryman, I'd have my head on a pike. Then, there's Demiurge the Archdevil, the smartest being in Nazarick, except when talking to Lord Mominga, Laterans. Demiurge is the type of person who'd try to inflict the most pain possible while achieving great results. For example, instead of giving a test subject bread, why not make them eat their arm and heal it later? Finally, there's Shaltir Bloodfallen, the vampire. Probably the most dangerous of them all considering my predicament. Because her creator Perarankino was a hentai enthusiast, he filled her bio to have all sorts of fetishes. Don't let her cute appearance fool you. Shaltir is the type of person to force feed you a buffet's worth of food filled with the strongest laxatives just to see you suffer. Normally, I would have just tried to ignore or stay away from those monsters. However, I vividly remember Perarankino adding in her lore that she wants to be my wife. This would have been fine considering she's pretty, but things never go your way in Nazarick. She's a total monster and is quite possibly obsessed with me. Never stick your dick in crazy no matter how pretty the lady looks. My body shivered at the thought of those 3 creatures. Just keep your cool, AJ Citrinidas. Maybe there's something in my bio that can help me fool those lunatics just like the salaryman. Gosh, I wish I had his luck. I tried to focus on the bright side. At least you can lock yourself here and hopefully learn something new about your build when this is all over. I picked up another book to pass the time before I have to leave. This time, I picked up a book called Magnum Opus, a book about the process of creating the Philosopher's Stone. 3 days until Mominga goes to Karn Village. Should I go with him? How can I convince him to let me tag along? Maybe I will be a part of his adventure group? So many possibilities. I thought to myself. Thinking about the future brought another question to my head. Why was I ordered to go to the amphitheater? I know from being a puppet that I am not a floor guardian. Rather, I'm an area guardian. The difference is that a floor guardian guards the entire floor while an area guardian guards certain areas appointed to them. What's unique to me is that there are no floor guardians controlling the 9th floor. There is only Sebas along with the Pleiades maids that guard the floor. The main reason was to stall for time if a raid ever broke through the 8th floor. Maybe it's because of my unique position as Nazarik's sole alchemist. I thought of a possibility. If I was summoned, that must mean I have an authority that rivals floor guardians such as Sebas or Pandora's actor. I guess that's some good info to know about. I continued to ponder. I pushed those ideas and thought to the back of my head as I continued to read. Time flowed by quickly as the hour neared. I put my book down and glanced at the clock that hung on the wall. 20 minutes left, I thought. I should get going. I've always been curious what casting the gate spell is like. I should be able to do it considering most floor guardians can. I thought, getting off from my comfy chair. Of course, me getting off my chair didn't go unnoticed by a few of the maids passing by. Is there an issue, Lord Citronides? Asked a maid, who had long blue hair and golden eyes. Is that Rimuru? Jesus fucking Christ. First Elena, now him, her? I'm guessing she's her considering the breasts, albeit small. I sighed. I guess my sigh was vocalized as Rimuru seemed to gasp. Did I do something to displease you, master? She frantically asked. I hate this master bullshit. I'm from the fucking military? Call me boss or something? I'm not a deplorable dipshit that has a master complex. You misunderstand. I clarified. It's nothing. I'm going to meet with Lord Mominga soon. Go back to your routines, Rimuru. I said in what I believed Citronides would act like. I guessed it worked as the girl bowed, blushed, and went back to whatever task she was doing. Blushing? I guess this is Japanese anime after all, so it's not surprising. That was pretty cute though. Meh, let's figure out this gate spell, I thought. I walked towards the entrance of the alchemy room. It was a good spot to try and cast gate as the middle of the alchemy room was currently occupied by the assistants. I think I should do the same thing as I did with Fireball. Just say the name and roll from there. Everything should come naturally like I know how to use it after casting. I concluded. Gate. I shouted the name of the spell. Immediately after, a small purple swirl appeared before me before it quickly grew in size comparable to the typical wooden door. This portal should lead to the 6th floor as I thought of where I wanted to go beforehand. I thought. Wasting no time, I stepped through the portal before disappearing from the alchemy lab. Walking through the portal felt like normal, to my surprise. It was like walking through a doorway from one room to another. Except, instead of seeing the other side right away, there was the purple swirl that provided visual effects. When I appeared on the other side, I was met with a giant Colosseum. One that was almost identical to the one made in the Roman Empire. There was a notable difference, and that was the huge pillars that stretched outwards of the Colosseum, seemingly defying any laws of physics. I'm no engineer, but I'd assume something like that shouldn't be possible. It does look cool, I'll give it that. No matter how magnificent the amphitheater, it could not compete with the starry sky. It was like comparing a McDonald's sandwich to one of Gordon Ramsay's famous dishes. There was no competing between the two. The closest thing I could compare the sky to would be when you go stargazing in the north where there's little pollution. The sky was a combination of blues, purples and blacks. You could make out every single star from the dim ones to the brighter ones. It was truly a sight to see, even though it was an illusion created by a player called Blue Planet. Looking around and taking in the breathtaking sight, I noticed two small figures fighting what could only be described as a very large fire monster with no lower half. One of the small figures was throwing around an abnormally long whip while the other meekly stood behind casting what looked to be magic. Yes, the fighters were Aura and Mare. The twin guardians of the 6th floor were currently fighting a primal fire elemental. If I recall, the twins kill off the monster before any other floor guardians arrive. That means I'm early. I should try out some spells on the thing while I have the chance. I thought. They are still quite far away from me. I wonder what teleporting feels like. I pondered. Let's see here. Just think about teleporting and this should. Greater teleportation, I said, casting the 7th tier spell. I was very curious as to what teleporting felt like as a human. Sadly, there was nothing special to it. I just disappeared in one moment, and then appeared where I wanted to in the next. It was as quick as blinking. I appeared quite close enough to the fight where my spells were in the range of the enemy. As I was in front of the Supreme One and the other 6th floor guardians, I kept acting as the mysterious alchemy NPC. Let's try out some spells. I've been reading quite a few books while in the lab. Narrator's POV. Twin Maximize Magic, Hydro Maelstrom. Citronides shouted as two spiraling balls of violent water formed in the air. As quickly as they formed, the spheres of water shot directly at the primal fire elemental's face, dimming its flames and stunning it. Aura and Mare turned to where the voice and magic came from when they noticed quite the ominous figure. A man in pure black with a long white plague doctor mask. Just staring in his glowing eyes from the mask made them internally shiver. Momingatu turned to where the voice came from. Citronides? I thought he'd come later than sooner. I wonder why that is? Well, Tabula did say most will never know what goes on in his head. That is why he's so scary. You'll never know what's next. I miss the old times. The undead mage thought. Whoa, Aura exclaimed. Sis, whose tea that? Mare timidly asked her more confident sister, pulling on her sleeve. Before Aura could reply, the alchemist continued with more spells. Boost magic, geyser, said Citronides, in his usual echoish, hypnotic yet unsettling voice. As he shouted the name of the spell, a hole opened below the primal fire elemental that had a 2-meter diameter. As fast as it formed, a huge eruption of pressurized water emerged from the hole, soaking the fire monster entirely. The monster didn't sit idle, as it used whatever flames it had and directed them to its fist. The monster then used all its force and threw a punch directly at the alchemist. The speed at which the fist traveled fed the flames, making the fire grow in intensity. Fly. The alchemist flew out of the way at lightning speeds, dodging the attack perfectly. The fire monster's fist smashed on the ground, making dust fly everywhere. I'm bored. Triplet maximize magic, whirlpool. 3 tornadoes of water formed all around the primal fire elemental as they quickly honed in on the monster. It had no time to react as the whirlpools of water all clashed against the monster, reducing whatever flames it previously had to nothing. The 3 whirlpools of water dissipated, forming a semi-large pool of water on the ground. What remained was the wet corpse of the primal fire elemental. The alchemist descended from the air gracefully like an angel after he was done with the fight. Hey, that was Aura cleared her voice. Our training dummy, she said boldly. Citronides turned his head slightly, meeting the small dark elf's gaze. His eyes glowed an ominous and unsettling white that even put the Overlord slightly off edge. Before things escalated beyond control, Mominga intervened. Aura, relax, the skeleton mage commanded. But Lord Mominga, he stole our kill. Aura argued. They're still children. How do I calm them down? The salaryman thought. It's fine. He started, raising his bony hand. The primal fire elemental was going to die soon anyway. As a reward, do you want some water for your valiant efforts? Mominga asked. His voice was royal and elegant like a king. Oh, yes, yes please. Aura replied cheerfully, hopping around and forgetting what the plague doctor did, temporarily. IW would like some too. Mare meekly replied after his sister. Lord Mominga, it's an honor to meet you, Citronides said. Holy shit, he sounds so menacing. Keep your cool, Suzuki. Mominga internally freaked out but calmed himself down. Omu, it's nice to see you too, Citronides. Mominga stated. Aura and Mare finished their glasses of water, wanting to talk to the person that interrupted their fun. Hey, you've still yet to answer me. Aura shouted, trying to sound menacing and angry. However, that failed quite a bit, sounding and looking cuter than anything. Citronides seemed slightly confused. Though, to the others, it seemed that he had just noticed the dark elf. Yet again, Mominga stepped in to calm the feisty dark elf girl's temper. Calm down, Aura, Mominga said while using a hand to give Aura head pats. For a moment, Aura stopped and smiled at her master's affection. It's almost like she's a purring cat. Mominga thought. Yes, you can join too, Mare. Mominga said to the shy elf boy. Mare smiled giddily as he skipped next to Aura and received head pats. Mominga gave a glance to Citronides. Oh gosh, he's just standing there, menacingly. Citronides's POV. I honestly didn't know what to do. I believed I did a pretty good job with how I fought the primal fire elemental. I had to research how the damage system worked. It was annoying, but I did find a book somewhere in my mini Ashura Bible about it. It was quite simple that even a baby could figure it out. Fire types are weak to water. Thus, I learned water-based spells. Quite tough as I never saw or read about any offensive spells that were water-based in my previous life. If there were any, I'm a dumbass. If I used fire-based spells, it would have only strengthened the monster further. I guess I was too excited to try the spells out. I forgot that Aura and Mare were fighting the thing in the first place. If it weren't for the salaryman, I'd be having to deal with a child. Speaking of, he's just giving head pats to the kids. They're acting like cats, I thought with amusement. The skeleton overlord stopped giving head pats, to the twins' dismay. It was also to mine as Aura began to shout at me. Anyways, why you'd kill the monster? Aura asked with fury. But, due to her small stature, voice, and appearance, it was funnier than anything else. I just wanted to use some spells. It's been a while since I've fought anything and I felt like I've gotten rusty. I humbly apologize, Aura, I said, giving a slight head bow to the dark elf. It's okay really? You must have been working hard in the alchemy lab. I forgive you. Aura stumbled on her words, waving her hands around. How interesting. I don't believe that Citronides has had a chance to use his magic back in the game. Maybe that's the reason he took down that primal fire elemental. Mominga thought. He's been stuck in the alchemy room. I feel bad. I'll deal with the issue when the time comes. Sis, Aura's brother started to talk meekly. Who's that? I don't remember him. Mare asked. Well, it has been a while. We've only seen him once and that was years ago. Aura exclaimed. Be back when the other supreme beings were here. Mare asked. Aura's smile seemed to falter, being at a loss for words. Indeed. I'm Citronides, the alchemist that's located on the 9th floor. A pleasure to meet you, Mare, I said, raising my hand for a handshake. The dark elf boy seemed to hesitate, a mixture of how my voice sounded and my title. It was the most logical explanation I could come up with at the moment. And nice to meet you, Citronides. I've heard plenty of stories about you. Mare exclaimed, slowly gaining clarity in his voice. God fucking damn it. He sounds like a girl. The outfit isn't helping his case either. That buka bitch and her cross-dressing fetish. I angrily thought but kept myself composed. Oh, I didn't know I'm famous. Tell me, what have you heard? I asked. Knowing what the other NPCs thought about me was quite important. Well, I heard that under that mask, you're very handsome. Mare exclaimed. Who said that? I questioned. Shaltir. Mare replied with excitement. Ah, fuck, that crazy bitch. Oh, I was cut off from saying anything when I heard my name called out by a familiar voice. Is that who I think it is? The feminine voice called out from behind me. It was a mixture of cute, posh, and alluring. That voice, oh shit, Mare jinxed me. I turned behind me, only to confirm my worst fears. Shaltir looked just like I remembered her to be back when I was a puppet. A vampire of short stature with the appearance of a 14-year-old girl. Her description to be a true beauty was no exaggeration. Shiny pale skin, seductive crimson eyes, and fine facial features. She wore a bow tie that was attached to her long silver hair. This along with her big heavy skirt, styled to be Victorian-like, would inspire lust in any normal being. But, this didn't fool me one bit. Shaltir may look like the perfect woman on the outside. However, she's rotten to the core. A monster that has no issue doing the absolute worst. I have no issue killing people. I did it in my past life and will eventually in this life. But, I was never a fan of letting others suffer for my amusement. Shaltir quickly ran up to me, taking me by surprise. However, I quickly reacted. Greater teleportation. I shouted, disappearing out of thin air last minute just as the vampire pounced to where I previously was. Phew, that was a close call. I thought to myself. Oh, why did Citrinitas do that? Ah, it was probably something Tabula added in his lore if I remember correctly. Mominga continued to observe the floor guardian's actions, not interfering unless a fight broke out. Collecting information, especially after transporting and becoming his game avatar, was important. Mao, Shaltir pouted, realizing that she wasn't hugging her beloved. Why won't you let me hug you, Citrinitas? It has been years since we've last met. Shaltir said, trying to guilt-trip me. Humph, Aura huffed, crossing her arms together. Probably because you're as flat as a board. She exclaimed. Oh, what a burn. I thought, holding in a giggle. Shaltir's previous joy of meeting me quickly turned sour, angrily glaring at the dark elf. Why you? Shaltir raised her voice but calmed herself when she looked at her lover, me. Humph. It's not worth arguing with you, Aura. As Pararankino once said, big chests may fill a man's hands, but small chests fill a man's heart. Shaltir exclaimed with passion. The argument between Aura and Shaltir continued for a while as more of the guardians joined. There was Demiurge, guardian of the 7th floor. There was Cositus, guardian of the 5th floor, as well as Sabas and Albedo, the head butler and overseer of Nazarick, respectively. What also intrigued me was that there was a new face among the floor guardians that appeared. Someone that didn't appear in both the Overlord anime and light novels. Rather, another anime entirely. God fucking damn it. Things have changed again because of my existence, I thought. A tall, beautiful, and slender woman with long, light blue hair and eyes. If looks could kill, she would have killed people thousands of times over. The woman wore what could only be described as a general's outfit from the military. White as snow with trims of black. Yes, she was Esteth. What the actual fuck is Esteth doing here? I was only joking earlier. I was stunned, but my mask hid that. Fucking damn it. That woman is just as crazy as Shaltir and Albedo? If only Esteth wasn't a sadist and social Darwinist, I'd smash. Don't stick your dick in crazy. I would very much date a more calm and less human-hating and sadistic girl. Someone like Yuri Alpha or maybe my assistants. I thought, before clearing my mind and focusing on the task at hand. Seeing that the argument hasn't stopped between the dark elf and vampire, Mominga stepped in. That's enough. He shouted with authority. The argument, along with the small catching up between the floor guardians, halted. Mominga subconsciously activated Despair Aura, making us all freeze in fear. Normally Despair Aura would not affect a level 100 being. However, Mominga was holding the staff of In's Owl gown, bolstering all magical effects. Seeing that everyone was here, Albedo started to speak. My lord, we the guardians, pledge our fidelity, she said calmly as we all collectively kneeled. Pledge our fidelity? I'm not pledging anything for nobody, I'm my own man. Though I'll have to comply with the rules, I won't be fawning over the gamer that had no life in the real world, I thought. I am very pleased that all of you have come. Mominga started. Your thanks are wasted on us, my lord. We have pledged ourselves to live and obey, lord. I fear our abilities may not meet your expectations. Despite this, we will strive to meet them in honor of the lost supreme beings, our blessed creators. This we vow. My sister finished. This we vow. We all collectively said. Most excellent, my guardians. Mominga exclaimed, raising his hands in the air. I do not doubt that all of you will fulfill your duties without fail, he said. The guardians all gasped with awe whilst I remained silent. Now then, the situation outside the great tomb of Nazarick is at present entirely unknown to us, Mominga stated. With this in mind, I've had Sabas examine the surrounding area, Mominga said, glancing at the butler. It's all grasslands, Sabas stated. Grasslands? Mominga questioned in confusion. Indeed, lord. I'm afraid the swamps that once surrounded the great tomb of Nazarick are nowhere to be seen. Furthermore, I could not confirm a single building or monster within 1 kilometer of here. It would seem we are completely isolated, Sabas said, finishing off his report. It would seem I expected so. Nazarick has been transported by unknown means. Albedo, Demiurge, I have a task for you. Fortify our defenses and find a way to strengthen our information gathering. Understood, both floor guardians replied. So far, everything seems to be going like canon, I thought. Mayor, is there any way to conceal Nazarick? Mominga asked. Yes, though, it would be difficult if all we used is magic. But if we covered the walls with dirt and vegetation, I think it would help camouflage us from the outside world. Mayor gave his thoughts on the matter. You plan on covering the sacred grounds of Narek with dirt? Albedo snarled. Albedo, there is no need for your needless remarks. Yes, forgive me, Lord. I was careless. My sister corrected her mistakes. Excellent idea, create multiple dummy hills to make things less suspicious. Mominga said to Mare, making the boy blush from the praise. Lastly, there is a question I want you all to answer. First, Shaltir, tell me in your own words what kind of person you think I am. Mominga asked with demand in his voice. There is nothing living or dead that can compare to your glory. Only second to my beloved when it comes to looks. Shaltir stated. Cocytus, a man whose strength is unrivaled by any guardian. You are truly worthy of being the leader of Nazarick. Cocytus said. Aura, compassionate. And, you're always 3 steps ahead of the game. Mare, a kind and compassionate ruler, said the Dark Elves. Demiurge, Mominga asked, curious as to what the smartest being of Nazarick would say. A person who makes wise decisions and acts upon them efficiently and without any form of hesitation? Your enigmatic nature makes it nigh impossible to predict you. Demiurge said instantly. Sabas, you are the head of all supreme beings. And even though the other creators had left us behind, you mercifully stayed behind in Nazarick until the very end. Citrinidas. Oh shit, my turn to say something? Think fast. I said to myself as my mind raced for ideas. A being whose talents are unfathomable beyond compare. Yes, it was short. But, it got the job done. Asteth. Let's see what this chick says, I thought to myself. A being who's merciful yet authoritative when needed. Asteth said. Finally, Albedo. Albedo blushed before speaking. You are the highest-ranking member of the Supreme Beings. Our ultimate master and the ruler of Nazarick. As well as the man whom heart belongs. Albedo exclaimed. Mominga stepped back, shocked, but regained composure. Why yes, I see. I have heard your thoughts and given you your orders. Go work faithfully in my name. Mominga said, slamming his staff on the ground. Lord. We all exclaimed. Seconds later, the Overlord teleported away, relieving us from his pressure. Ah, why do they have such high regards of me? I'm so pathetic. Chapter 5, haha, I'm in danger. A/N, this is a future note by me as of chapter 25. This story was inspired by Yellowness on fanfiction.net by MidasMan. At the time of writing, I used his FIC as a baseline for mine. This is why the first 6 chapters are pretty much copy/paste and not something I'm not proud of, as I didn't put my own spin on things. If you can bear those chapters and push through, I really do thank you from the bottom of my heart. It does get better and the plot begins to change once you get past it. With that in mind, I hope you enjoy the fanfic. Citrinidas's POV. Mominga teleported away, relieving the stress of a bolstered despair aura off my chest. But, as I was surrounded by the other guardians, I kept my composure. If alone, I would have collapsed in relief. Not here though. I needed to keep my image as a mysterious alchemist and powerful mage in front of these abominations. Ah, did you feel how powerful Lord Mominga's aura was? Aura asked the group. Humph, Demiurge puffed, moving his glasses up to his eyes in the typical anime fashion. It was to be expected, he is a supreme being after all. Demiurge said calmly. I thought I was going to faint? That was so scary. Mare said to himself. It's because of Lord Mominga's skill despair aura. Normally, it would have rendered us level 100 beings unaffected. However, due to the staff of Owl gown, it bolstered his magic strength. I replied, keeping my image as an expert in the magic department up. Of course, you'd know of such things, my beloved Citrinidas. You look so cute when you talk about magic. Shaltir said to me, making my eyebrows go up. Is this bitch trying to flirt with me? Right here and now? This is such a pain in the ass. Just keep your cool, Citrinidas. I thought to myself. If only you took off that mask of yours, I would be able to see your handsome face. Shaltir continued. You damn parasite. The succubus muttered under her breath, catching the attention of the vampire. Asteth looked on at the two, before giving me a glance and a smirk. Oh fuck. Don't tell me Asteth wants me to. I need to lock my alchemy lab up? These crazy bitches. I stand no chance. I barely know any magic. I'm not too sure how I kept my composure. Being transported in a fictional world or being surrounded by otherworldly beauties. Not to mention standing next to crazy murderers and monsters, I would have surely broken character. Maybe I have an unknown passive skill that keeps me sane. I tried to think of a possible answer. Oh well, I'll do more research later. I thought of a possibility. But, that was an issue for a later date. The only being worth such praise is Lord Mominga. My sister Albedo corrected the vampire, unleashing a wave of menacing aura that could suffocate any normal human being. What was that gorilla? I will admit that Lord Mominga is handsome, he can't compare to Citrinidas. The vampire retorted. Don't you dare hit on my brother, Shaltir. Especially in front of me, Albedo warned. Aura and Mare slowly took steps back, whistling and looking the other way. Damn, I should be doing what those cross-dressing dark elves are doing right now. I thought to myself, preparing to teleport just in case. Hey, at least I can fuck him, unlike your sorry virgin ass. Lord Mominga may be a skeleton, but he doesn't have the bone you're looking for. If words could kill, Shaltir nuked a fucking city with those words. Wait. Huh. Aura was surprised by the sudden information. Albedo, a succubus, a virgin. Q-fu-fu-fu-fu. Esteth giggled, putting a hand over her mouth. Demiurge smirked at the words of the vampire, impressed by Shaltir's intellect. Albedo gave a low growl. Instead, she brought her weapon, Jinyunggagap, to her side. Oh, shit is about to hit the fan. I thought, partially with excitement, partially in fear. Before anything else could happen, the insectoid, Cocytus, stepped in. Now, calm down, he stated, using one of his forearms to lower Albedo's weapon. However, that didn't stop her from trying to break free from the insectoid's grasp. You wouldn't want to upset the Supreme One, would you, sister? I said. This did calm Albedo down as she lowered her weapon with reluctance. Shaltir smirked, glad that she won the fight. However, she turned to face Esteth, noticing her small glances going towards my direction. What do you think you're doing, looking at my husband, Esteth? Shaltir politely asked. I'm not married, I said, wanting to deter Shaltir from me. Sadly, my voice was drowned and ignored. It's nothing. I just believe that my creator, Lord Blue Planet, wanted me to be engaged to Citrinidas. Esteth said calmly. Wait. Huh? Since when did this happen? I need to barricade my doors in the alchemy room. I was freaking out now. However, my body kept its cool. I would normally love this, but why are all my love interests crazy bitches? I asked myself. I call bullshit. Citrinidas only needs me, isn't that right? Shaltir asked, now looking at me. Esteth also looked in my direction. Albedo was slowly losing her nerve but was kept at bay by Cocytus. What? How do I solve this predicament? I thought to myself, trusting the first plan that came to my mind. Nothing came out of my mouth. Shaltir and Esteth waited for an answer, now giving puppy eyes in the hopes I would agree with one of them. Greater teleportation. I cast the spell, disappearing into thin air. I'm not dealing with that bullshit, I thought to myself. Narrator's POV. Greater teleportation. Citrinidas chanted one of his many spells, disappearing from the 6th floor altogether. Shaltir and Esteth pouted, seeing their beloved leave them. Mao, why does Citrinidas always ignore me? Shaltir muttered to herself before sighing. I guess it is to be expected. Citrinidas is a busy man, diligently working for Nazarek. I just love him to my core. Esteth gave her thoughts. Albedo put away her weapon as Cocytus let go of her shoulder. At least Esteth is a better person for my brother to marry. Unlike a certain breast-stuffing vampire, Albedo said with spite. Shaltir growled at both ladies. Demiurge sighed, gesturing to Aura. I'll let you deal with the woman issues, Aura. Let's go, Cocytus and Mare. Demiurge said, adjusting a glove on his hand. What? Don't dump this on me. Aura argued but was ignored by the archdevil. It's okay, sis. I'll see you later. Mare said meekly, following Demiurge away from the brewing conflict. Cocytus quickly followed before him. Demiurge and Mare were well enough away as to not be disturbed. Sabas also left, needing to tend to other importances within Nazarek. Demiurge hummed while rubbing his chin before speaking. A child wouldn't be a bad idea, he muttered to himself. What do you mean, child? Mare innocently asked, tilting his head to the side. It would be a great addition to our forces and it would pave the way for Nazarek's future. Demiurge diligently thought. I'm not sure I follow you, Mare replied, making the archdevil slightly sigh before quickly smiling again. Every great ruler needs an heir, don't they? Demiurge said, making the cogs turn in Mare's head. Lord Mominga stayed behind with us. However, one day he may leave us and join the other supreme beings wherever they went. Therefore, it would be nice for him to leave an heir we can pledge ourselves to. Demiurge concluded. You're saying Albedo should give birth to Lord Mominga's child? Mare asked. Not just Lord Mominga, but perhaps Citrinidas as well. The dark elf continued. Blasphemy. Cocytus hopped into the conversation. If we do our jobs, that won't be necessary, he said, puffing cold mist after speaking. Yes, of course. But instead of just serving one lord, why not serve his bloodline? Replied the archdevil. Cocytus gasped at the information. That would be kind of nice, he said, puffing cold smoke out of his mouth. No, it would be wonderful. I can see it so clearly. Now, I shall be Uncle Cocytus, the insectoid exclaimed, waving his hands around and thinking of the future. But skeletons can't reproduce, can they? Mare asked Demiurge, who was already thinking of the issue. Indeed, there are biological constraints. However, the use of magic can change that. If Lord Mominga is unable to have children, Citronides is the next best option, Demiurge said with a smug on his face. Why's that? Mare asked. It was the type of question a child would ask when a parent would say they were doing something. Well, it is because of his race. Homunculi can crossbreed with any species. That brings the question, will his death or shall Tyr be the mother? Demiurge said. Wait, can't Citronides use his magic and help Mominga, Meg started to blush when talking about the subject. That can be a possibility, yes. Demiurge replied, then turned his attention to the insectoid. Cocytus, we have a job to do. Snap back to reality. Demiurge said sharply. The endless possibilities. Cocytus said to himself. Anyways, I shall get going. See you both later. Demiurge said to his colleagues before leaving. Mare and Cocytus said their farewells before attending to their tasks. Time skip, 2 days. Citronides's POV. It has been 3 days since I've regained my sentience again. You'd believe that I would have celebrated and had fireworks go off. As much as I wanted to, I didn't. Instead, I locked myself in my alchemy lab on the 9th floor. There were multiple reasons as to why I stayed there. For the most part, it had to do with my character as Citronides. Recalling information as a puppet was hit or miss. When it came to remembering recipes and ingredients used such as potions or scrolls, I could remember that shit easily. However, when it came to my actual character with important information such as lore or build, I couldn't recall most of it. This was because my creator, Tabula Smaragdina, only opened my panel to edit a few things rarely. Maybe 3 times max, but that was it. I didn't have enough time to read and process the text. It didn't help that the visual panel for editing was inverted. So, from my perspective, it was like trying to read an essay from a bathroom mirror. However, from what I could recall, I was supposed to be elusive, mysterious, and polite. In other words, I focused all my attention on anything magic or alchemic in nature and not coming out of the lab. This piece of information benefited me in 2 ways. Firstly, it gave me a chance to read plenty of books and experiment with making potions. Of course, it was under the guise of needing to see if the transportation affected the alchemy process of each potion and flask. In reality, I needed to practice. Secondly, it was within the nature of Citronides, now myself, to stay in the alchemy lab for most of the time. Although this was good for the short run and avoiding those crazy bitches, I can't stay in the lab for long. This is especially important if I want to slowly influence the plot to my liking. Tomorrow is when Mominga goes to Karn village and deals with the sunlight scripture. I thought to myself, reading a book on PvP from Yggdrasil. Though going to Karn village had its advantages, I find it hard to find a proper reason for me to join the Overlord. Now, when it comes to Momona's adventuring as Momon, the situation changes. As I'm supposed to be an NPC well versed in magic, after being transported to a new world, shouldn't I do some investigations on magic in the new world? Whether it was joining Momona's eventual adventurer team Darkness, or making a little team of my own, staying inside for so long will get boring. It would also help as I can test out what magic I can and can't use. Being an adventurer would probably mean that I'll have some part to complete in Demiurge's demonic incursion in the Riestai's capital. Do I get involved in the adventurer side? Or, do I aid Demiurge and make Momon the hero everyone believes he is? Truthfully, I haven't thought that far ahead yet. However, I do know from my time as a puppet that the item Demiurge uses is different. This is because Ulbert's Armageddon evil experiment was a success and resulted in the creation of a divine class item. All this thinking is giving me a headache. I thought to myself, is there some sort of headache mitigating spell or a passive that I can activate? I sarcastically thought. On the note of passives, I wondered if any were affecting me. Because Suzuki was transported to the new world as his undead avatar, Mominga, he slowly lost his humanity in the series. There were quite a few reasons as to why this happened. There are his passive racial traits such as the emotional nullifier. There were the karma values and job classes. There's also the issue of whatever he wrote in his personal bio or lore. I wondered if whatever my creator put in my lore is slowly affecting me. I still might have my humanity now, but what about in 1 or 2 years? I'm perfectly fine with killing beings. I've done it in my past life. But, what about torture? Will I be okay with the innocent dying? Will my karma values change my personality? I know my karma value is at -500, so, will I eventually become some unholy inhuman? Goodness, so many possibilities. I'll deal with this later. I should lie on my bed or something, I thought. Luckily for me, I learned how to use Create Greater item. That shit is amazing. Sadly, I can't make food out of it. The idea of food did make my stomach slightly growl. Oh, right. I haven't eaten in like 3 days. I guess homunculus can last longer without food. I pondered. Well, getting to know the layout of the 9th floor isn't a bad idea, I thought. The idea of eating something quickly took over any previous priorities. Gosh, after years, I'll finally be able to enjoy the taste of food. I reminisced about the idea. I wonder what dishes they serve here? Most likely with ingredients I've never tried before. Oh boy, I cannot wait. Wasting no time, I exited my alchemy lab. The heavy wooden doors creaked as I stepped outside, soon closing behind me. It was then I realized I had no idea where to go. Shit, there's probably no maps here. You wouldn't want your enemies to know where everything is. I guess I'll just go a random direction and hope for the best. I concluded, going a random direction away from my lab. I never really noticed how big Nazarick was until now. White walls were made out of marble that was 15 meters in height. The entirety of the 9th floor was a maze to any intruders that made it this far. It was a smart move by the players to buy time. However, it didn't help that I knew where nothing was. As I was walking down the lengthy hallways, I heard a faint clatter of footsteps slowly getting louder and closer to me. Eventually, I was able to make out who was making the noise. Oh, just the homunculus maids, I said to myself. Though the maids were nearly identical, they had their ways to distinguish themselves. One of the maids had short blonde hair. The second maid had waist-length hair. The final one had glasses and could only be described as a MILF. Foyer, Success, and Lumiere, I thought. The books weren't kidding when they described the maids to be otherworldly beauties. Though not on the scale of other women I've seen in the tombs such as Shaltir, Albedo, and Esdeath, they would have been very popular in my old world. Hey, at least these maids aren't crazy like those bitches, I thought. Okay, it is time to get into character. Foyer, Success, and Lumiere. It's good to see you, I said. My voice echoed even more due to the lengthy hallways, which alerted the maids. Oh, Foyer, the short blonde gasped. Lord Citronidas, how may we assist you? Foyer questioned. The other maids seemed to agree, nodding their heads. I was wondering if you could recommend me a place to eat, I asked. My voice sounded oddly polite yet off. Well, Success tried to formulate a sentence but kept stuttering. Whether it was my presence or her thinking of a place to eat, I did not know. We just finished our shifts and were heading to what the Supreme Beings call a kiosk for lunch. If you want, you could join us, Success asked, adding a small smile to the end of the sentence. It would be my pleasure, I stated, following the maids and having small talk. Lord Citronidas. Lumiere started to ask me a question. Yes, I replied kindly. Well, I was wondering why'd you join us? You usually stay in your lab. And, if you were ever hungry, shouldn't you use the ring of sustenance? Lumiere questioned. That was something I did not account for. That's a thing? Well, I can't turn back now, can I? I sarcastically said to myself. Well, I shall put my trust in whatever comes to mind. Random bullshit, onwards. The ring of sustenance is efficient for work, yes. However, lately, I've wanted to taste the varied cuisines that Nazarick can offer. I simply stated. The maids seemed to understand with a collective nod. It didn't take long for us to reach the destination. Though we only went into one of the restaurants, I could tell that each one was basically a 5-star restaurant from the materials used and appearance. One of them was a bar that was lit by purple lights. Another pure white with trims of gold all over. We entered one of the empty restaurants and sat down at a random table. I figured that if the area was full of people, I'd just ask for takeaway. But, as there was nobody, I chose to sit down and take my time. As quickly as we arrived and sat down, a waitress came to us and asked for our orders. I'll just have whatever is the tastiest on the menu, I said. I didn't really care what they brought me. I just wanted to taste something after many years of eating nothing. Each one of us had a different dish. But holy fucking shit. I was expecting a simple and typical lunch. Not a fucking expensive dinner. The dish looked like steak, dripping with a buttery seasoning. A side of mashed potatoes accompanied the meal in a separate bowl. The sheer amount of food laid out for me could feed a family of 4. The whole thing smelled delicious. So, seeing that nobody else was here, I took my mask off. I believed I could eat in peace, but the shocked gasps of the 3 maids stopped me from picking up my cutlery. I turned to face the noise, only to be met by faces that could rival Kirishima's red hair. I regret not getting takeout. Oh well, I internally sighed. I need to be careful with my facial expressions, I thought, carefully planning what to say next. What seems to be the issue? I asked politely, pretending to be ignorant about the situation. WWWL, The maids could not speak, stumbling on every word their mouth makes. And never mind, please go and enjoy your meal, Lord Citronidas. Foyer said, finally finishing a sentence. Self-reminder to not take off my mask. If the maids react like this, only God knows what will happen if Shaltir or Esdeath see me. I got goosebumps from the thoughts before focusing on my meal. Fork and knife at hand, I took the first bite. My eyes widened. The flavors exploded all over my taste buds. This was the single best piece of meat I've eaten. Period. Before the piece even went down my throat, I was already craving for another piece. Then another, and another, and another. Stopping only occasionally to wash the meat down my throat with water, or to sample the mashed potatoes. I didn't even notice how the massive dish was slowly disappearing. Before I knew it, my plate was clean. Yet, I craved for more. It wasn't like I was hungry anymore. My stomach didn't grumble anymore. If I had another round, I thought my stomach would implode. But those flavors, those textures, I needed more of it. Another, if you would be so kind. I asked to whoever was listening. My prayers were instantly answered. This time, a dish composed of chicken with a side of vegetables and a cake appeared before me. A napkin was tied around my neck as my cutlery and glass were instantly replaced. I hesitated, but with how divine the aroma of the food was, I dug in. You'd expect after eating a full-course steak dinner, I would be stuffed to the brim. Only an insane person would go for a second round. That was not the case. I only speculated that it was due to my race as a homunculus. I savored every bite, carefully keeping the urge to break character at bay. Everything was going well, until halfway through my meal, I heard a rather peculiar voice. Do my eyes deceive me? Is that the handsome Citronidas? From the corner of my eye, I could just barely make out who said that. Fucking Murphy's Law. I guess this situation was inevitable. Just man up and if things go wrong, teleport away. I thought to myself, preparing for whatever the sadistic vampire had planned for me. Shaltir, I said, turning around to face the gothic lowly, still being in character. I stared into her crimson red eyes before she started to talk. Oh good, you're actually here. I've tried 5 other dining areas before this one. 5? And one of them was empty. On her way, she grabbed one of the many vacant chairs and dragged it across the room to my table before sitting down. My mind was racing. Fuck. She is sitting at my dining table. This crazy bitch that loves inflicting pain onto others, sitting right next to me. Me. I started to overreact. Okay, calm down. Let's think analytically and carefully. Act how you normally do, I said to myself. Oh, I'm sorry I was being quiet for a moment. Her apology caught my attention. It's just, she propped her head upon the table. You look so cute when you're in deep thought, she said with a warm smile. Not that you aren't handsome normally. I masturbate to you daily, Shaltir clarified. That sentence made me raise an eyebrow. What the actual fuck? But the way your eyebrows scrunch up and your cheeks puff out is so adorable, Shaltir exclaimed. I can't believe that this monster is hitting on me. I would be very happy if this person wasn't a crazy bitch that loves torture, I thought, holding the urge to do something rash. I'll assure you, my cheeks do not puff out, I stated, keeping my face as emotionless as possible. If Shaltir took offense to my tone of voice, she didn't show it. Her smile persisted. Yes, they do, the monster insisted. I took a breath in before speaking. Is there something you wanted, Shaltir? She giggled to herself. Well, now that you mentioned it, she licked her lips. Aw fuck, this isn't good at all. I was wondering if you know anything about Nazarik's predicament. I know absolutely nothing about what happened. Well, I do because of the series but I can't say that, I thought. Sabas came to the lab a few days ago. I knew something was off but his arrival confirmed it. She looked surprised. You felt it? MMHM. I nodded. Maybe the other NPCs didn't notice the transition like I, and technically Mominga did. It was for a split second. Then, I snapped my fingers as I did a few days ago. It was over. Oh wow, she was actually impressed by me feat, so was it something magical? What did it feel like? Oh fucking damn it, I thought. She went from seductive mistress to a childlike wonder in seconds. I don't know, I started. I assume it was magical in nature. But, I just didn't know for certain. Not yet at least. As for what it felt like, I paused for a moment. It's hard to explain. Everything was like it usually was. Then, for a brief second, everything felt different. I hardly even noticed it happen. I heard her mutter under her breath, something along the lines of, so cool. Excuse me, I questioned. What I meant to say, actually, she looked a little flustered now, is that of course you'd be the only other person in Nazarik to sense it. Outside of the supreme beings themselves, that is, you're the strongest mage in Nazarik. I doubt that any of us could surpass Nazarik's vending machine in terms of magical aptitude. I'm sorry. What the fuck did this bitch call me? Shaltir became more flustered. I mean, it's something Lord Perarankino called you when he was talking to Lady Bukibuku Kagama and Lord Tabula one time. I mean, it's such a prestigious title. And I know, well I know that, and that. The vampire fumbled on her words. She is fully blushing now. Goodness hell. I internally sighed. Shaltir cleared her throat and stood up. Her demeanor changed back into the more seductive mistress from earlier. She walked over to me. Funnily enough, with me sitting and her standing, we were actually at eye level with one another. Her face was slightly red. What I mean to say is that if you're ever feeling overworked or just bored with your collection of assistants, I would be happy to lend you some of mine. Naturally, I hope you'd extend the same courtesy to me. Don't worry, I don't break other people's things. That is actually pretty horrifying. I feel bad for those vampire brides that have to deal with her every day. That's kind of you. But I think I'll be fine. Also, they're my assistants, not sex slaves. Shaltir slightly flinched before slowly blinking. Oh, I didn't mean anything by it. She waved off my concerns. An awkward silence brewed in the atmosphere. Her crimson eyes bore into my yellow ones. I could hear her taking deep breaths. Then, a soft laugh. Oh, would you look at that? Time certainly flies by when one has a beautiful and elegant conversation partner. Wouldn't you say? She asked. I tried to give a response but stopped. Without a word, her long tongue slithered from her mouth and licked my cheek. As it retracted back, I noticed a bit of cream on it. She gave an over-exaggerated sigh or moan as the cream entered her mouth. Her face now blushing red again. Very sweet, she noted under her breath. I couldn't help but turn a hue of red. Something like that caught me by surprise. Excuse me but now I must be leaving. Shaltir interrupted me as she spun around and made her way to the exit. Goodbye the handsome. I hope to see you soon. I will see you soon. I will be returning to my post now. Her voice seemed to fumble over and over again. Her pace picked up, before leaving the premise altogether. I was left alone with the homunculus maids and waiter, who were hiding behind a counter when Shaltir visited. I'm not hungry anymore. Narrator's POV. Fucking damn it all. Shaltir swore as she threw one of her vampire brides across the room into the nearest wall. The bride's long dress ripped and torn apart from the true vampire's wrath. Gashes, cuts, and bruises littered across her petite and pale body. A faint crunch and snap echoed in the room as the bride slid down to the carpeted floor. A small patch of red covered the wall and pooled under the motionless bride. 3 other vampire brides lay beneath Shaltir's feet. They were all in the same, horrible condition. One even had their arms twisted the wrong way. That will do for now, Shaltir reasoned before groaning. She gave a slight nod to the other fresh vampire brides at the far end of the room. Without delay, they rushed in to aid their fallen sisters, picking them up and taking them away to be healed. The true vampire jumped back onto her bed and sank into the luxurious sheets. What a mess. She groaned again. It had been days since she had laid her eyes on her most beloved on the 6th floor, the handsome and mysterious Citronidas. It had been years since they had last met in person. Shaltir could vividly remember the day when Lord Pereronkino took off his mask for herself to see. His face was beautiful, more beautiful than some, if not all supreme beings. After changing, one of her brides brought wonderful news that Citronidas had left his lab. Shaltir jumped at the idea of being in the company of her beloved husband and future father to her children. She wanted to make Citronidas her own, but there was so much competition. There was the Ice Queen of the 5th floor, Esdeath. There were the Pleiades maids and his assistants. With this rare opportunity, Shaltir was certain she would make Citronidas hers. Alas, she had made a fool out of herself. Fumbling on word after word in front of her own husband, then the cream. Citronidas must have thought she had wanted him for his body, to be like one of her brides. Shaltir's stomach churned at the thought of Citronidas being like her brides. Unlike the brides that were her toys, Citronidas was more. Love was definitely a part of it. Love at first sight if she was honest. There was the way he carried himself. There was his voice and intelligence. Shaltir blushed at the thought of her beloved. If only Lord Pereronkino was here, Shaltir thought. While her lord had left with the other supreme beings, Lord Pereronkino was by far the wisest. She would think back to her lessons when she faced trying times. Sister, she might look like a child but is actually a 1,000-year-old vampire, and girls with dicks means it's 2 times the fun. Shaltir was filled with determination. No more stuttering on words and no more running away. She was going to show that her affection was genuine. Shaltir smiled, before crawling to her side table. There lay a single book. Its title was, How to Claim Your Husbando. Cracking open the book, she began her research. Chapter 6, The Attack on Karn Village. A/N, this is a future note by me as of chapter 25. This story was inspired by Yellowness on fanfiction.net by MidasMan. At the time of writing, I used his FIC as a baseline for mine. This is why the first 6 chapters are pretty much copy/paste and not something I'm not proud of, as I didn't put my own spin on things. If you can bear those chapters and push through, I really do thank you from the bottom of my heart. It does get better and the plot begins to change once you get past it. With that in mind, I hope you enjoy the fanfic. Time skip. One day. Narrator's POV. 2 sisters were frantically running away. One seemed to be no older than 10 while the other was at least older than 18. The sisters could be described as cute and pretty, but the fear in their eyes said otherwise. Their names were Enri and Nemu Emot, humble village girls from the Riestai's kingdom. Run, Nemu. The older sister Enri exclaimed as she pulled her sister behind her. 2 soldiers in clad silver and blue chased behind them. Get those fuckers. One of the soldiers shouted, slowly gaining ground on the innocent sisters. Stay away from me and my sister. Nemu shouted back. Her child naivete made the soldiers chuckle. Enri and her little sister ran up a short hill in the hopes of escaping the soldiers that killed her parents. Sadly, it didn't work. The soldiers of the Baharuth Empire quickly caught up to them. What were untrained village girls compared to veteran soldiers? You have been such a pain in the ass? Oh, how I'm gonna enjoy this. The soldier exclaimed, using his sword and slashing at Enri's back. The slash of the sword went across her entire back. She fell in pain, screaming and covering her sister. Ah! Enri screamed at the top of her lungs as the soldiers laughed at her pain. Sister, no. Nemu shouted, hugging her older sister tightly. Nemu, listen to me. Enri said in a low voice. Partially due to running and partially due to her major wound. You need to run, she said in a demanding whisper. But Nemu was cut off from talking. No buts? You can still make it out alive? Run far away from here, Enri said, this time with a sad kindness. Nemu, who already had watery eyes, finally burst into tears. Ha ha ha. One of the soldiers slowly raised his shiny silver blade into the air. Please, anyone, save us. Those were the last thoughts of Enri Emot, hugging her stubborn yet adorable sister tightly in her arms. Enri welded her eyes shut as she waited for the blade to strike her back. But the blade never pierced her back. It was then when she heard the gasps of the soldiers behind her when she opened her eyes. Looking up, Enri was certain she met the incarnation of death itself. Right in front of her stood what could only be described as a human skeleton covered in luxurious black robes. No, the head of the skeleton couldn't have been that of a human. The sharp edges and smoothness suggested anything but human. Beside what Enri presumed to be death itself were 2 people. The first one was a slender woman covered head to toe in black armor. What was interesting was the 2 metal horns that protrude from the helmet. Whether they were for fashion or for horns, she couldn't tell. It seemed physically impossible to move in that suit. The materials seemed to be extremely heavy. Yet, the person inside was able to move perfectly fine. While the first being was death and the second was unidentifiable, the third was different. Just looking at what Henry presumed to be a male put her off edge. This being was also covered in a robe that stretched from shoulder to shoulder, touching the ground. The collar of the robe was lined with feathers darker than night. But what took Enris' attention wasn't the robe or what was under it, but the mask. The mask was that of a bird's head. The entire thing was pure white with the beak of the mask extending half a meter in length. Black lines surrounded the eye sockets, making the ominous white glow stand out even more. The eyes. The glowing white eyes were what put Henry off. They say if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. That saying was true. The eyes put many different feelings and emotions into her mind. Fear, calmness, terror, and peace. It made her unsettled. Grasp heart. Said Death in a calm and regal tone. Death held his bony hand in the air as a heart formed in it. Just as Death held his hand up, he created a clutching motion, crushing the heart that formed in his hand. Henry turned around and saw the soldier that was about to kill her fall to the floor. He thrashed around before coughing blood. Then, lay motionless. Monster. The other soldier said, giving up to cowardice and running away. Oh, you're running. Henry turned back to face her saviors. The voice seemed to come from the ominous figure with a bird mask. His voice echoed and was both hypnotic and unnerving. The ominous figure then raised his right hand, pointing his palm to the running soldier. Poison of Ouroboros. A small green incantation formed on the palm of his hand, around 30 centimeters in diameter. Abruptly, a dark and toxic green mist spewed out of the green incantation, aiming straight for the soldier at a lightning pace. The soldier started to cough and scream horribly, falling to the ground convulsing and thrashing. Help me. The soldier screamed at the top of his lungs before coughing up a mixture of blood and stomach acid. Blood started to come out of every pore in his body, eyes, nose, and ears. The soldier continued to suffer before eventually succumbing to his injuries. After witnessing such monsters mercilessly kill her soon-to-be killers, Henry could only mutter, "Who are you?" Henry asked, in a low and quiet whisper, all the while clutching Nemu close to her, refusing to let her little sister see such brutality. Death seemed to be amused by the girl's question. He seemed to ponder for a while before answering the girl's question. For the lady on the right, her name is Albedo. For the male to my left, his name is Citronides. As for me, Death seemed to chuckle for a moment. He raised his hand slightly into the air as if praising himself. I am Ainzoal Gown. Ains. Oal. G Gown. Henry stuttered to vocalize the name of her savior. She could only look wide-eyed at the trio, unable to say anything else. The ominous man with the bird mask stepped forward, walking at an average pace. However, to Henry, each step made her stomach churn ever so slightly. Citronides reached out into the air, creating a small purple portal. He seemed to be searching for something, like rummaging for an item in a pouch. Citronides pulled his hand out. A clear and intricate vial filled with an unknown red liquid. Poison. Henry could only come to a sensible conclusion. It couldn't have been a health potion. Health potions were blue. Why would her saviors give her something such as poison? Here, said Citronides calmly. The single word he made Henry hesitate. No, sister, don't. Nemu exclaimed, attempting to push her sister away from the unknown potion. Nemu, dear. Everything will be okay, Henry said, trying to calm her sister down. I can assure you, this potion is harmless. It will heal your wounds, Citronides said, shaking the potion in his grasp in a circular motion. His oddly kind and assuring words made Henry both relieved yet shiver. Henry slowly reached for the glass vial, shivering every second. Henry finally took the potion from the ominous man, taking off the cap. She seemed to doubt his words but, considering how he and his other companions helped her, she chugged it down. Henry's back, which was burning and stung from the wound, felt relieved. After a few seconds, the wound disappeared, as if it was never there at all. But, how? Henry thought, shocked. Healing spells or potions can heal wounds like that. However, they were either accessible to rich nobles or, if you knew how to heal yourself, regular healing spells or potions would leave some scar of some sort. Inns looked at the dead body of the soldiers on the ground. Couldn't even handle a 9th tier spell. How pitiful. I didn't feel any remorse. I guess I've stopped being human both physically and mentally. Anyways, I've always wanted to test out how undead were made in this world. The skeleton said to himself, walking towards the corpse of the fallen soldier. Create middle tier undead, Death Knight. Instead, as the soldier's body started to deform and melt into grey goo. What surprised Henry was what came after. A 2-meter-tall undead holding a huge shield and sword on each hand. The sheer aura, though not as powerful as the other 3 people, made Henry's knees turn into jelly. Death Knight, kill anyone in the village over there. Inns pointed to the direction of the village. That looks like that? The skeleton finished, pointing at the other fallen soldier's armor. The Death Knight agreed, giving a slight nod before roaring and running at an alarming speed towards the village. My lord, what should we do with these lowly mortals? Albedo asked, her voice slightly muffled from her armor. For now, the armored ones are the enemy. Ignore the rest. Inns stated to Albedo, to which she bowed in acknowledgement. Understood, she stated, with no emotion in her voice. Citronides said nothing, only gazing at the sisters. Ins, Albedo, and Citronitas started to walk, slowly following the path of the Death Knight. Wall of protection from arrows, anti-life cocoon. There, those spells should keep you safe. Ins said, before walking away from the sisters. Albedo quickly followed, staying by her lord's side. Citronitas, however, stayed slightly longer, looking at Henry and her sister. The white glow of his eye sockets grew brighter and calmed down. It was as if he had a realization of sorts. Create greater item. Citronitas said, as a small teddy bear formed in the air. He gently took the teddy bear and walked up to the sisters. Nemu and Henry held each other tightly, fearing what would happen next. Here, take this, little girl. Citronitas said, kneeling on the ground to face the little girl. He gestured to the bear in his hands and moved it close to Nemu so she could grab it. His words were kind and sweet, filled with no mystery nor unsettling, just sweet. With reluctance, Nemu grabbed the stuffed plushie. The bear was soft and squishy. The materials felt expensive by looks and texture. It was something only a princess could get their hands on. Nemu hugged the bear tightly, just like a typical 10-year-old. Ah, I'm guessing that my master didn't give them, so this is for you, Henry. Citronitas said, taking 2 blowhorns attached to strings and lightly chucking them at her. She fumbled the items in the air but caught them. If you blow in them, an army of goblins you can command will appear before you. He gave no time for the woman to react, going back to speaking. Well, I better get going. My master wouldn't want me here all day now, would we? Citronitas said, getting up from the ground and slowly starting to walk away. Wait. Henry shouted at the man, stuttering slightly. Citronitas stopped and turned his head to face the village girl. Thank you, for saving me, for saving my sister. I owe you everything. Henry said, closing her eyes and bowing her head so far, it touched the ground. It's not a big deal. I'll be seeing you soon, Henry and Nemu Emot. Citronitas said with his typical tone that made you feel uneasy. He turned back, slowly walking to where his sister and his master was. By the time Citronitas reached the village square, all the soldiers of the Baharuth Empire lay motionless on the floor. Pools of blood collected beneath their bodies, their armor covered in grime and sweat, broken beyond repair. In the distance, Citronitas could just make out small figures of white floating beings and an army of horses charging towards them. Oh, how interesting. Gazef Stranoff against the sunlight scripture. Citronitas's POV. Surprisingly, convincing Momingat, Nouwen's Owl gown for me to join him on his adventure wasn't difficult as I first thought. Maybe he felt bad for me staying in my lab 24/7 and wanted me to get some fresh air. That idea was a possibility considering his former life as a salaryman in a dystopian future. Maybe he didn't want me to experience what he did. I'm not too sure. It also wasn't a bad idea to step outside and look at the sun. I haven't seen you in years. I thought to myself. What was the point of reincarnating and not exploring the world? I couldn't stay in that lab forever. The lore of Overlord is so vast. Back in my old world, we only knew a really small portion of the new world. Now that I'm here, why not explore the rest of it? Of course, I'll have to play my cards right. I couldn't just go out and explore the world for no reason. Maybe under the guise of researching magic or being an adventurer, I might. Doing anything else might cause suspicion. But, I guess I can get away with it because of how I was made. Apparently, I was created so that nobody knows what I'm actually thinking, making me scary as I'm unpredictable. That does have its pros as I wouldn't need too much justification to do certain things. Thinking about it now, because of this piece of information, it is highly likely that Demiurge won't flay me alive and my human mind was just overreacting. Maybe the reason why I'm thinking of this now and not before is that my flavor text is slowly changing me. It does make sense. In my past I was fine with killing people considering I mowed down those Russians. I was in the military so it was expected. However, there was a difference between shooting a bullet and using magic. Poison of Ouroboros made blood pour out of every orifice in the soldier's body. If I was a human, I would have puked out my lunch at such a sight. Yet, I was indifferent to the soldier's struggles and pleas for help. I didn't care that he died in such a gruesome way. Even so, in a world like Overlord, it is better to stay safe than sorry. You'll never know what goes on in Demiurge's head. Hell, even Ins didn't know what plans he conjured up. I won't take my chances of possibly being flayed alive by the demon. I'll think this over when I take a nap. I thought, pushing all those ideas to the back of my head. Ins and Albedo were nowhere to be seen. They were in the chief's house, gaining information about the new world and its history. It is to my assumption that Ins gave away that little memento to teleport Gazef away and deal with the sunlight scripture later on. Should I teleport to where Ins and Albedo are? Maybe I should help Gazef and his men. They are just soldiers protecting their people. I would ignore their fight if it wasn't for my human mind. I still retain my humanity. I thought really hard for a while. So much so that by the time I looked back at the fight, most of it was already over. From where I stood, it looked like most of the soldiers from Riestais were dead, impaled by the swords of the summoned angels or killed by magic. Pools of blood collected beneath their bodies and they cried and groaned in pain. The soldiers of the sunlight scripture held their hands in the air, palms facing the tired warrior captain. Incantations of green, blue, purple, and red glowed from their hands, shooting out various magic spells. The warrior captain did his best to dodge whatever spells he could. However, his body was worn out from using multiple martial arts to slay the summoned angels. left shoulder, right abdomen, right thigh were all hit by magic. Despite the barrage of spells, the warrior captain stood strong. The grip on his chipped sword had never been tighter. The soldiers continued their barrage with even more joining in. This time, Gazef's armor slowly broke away, worn out from the constant firing of spells. Urgh. Gazef grunted in pain, some blood trickled from his mouth. He gritted his teeth and took heavy breaths before coughing blood. He changed his stance, panting to catch some air. He took a glance upwards and was met with an army of summoned angels in the dozens. The angels wasted no time, belittling the warrior captain. Gazef activated a martial art as his sword glowed a faint red. He parried the first 2 hits of the angels but was caught off guard by an attack from behind. Gwah! He exclaimed, grunting, and using all his might to attack the angel. He turned around to kill another angel and immediately parried another attack. Yet, even after all that, an angel got the best of him, using its sword and piercing the warrior captain's left abdomen. Blood spewed out in all directions of the incision as he fell to the floor. I had to admit, the raw determination and perseverance in the man was no joke. It was no wonder Wyans respected such a man. Finish him off. However, don't just attack with just one. Ensure his death with multiple angels, said the leader of the Sunlight Scripture, Nigun Gridluin. The angels slowly flew towards the warrior captain. Their glowing yellow swords crackled in the air. Gazef grumbled before reaching out to his sword. Don't underestimate me, Gazef exclaimed, roaring with a fiery passion. Now proudly standing tall, despite all his wounds that covered his broken body, he firmly moved his sword in front of him, before speaking to his enemies. I am the kingdom's head warrior. I am one who loves and protects this country. There is no way I'd lose to bastards who want to dirty this kingdom. Gazef roared at the captain of the Sunlight Scripture. You will die here precisely because you spout such nonsense. Gazef Stranoff, what can you do in this state? Nigun mocked the proud warrior captain, keeping his calm tone of voice. Once we kill you, we will massacre the rest of the villagers. Stop this futile resistance and fall quietly. As an act of mercy, I will make your death painless, Nigun said, ending his little speech with a sly smirk. At the hearing of Nigun's ramblings, Gazef gave the best chuckle his body could allow without hurting himself. What's so funny? Nigun asked, forming a disapproving smile. What a fool. There is someone far stronger than me in this village, Gazef said with certainty. A bluff. Nigun seemed amused by the words of the warrior captain, deeming them ramblings by a dying man. Angels, kill Stranoff. It was then when I used greater teleportation to teleport next to where Gazef was. Gazef turned to me with a face of shock. However, it didn't last long when he disappeared. In his place stood a tall-robed man with a smiling mask. Beside him was a woman clad in black armor. Yes, it was my sister Albedo Endens, who had used the item he gave to Gazef earlier to switch places at the right moment. Lord Ins. I acknowledged his presence with a slight nod. Citronidas, I presume you were watching his fight? Ins asked, to which I nodded in agreement. Indeed. The man Gazef Stranoff is indeed a praiseworthy and honorable man. I meant every word that came out of my mouth. After watching him struggle yet continue to stand tall, who wouldn't praise him? Of course, my sister Albedo had some remarks. While I do respect you, little brother, humans are nothing but insects. They should be groveling at Lord In's feet, she exclaimed. I sighed, my voice filled with annoyance from the blatant racism. Sister, just because they are human, doesn't mean they are parasites. I started. Though I didn't see her face, I knew she was gritting her teeth. Shit, I better change this quickly. I thought to myself. Do you not know of Lord In's plan? I questioned. Albedo didn't say anything. Of course, I didn't know his plan either. I just made that up on the spot. My words did come out as ambiguous, leaving her to carefully think about what I said. At least that worked. I'm not sure how though. I thought as I turned my attention to the scene ahead of me, stepping to the side of Ins to get a better view. Who are you? Nigun's voice echoed throughout the battlefield. Though slightly shocked at the newcomers, he kept his composure. Nice to meet you, people of the slain theocracy. My name is Ins Oolgown. But please, call me Ins. You know, I have something of a relationship with those villagers. Ins said, his typical tone filled slightly with malice. Have you come to beg for their lives or just your own? Nigun retorted, his voice filled with false pride. No. Actually, I overheard your conversation with the head warrior. Wanting to kill the innocent villagers can't be more of an offense. Ins stated. Offense? What are you going to do about it, magic caster? Nigun sarcastically said, taunting Ins but pitifully failing. You really have a lot of balls, don't you? Ins said, annoyed at the man's words. Nigun scoffed, slightly frowning. I spent my precious time and energy saving those people, and you brazenly declared your intent to massacre them. Offer your pitiful life to me without resistance. Do this and there will be no pain. However, if you refuse, I swear here and now that you will die painfully and in despair for your imprudence. Ins finished his speech, filled with charisma and passion. Nigun, fed up with all the talking, gave a command to his squad. Have the angels attack, he exclaimed. 2 archangel flames flew towards Ins' position, sword at hand and ready to kill. The 2 angels stabbed Ins through the stomach, but he didn't react at all. How pathetic, Nigun grew a smirk. This is what happens when you make stupid bluffs. Nigun's voice lost its pride when he saw the angels struggling in the air. Didn't I tell you, offer your life without resistance? Don't you know it's important to listen to warnings of others? Ins said, holding both angels on each hand. He then threw the angels on the ground, pinning them so they couldn't escape. The angels turned into dust from such a force. Impossible, said one of the soldiers. It has to be a trick, said another. Internally, I giggled at their reactions. High-tiered physical nullification. It's a passive skill that completely nullifies the physical attacks of low-leveled weapons and monsters. Ins educated the soldiers. I wonder if I have such a passive. I thought. I want to know why you can use magic from Yggdrasil. Ins asked. But, I'll put that aside for now. It's my turn. I interrupted him. My lord, it is pointless to waste your mana on such low-leveled beings. Please, let me fight them, I said. The whole reason why I came down here was to test out more magic. Very well. You may go ahead, Citronidas. Ins said. Negan, who was now freaking out, screamed to all his soldiers. Have all the angels attack at once? Hurry. Negan frantically said. Albedo, stand back. Let Citronidas have his fun, he said. Albedo nodded in agreement and jumped back from her position. Ins also stood back, deciding to watch. All the angels were primed and ready, flying in the air and about to charge. Negative burst. I shouted as a wave of black negative energy expanded around me in a sphere. It was the same spell Ins used in the show. The angels that were charging at my position all disintegrated. The shock and awe in the voices of the soldiers were quite amusing. Filled with disbelief and doubt. I'm impossible. Negan could only mutter as his eyes shook. Monster. They shouted, as they all started to fire spells at me. Holy Ray. Poison. Shockwave. Confusion. Fire Rain. Charge of Stalagmite. Open Wounds. Fire. Blindness. Word of Curse. All of their spells were ineffective against me, absorbed by an ominous purple shield that surrounded my body. Ins, who was behind me, muttered something. I couldn't hear from all the blasts and shouting. However, it was most likely to do with what the soldiers were casting. Eventually, the soldiers stopped casting their magic, most likely running out of mana to use. Negan shouted to the angel that was by his side. Principality of Observation, attack, he exclaimed. The bigger angel that had a shield attached to its arm, brought forth a mace to its hands. It came towards me and raised its weapon high, bringing it down with tremendous force. Sadly, it was no match for me. I caught the weapon with one hand. I didn't feel an ounce of pain from the thing. My, how useless, I said, my voice sounding ominous, creepy, and unknown, making the soldiers quiver. I raised a finger towards the angel that was in my grasp. Hellflame. I said as a small flame came out of my finger. It quickly enveloped the angel, who screamed in pain before turning into nothing but ash. One hit, the soldiers exclaimed. The sheer despair across all their faces brought me an unusual pleasure. The once proud Negan now had bloodshot eyes as he bit his lip. That's impossible, he exclaimed. Impossible, I asked. Anything is possible, I stated. There is no way a high-level angel could be destroyed with one spell, Negan shouted. Captain Negan, what do we do? A soldier asked. It was then Negan regained his composure. Hell, he even smiled. We will summon the highest level angel, Negan exclaimed, slowly pulling out a white crystal from his clothes. The soldiers gasped in awe, gaining a new hope. I overheard Ins talking behind me, faint enough for me to hear but not for the soldiers. Could that be a spell-sealing crystal? And from its brilliance, it should be something that can seal anything except a super-tier spell. So they have Yggdrasil items like that as well. That being the case, what kind of angel can they summon? Seraph class. Ins wondered. Albedo, he called out. Yes, my lord. Albedo swiftly replied. Protect me with your skills. While I don't think they can bring out a Seraph Aerosphere, if they manage to summon a Seraph Empyrean, we will have to fight them seriously. Ins said, being cautious as always. My lord, I interrupted him. There is no need for such caution. While it is a good trait to have, why be on guard for an angel that is only in the second sphere? I said, keeping my voice on the low so the soldiers wouldn't hear me speak. I also did this to enforce the idea that I was a knowledgeable NPC on everything magic related. Besides, I knew what I was up against due to the anime. Ins acknowledged my point. Very well, Citronidas. Please, take care of the nuisance for me, he stated, trying to act how he believed an overlord should. I made myself look like such an idiot in front of Citronidas. My overpreparedness made me look like a fool? And an angel in the second sphere? I could punch such a weak creature, Ins thought, scolding himself. Very well, my lord, I said with a slight nod. Look, the shining form of the highest of angels, Negan exclaimed as the crystal glowed brightly. Dominion Authority, Negan exclaimed as the crystal disappeared. In its place was Dominion Authority. It looked way more majestic than it actually was in the anime. White fluffy wings sprouted from its back. Feathers littered all over its body. And in its hands, was a golden mace. This angel is your strongest trump card, I asked. That's right. I have deemed you worthy for me to use this item, Negan exclaimed. I'm speechless, I said, putting a gloved hand on my forehead. Are you afraid? It cannot be helped. This angel single-handedly killed a demon god, Negan proudly stated. How ridiculous. Nanny, such an angel can't last one of my attacks. Oh, how I've wanted to try out my many spells. Such a disappointment, I said. What are you saying? Can't last one of your attacks. Negan stuttered, losing all his confidence. He gulped the saliva that formed in his mouth. It can't be. Impossible? In front of an existence mankind cannot defeat, you're bluffing? Use holy smite. Nigun exclaimed. The angel heeded his words as his mace turned into golden dust. This is 7th tier magic that no man can withstand against. Taste the power that can annihilate demons, the judgment of God. It was then that a ray of pure white came out of the sky and hit me with tremendous force. Yet, it felt like nothing. I didn't feel an ounce of pain or a slight tingle. I didn't even sweat. It was then I giggled. No, I laughed. A laugh so unsettling and frightening that even Ins took a step back from. Nigun lost the smile on his face yet again when he heard my voice. Judgment of gods? I don't even feel an ounce of pain. I exclaimed as I continued to laugh. Maybe if I had said something like what Ins said back in the anime, Albedo would have gone berserk at me being hurt. But, she kept her calm and stayed by Ins's side. Nigun's mouth was open so wide, I swore he dislocated it. The pure terror on his face is something I've never seen in my previous life. It was something that I oddly enjoyed. It is now my turn, I stated, taking a step forward. No despair. I raised my hand, palm facing the angel before casting out a spell. Beelzebub. I simply said, as a small dark void formed from my palm. Quickly, the void expanded and expanded, to the point where it reached the height of the angel. Then, the black void surrounded the angel, consuming it before returning to my hand. Like that, the holy aura of the angel disappeared as Ins and Albedo stepped forward. A power that surpasses demons. Who in the world are you? Nigun said, losing all his confidence and falling to his knees. Ins gown. Ins said, walking towards the group slowly. I stepped back behind him. In the past, there was no one that did not know this name. The sky suddenly cracked before reforming. What was that? Nigun frantically asked. It seems that someone was watching you from afar, using information magic. Ins calmly replied to the captain. My counterattack defense barrier activated, so they must not have seen much. He continued. So my country was watching me. Nigun said, his voice now quiet. Enough playing around. Ins said. Wait a second. Nigun regained his voice seemingly out of nowhere. Ins gown. No, Lord? All of us? No, I alone am enough. The soldiers gasped in shock. If you spare my life, I will give you whatever you want. Nigun pleaded. You are mistaken. Albedo said. Huh. Lower life forms such as yourselves should bow their head and be thankful when their lives are taken. Albedo stated. Lower life forms. Nigun was about to piss his pants. If I remember correctly, stop this futile resistance and fall quietly. As an act of mercy, I will make sure your death is painless. Isn't that what you said? Ins asked, taking off his mask to show his skeletal face. No words came out of Nigun, along with the other soldiers' mouths. Albedo, would you be so kind as to capture each soldier and that Nigun for me? I believe that their knowledge will be very valuable for Nazarick. Ins stated. Very well, my lord. Albedo said, slightly bowing before quickly knocking out each person before they could even speak. Ah, so it's finally over, huh? I thought. I knew that the questioning would be pointless as the soldiers refused to speak and their bodies vanished after dying. But under the guise of my magical knowledge, I could lie and give more insight into the slain theocracy. That would help Nazarick develop further. An example can be the world item downfall of castle and country. If I tell Ins about that, Shaltir won't be brainwashed. Thus, he wouldn't need to spend so much gold in reviving her. However, the brainwashing does help Ins realize that the world does have dangers. I'll not interfere, I thought. Keeping the plot the same as the storyline or as close to so I can predict what will come next. Lord, seeing that everything here is done, I shall be going back to my quarters. I stated. Very well, make sure to inform me with your findings on the magic of this world. Ins said. I bowed in agreement before teleporting back to my lab with the ring of Ins gown. A parting gift by my creator before he left. Chapter 7, A Lesson in Torture. Narrator's POV. 1000 Leagues Astrologer, a girl with short, very light brown hair and orange eyes. She wore a female school uniform and purple-framed glasses. Usually, she was a bubbly and uplifting person. Someone that can bring life into any group of friends just by talking. However, right now, she was afraid and shivering in fear. She was assigned by Raymond Zargloronzon, the Cardinal of Earth, to watch over the sunlight scripture. It was supposed to be a simple task. Observe that Nigun successfully accomplished his task in killing the warrior captain of Riestais, Gazef Stranov. However, something unforeseen happened. She wasn't able to spectate Nigun's mission. She tried using magic to bypass whatever blocked her. But, it was no use. No matter what information prying spell she cast, the invisible wall didn't budge. Before she was cut off from watching, she caught a glimpse of 3 unknown beings. One clad in black armor, another with a large frame covered in robes and a smiling mask. However, it was the last one that put her off. Astrologer couldn't help but feel off. The feeling was comparable to how you know you're being watched in the dark. She could never forget those dark robes, those dark feathers, the mask, and top hat and eyes. Those white, glowing eyes. Every time Astrologer thought of them, she couldn't help but shiver. So mysterious, so ominous, so hypnotic. Astrologer thought. It felt as if her soul was being judged. It wasn't until a few minutes of failures when Astrologer could finally view what happened. To say she was shocked would have been an understatement. The whole sunlight scripture was gone. One moment, they were about to kill Gazef. The next, they vanished with Gazef being saved. She could only presume a fight occurred and that the scripture lost. However, no evidence said otherwise. There were no holes in the ground nor bloodstains. She tried detection magic but that was no use. Beings that can evade my 4th tier magic? By the 6 great gods, she thought. Her prying wasn't useless though, she was able to catch the names of who the beings were. The woman clad in black was Albedo. The ominous figure was Citronides. The last one, presumably the master or boss, was in Olgaun. Whoever they are, those beings are a danger to humanity. The cardinals aren't going to like this. Astrologer said to herself, exiting her room. And there's the issue of Zeshi Zetsume. I wonder if her attention is caught by these mysterious outsiders. Astrologer could only wonder. If by some chance that either this Citronides or Olgaun is stronger, she's going to chase them to the ends of the earth, wanting either of them to impregnate her or something. Astrologer sighed, heading to the office of the cardinals to report her findings. Scene change. Citronides's POV. I, with the aid of the ring of Olgaun, teleported back to my lab. More specifically my room. It was probably the only place in Nazareth where I can take off my mask and act like myself. Putting my mask on the desk, I sighed before jumping into a modern swivel chair. I have to thank Create Greater item for this. I thought, moving around the room on the chair. I accomplished quite a lot today. Tried out more magic, killed some things to test out passives and gave a teddy bear to a girl. I said to myself, turning my attention to other thoughts and ideas that crossed my mind during my time in Karn Village. Firstly were the slight personality changes I noticed. When I used Poison of Ouroboros, a powerful 8th tier spell, the soldier suffered a terrible fate. Of course, I didn't know to what extent how the spell would react to a living being. I only knew that it was a powerful damage over time spell that could only be removed by a similar power spell. That's what the spell description on the book said anyway. I was fine with killing people in my previous life. But there was a difference between a gunshot wound and seeing someone bleed from their eyes, mouth, ears, nose, and puke their innards at the same time. I'm sure if I saw that in my previous life, I would have PTSD. Not here though. Just like Ins when he killed the soldier with grasp heart, I felt indifferent. Nay, a small part of me in the back of my head enjoyed his suffering. Tabula didn't write in my lore that I'm some sort of sadist, right? Maybe I enjoyed the guy dying because he was going to hurt someone innocent. I pondered. Only time will tell what my personality is. Right now, I still have my feelings and emotions. At least I'm no monster, I thought. That brought up the next issue, my emotions. When I finally got control over my body, my emotions were all over the place. But the most prevalent emotions included caution and fear. Out of all anime and light novels in my previous life, Overlord was by far the most entertaining and captivating. The characters, their personality, and interactions. Let's not forget the lore and world building. If I wasn't fighting a war or hanging out with some friends, I would be reading the light novel online while eating breakfast. So, when the fictional world became real, of course, I freaked out. Most beings here are sadistic, monstrous, and care little for human life. Beings that can break every bone in your body and go back to eating their lunch. However, as time passed, I slowly became more comfortable around some of the inhuman NPCs. Hell, I even said to my sister Albedo, just because they are human, doesn't mean they are parasites. I didn't have the balls to say that on the first day, knowing full well that she hates humans. However, I will still do my best to avoid Shaltir. It could be that whatever Tabula put in my flavor text is subconsciously affecting me. It could be my -500 karma value or job classes. Maybe a mix of all three. I have no fucking clue. Maybe that since I had a past life, my old personality and flavor text is slowly blending together, just like Ins in the show. That too is another possibility. That could explain why people act the way they do around me. When I handed Enri the lesser health potion, her eyes were filled with fear. Maybe it was a passive of mine. I thought. No, it could be that my character has a natural aura similar to Ins. Everyone thinks of him to be some royal and all-knowing figure just by a glance and an exchange of a few words. When the sisters and the slain theocracy soldiers met me, they were unsettled and hesitant. If I have such a natural aura of that caliber, how can I be an adventurer? I pondered. Maybe pull an Ins and be some mysterious hero from a far-off land? That could work considering I was made to be mysterious. I concluded, getting off from my swivel chair. I guess I should start with that report Ins wanted me to make. I said to myself, going to a shelf to get some paper and a pen. I'll just write out what I know so far. Maybe add a few extra bits of useful or speculative information. Writing the report was quite easy. I just wrote about how martial arts are only available to New World denizens and the use of low-tiered spells. Of course, since Karn Village was only my first outing, I could only write so much. Nothing about Flood or Paradine as I'm not aware of him, nor the use of wild magic and the Dragon Lords. For now, that will be a secret only I shall know and will reveal when the time is right. I gave the report to the first assistant that I found, Elena, before reading another book related to alchemy. I wasn't aware of how long I was reading for. It could have been minutes or it could have been hours. Either way, one of my maids stopped me from reading to inform me of something. Lord Citronides. Rimuru interrupted me, talking rather meekly similar to Mare. Yes. I simply replied, getting back into character. Rimuru's cheeks slightly blushed. Either the world has anime-like elements, or the chick has a crush on me. Probably both, I concluded. Well, Rimuru hesitated before finally talking. Lady Esteth wishes to see you. Rimuru finished, adding a slight bow in the end. The mention of the name didn't make me shiver out of fear. Unlike a few days ago, though my heartbeat increased slightly, I was mostly calm. What could she want with me? I thought. She is in love with me. Could it be a date? No, it couldn't be. Where is she now and what does she want? I asked. I was curious but Rimuru seemed to think that my voice was filled with annoyance. Well, she is on the 5th floor. As for what she wanted, I do not know. She kept that piece of information away from me. Rimuru said in a hurry. That just enforces the idea of me having some natural ominous aura. This is gonna be annoying. I need to figure out a way to turn that off. I guess I don't have a choice. Besides, it would be a good idea to get a gist of what Esteth is like. Who knows what Blue Planet put in her bio? It could be totally different from her alchemist kill counterpart. If that's the case, I overreacted for nothing and acted like a fool. I considered different possibilities before coming to a decision. Alright, I'll be heading to the 5th floor right now. I'm not doing anything of importance anyway, I said to Rimuru. She bowed and left me to my own devices. Thankfully, I have the ring of In's gown. If not, I wouldn't be able to teleport anywhere and have to go to the floor manually, I thought, internally smiling at the gift my creator left me. Like before, I went to the door of the alchemy room. However, I instantly cast the 10th tier spell gate to the 5th floor. A purple swirl opened and expanded to my size for me to enter. I walked through the gate without hesitation as the scene around me changed. The place was an icy barren landscape filled with snow. The place seemed huge with the surrounding hills littered all over the place. Shards of ice were a frequent sight as well. Some seemed to be by themselves while others were in clusters of different sizes. In the distance, I could make out a building with 2 floors. In simple words, the building reminded me of a grand mansion. In reality, it was the frozen prison. The prison's finer details were covered in snow and ice, making the building more bleak and eerie. That must be the building Nigredo and Neuronist Painkill inhabit. Nigredo controls the upper portion while Neuronist controls the underground. I'll stay away from that place for now, I concluded, walking and wandering around the area for a short while. Despite the place looking colder than the Antarctic tundra, I didn't feel an ounce of cold on any part of my body. Either the gear I'm wearing has some magic enhancements, or I have some immunity to harsh temperatures. Either way, this is fucking awesome. I won't sweat in super hot places or shiver in cold ones, I concluded, happy with the new realization. I continued to wander around the frozen area when a voice called out to me. Citrinitas, you're finally here. The feminine voice called out. I turned to where my name was called out and was met with Esteth standing on a snowy hill. She wore her typical costume. A white general outfit that made her curved body stand out more. It contrasted my black clothes and robes. She was giving a warm smile, contrasting her cold nature. She waved and gestured for me to go in her direction. This doesn't seem so bad. But, what the hell does she want from me? I wondered. Fly. I cast the 3rd tier spell, quickly arriving at the Ice Queen's location, softly landing in front of her but keeping some distance. Esteth, it is a pleasure to meet you, I said with politeness. Esteth slightly gasped, as if her heart skipped a beat. It's a pleasure to meet you too, beloved. I'm glad you came. I thought you would ignore me and focus on your alchemical studies, she said, turning away slightly. Ignore her? Oh, I understand what she means. I realized. As an area guardian, I have special privileges. I can choose to listen and / or follow the orders of floor guardians. Even if I were based on the 7th floor, Demiurge can't order me around. Only the overseer Albedo Endins himself can order me around. Though most area guardians listen and follow orders of floor guardians out of respect, I kept to myself to keep the image of what my character is supposed to be. Thinking about it now, I definitely overreacted. Demiurge can't just order me to be flayed alive. I guess whatever is in my lore is helping me see new angles and viewpoints on things. It has only been 4 days since I've regained freedom yet, my mind is being affected. I wonder how long until I succumb to whatever monster I was intended to be, I thought. Well, with recent events, I have been forced to stay in my alchemy lab doing tests on each potion to see if the transportation affected the alchemy process, I said. Esteth seemed to understand my situation, looking back at me. Well, she started to rub her thighs together. I'm glad you answered my call. As your fiancé, we should spend more time together, Esteth said, reaching for my hand and holding it. I don't recall being engaged, I stated. Mao, it's because you stay in that lab of yours, silly. Your creator, Lord Tabulus Maragdana, along with my creator, Lord Blue Planet decided for us to be engaged, Esteth exclaimed, now using my arm as some sort of cuddle pillow and rubbing her cheeks on my arm. That explains it, I thought. Hey, if the chick isn't like her alchemist kill counterpart, I am perfectly fine being engaged to this beauty, I concluded. I don't remember much from the time. However, Lord Tabula and Lord Blue Planet met up and said something along the lines, suck it, Pararonkino. How I couldn't stop smiling for days, Esteth exclaimed. I said, slightly surprised by the story. Of course, that beautiful face of yours under that mask will attract the attention of other women. That vampire whore, she said as her smile and joy instantly turned cold as her voice filled with anger. Maybe she's just jealous? I'll give her the benefit of the doubt, I thought. However, as long as you make me your first wife and don't flirt with that flat vampire, I'm perfectly fine with you having other women. Though, I'd prefer if I'd have you all by myself, Esteth said, in a rather seductive voice. She crossed her arms to emphasize her already exposed breasts. Well, I can't leave now, can I? Let's just go with the flow and hope for the best. Deciding to let fate guide me, I stayed. Let's cut to the chase, I said. Why did you bring me all the way from my alchemy lab to here? My voice sounded both soothing yet filled with anger and annoyance. I love it when my beloved is harsh, so strong and manly, Esteth thought. Ahem, she cleared her voice before speaking. A date, she stated. A date, I questioned. Indeed, my beloved. As I want to spend more time with you, a date is the best option. I read it from a book in Ashurbanipal. Okay, and what are we going to do on this date? I asked, curious as to what Esteth would say. I've never been on an actual date in my past life. The girls in high school just wanted me for my looks and were pretty much assholes. I remembered my past life for a bit before focusing on the present. Why torture the people you fought in Karn Village, of course, Esteth said with cheer and glee. I fucking knew it. The girl is a crazy psycho. I can't torture people. Well, I've never tried in this new body of mine. I know I can handle gruesome deaths from killing the soldier, but actively inflicting pain to gain information? I'm not sure. Why not go on a more normal date? Eating food or watching a movie? I offered. Esteth pouted at the words. But honey, I want to spend time with just you. I don't want anyone interrupting our date, she retorted, now giving puppy eyes. This is such a pain, I thought. With reluctance, I sighed before agreeing to Esteth's date. Her mood instantly cheered before ripping off my mask and suffocating my face in her boobs. What the fuck? Why is she so strong? I tried pulling away but I didn't budge one bit. Her physical attack must be higher than mine, I concluded. Teleportation. I used the 5th tier spell to escape the grip of the Ice Queen. The human and sex-deprived part of me wanted to stay like that forever. However, I must keep my composure and facade as a mysterious NPC. Therefore, I teleported out of her grasp. Esteth sighed before regaining her composure. Well, if you will follow me, I'll lead you to where we will have our date and spend our time together, she said, acting more mature and noble-like. I put my mask back on before closely following behind her. We had small talk before arriving at the mansion I previously saw when arriving on the 5th floor. Instead of heading into the visible building itself where Nigradu was stationed, we entered a secret compartment that led to the basement of the prison. So this is the Chamber of Truths, huh? I wonder if the existence of Esteth negated the existence of Neuronist Painkill. Nazarick had a limited NPC level cap, after all. I wondered at the thought as I looked around the prison. The main portion of the prison was mostly dark, only lit up by flaming torches and candles. The floor had an odd but unique pattern that reminded me of waves at sea. The pillars were no different and had a similar pattern. Chains, gates, and metal bars were commonplace. Chains hung from walls to pillars, both for the use of decoration and cuffs. The prison cells themselves varied. Most were empty and filled with the typical items. Chains, torture devices of all shapes and sizes. I wouldn't be surprised if there's an entire warehouse filled with torture devices somewhere in the place. This is your domain, huh? I asked, looking around the area. Indeed. Are you impressed? Esteth asked, as she softly gripped my gloved hands. Loki, I'm petrified. It's all right. It reminds me of my alchemy lab in a way. The lighting and all, I replied. Really? You should bring me to your lab sometime in the future, Esteth said. She stopped, turned to her right, and leaned closer to where my ear would be if it wasn't covered by my mask. Maybe, we could spend some time in your room, Q-fu-fu-fu-fu. Esteth blushed red as her breath grew hot. I'm not as scared as I used to be. However, never stick your dick in crazy, I thought, keeping my composure. Who knows? I replied rather ambiguously. We continued to walk for a few more minutes. The place was bigger than initially thought. But, we finally arrived at one particular cell. Esteth opened the gate as we entered. I was met with a blonde man held by chains bolted to the wall behind him. His arms stretched out with his legs slightly separated. His position reminded me of a jumping jack where you move your arms and legs outwards. Of course, he was naked with a metal bar strapped to his mouth. I believe that this is the captain of that scripture you fought a few hours ago. He hasn't woken up yet since the fight. I wanted us to personally torture him as a way of bonding together, Esteth said, slightly blushing from the sentence. I want to go back to Shaltir. Never mind, she is also crazy. Can I have a less insane woman as a love interest? There was nothing notable about the man, except he had a micropenis, that I did find funny. You don't have any assistants here? I asked, curious to see if my existence removed Neuronist Painkill from Nazarick. Indeed, it is just me. I could summon assistants, which I will later to torture the other soldiers. Other than that, this is my domain as co-guardian of the 5th floor, Esteth replied. Well, we better wake the guy up, I said. Esteth agreed, walking up to the man and slapping his cheek with a force so hard it could have broken a brick. Nigun instantly jolted awake, attempting to break free. I saw his eyes look around frantically, noticing the restraints and then myself. Nigun tried to scream but the bar in his mouth didn't allow that. Hello, Nigun, I said. My voice sounded ominous, making every hair in his body freeze up. I wanna play a game, I stated, continuing to act in character in front of Death. To keep it simple, we have questions that you have answers to. You can choose to answer them. However, I walked up to a tray that held multiple torture devices. If you don't want to answer us or lie, there will be consequences, I said, showing the device in my hand. A small stick that was rounded at the end, just big enough to fit into the urethra. Covered around the end were sharp spikes that could easily rip flesh. What will it be? Knee gun? Spill your knowledge, or face eternal suffering? A/N. Look, I'm out of pre-stocked chapters. This is because I have schoolwork to do. Being a high school freshman sucks. 2 novel studies, 2 math tests in a week and a medical studies project. If you're on web novel, drop a review or a nice comment and maybe some power stones. If on Wattpad, vote and leave a nice comment to decrease my sadness XD. Chapter 8, The Plague Doctor and the Archdevil. A/N. I forgot to show pictures of the prison/torture chamber from the last chapter. Though nobody complained, here are the pictures. Use them as a reference. Take care. Time skip, 6 days. Citrinitas's POV. Torture. You'd think that inflicting physical and psychological pain is an easy way of extracting information. It's shown on all the shows, so it should work, right? Back in my old world, it was actually the opposite and quite ineffective. It's unreliable, may damage subsequent collection efforts, and can induce the source to say what he/she thinks the interrogator wants to hear. I'm not sure whether the fact that I was transported to a new world, as Death is too good at her job, or that I was there to reduce the man's pain. But, Negun spilt more knowledge than I would have imagined. In a way, it worked like good cop/bad cop. If Negun didn't answer a question, Death would mercilessly torture the guy. When it was my turn, I offered to relieve his pain if he spilt the information about his country. It was definitely more than what he said in the show. He talked about the theocracy's magical artifacts and the general history of the world. Seeing the captain of the Sunlight Scripture suffer agonizing pain did help solidify some theories I had. Though I did have to personally torture Negun, it wasn't as bad as I imagined it to be. I would have surely thought I'd vomit or argue that torture was bad. That wasn't the case at all. A part of me was indifferent to the ordeal. Torturing Negun was the equivalent of doing a mundane task such as math. While it was manageable, it didn't bring me joy. However, another part of me did enjoy his pain. Not to the level of Death who was laughing, but more or less a giggle or chuckle. The same type of giggle or chuckle you'd make when you hear a funny dad joke. I figured that this was the work of 2 things. The slow blending of my emotions and my passive skill. While I don't have an emotional nullifier such as N's due to not being undead, I do have something similar. It was more like a passive that helps me keep calm in any situation. It reminded me of the skill Cold-Blooded from Second Life Ranker. A skill that can help me complete more inhumane tasks that any normal human couldn't. Thankfully, unlike the emotional nullifier, the passive retained my emotions. For simplicity's sake, I'll refer to my passive as Cold-Blooded. Furthermore, Negun didn't mention anything really important such as Godkins or downfall of castle and country. The brainwashing of Shaltir is quite an important event in the series that leads to a multitude of things. From letting Ns know that there are dangers in the new world to increasing Momon's reputation. Also, Shaltir becomes smarter after the ordeal and doesn't directly rush into conflict. Of course, there are personal benefits for me. Stuff like seeing Ns battle Shaltir and hopefully seeing some new spells I may be able to use. As a bonus, I'd also be getting a world item due to Ns paranoia. Who would turn down the chance of getting a world item? Certainly not me. I've already accepted the fact that my mere existence will create unforeseen ripples in the plot. The moment his death appeared, things were bound to change. However, if Shaltir doesn't get brainwashed, it would throw all my current plans out the metaphorical gutter and make all my future knowledge irrelevant. Just like how I'd let Shaltir get brainwashed, there will be a few other key components that need to stay the same. Events such as the demonic incursion and the annual war must happen as their benefits are too great. To me, it doesn't matter when they take place. As long as it happens, I'm fine. Naturally, I have my own set of plans that will speed up Nazarik's conquest. Shaltir's brainwashing, which just so happens tomorrow, provides a unique window of opportunity. The appearance of the Black Scripture. This is important as if I kill enough of the members, I'll catch the attention of a certain half-elf. Yes, Zeshi Zetsume herself. The reason is that she is quite a useful tool. Though not confirmed, it was hinted in the plot that the theocracy carefully manipulated her and sparked her hatred towards her father. This resulted in Zeshi constantly training and wanting revenge. Because of her bloodline, she's one of the strongest beings in the new world. Being a godkin meant that she is a direct descendant of a player. This raises her potential exponentially, letting her break the cap of New World denizens. Being part elf resulted in Zeshi having a longer lifespan. With how much she has been training for, along with her unknown talent, it is no wonder why she wishes for someone strong to appear. If I catch her attention and beat her, which would be an easy task, she will follow me to the ends of the earth. Hell, with how crazy Zeshi is, she would most likely betray the theocracy just to have sex with me. This would put the country between a rock and a hard place. She also has plenty of information and access to the theocracy's treasures, another bonus for me. Now, will there be issues between her along with Shaltir and his death? 100%. Will I have sex with her? 100% not happening as I'll never stick my dick in crazy. However, having another woman infatuated with me is a small price to pay for Nazarik's benefit and speeding up the plan for world domination. After all, whatever benefits Nazarik indirectly benefits me considering I live here. Catching the attention of Zeshi isn't the only set of plans I have. I've had the thought of being an adventurer for quite some time. But, when Ins offered me a spot in his adventure group, I had to refuse. This of course was under the pretext of me already having a plan and being busy in the lab doing alchemy things. It would be in my interest to let Momon take all the spotlight instead of trying to share it. Mainly because when the Sorcerer Kingdom is established, the people of Irantal won't run away out of fear. This is also because I have other plans that would conflict if I joined his adventure team. Besides, I would rather be a solo adventurer somewhere else where my direct interference won't drastically change the main timeline, at least for the first few months. Instead of being an adventurer in Riestais or the Baharuth Empire, I would rather go to a place such as the Dragon Kingdom, a country that up until Volume 14, doesn't interfere with the plot. It would make sense as I could have the excuse of wanting to study wild magic in the area. Fighting beastmen would also help hone my magical skills. Me being there could also be under the pretext of making both kingdoms submit to the rule of Ins. However, if I don't become an adventurer, there is also the chance to cause chaos with Jaldabaoth in Riestais and the Roble Holy Kingdom. A small part of me wants to join in on the fun solely for the chaos, though I'm sure that's the effect of my character lore. But, increasing the threat of the demonic incursion can benefit the Sorcerer Kingdom and speed up world domination. For example, after Jaldabaoth's defeat and in starting his religion in the Roble Holy Kingdom, I could be causing chaos in the Dragon Kingdom or the Karnassus City-State Alliance. Thus, in spreading his great name and religion more after defeating me. Geez, so many fucking possible plans. Should I be an adventurer? Or should I be a chaos-causing demon lord? Maybe, both. I thought, sighing and leaning on my chair. Is everything okay, Lord Citronidas? Elena asked me, who heard my sigh as she passed by. Everything is fine. Thank you, Elena. I swiftly replied. During the 6 days after Nigun's torture, I've been practicing and getting more confident with interactions. I only speak what's necessary, keeping a polite tone at all times. Acting mysterious and ominous basically comes naturally. People are afraid of my mysterious nature as they can't read my emotions or predict what I'll do. The ominous part comes from body language and my external looks. Acting with this layer of politeness at all times adds to my nature. It's pretty much impossible to decipher any of my actions, at least to the normal denizens of Nazarek. I've even gone out of the alchemy lab and fully explored the 9th floor to the best of my abilities. Sadly, Shaltir was always on my tail and poorly attempting to seduce me. Thankfully she left not long ago to complete her little mission. A request from one of the floor guardians came in not too long ago. Elena informed me. Is it Esteth? Not her again. She's too crazy to deal with. She always tries to frag me to her prison to either torture or seduce me. I internally sighed. If it's... No, it is not Esteth this time. Elena clarified the issue. It's Demiurge. Oh, how interesting, I thought. At first, I was mortified by the archdevil. But, as time passed, I've realized that my fear of being flayed was misplaced. However, to say that the demon is smart would be an understatement. Personally, I'm more afraid of not meeting the guy's expectations as the master alchemist than anything else. Do you know where Demiurge is, Elena? I asked, keeping my polite tone. Elena slightly blushed before clearing her throat. He's currently with Sushef in the bar not too far from here. Elena informed me. Well, I'm not doing anything of importance right now. Sure, I'll visit him, I said, making up my mind. Elena nodded in acknowledgement before scuffling away. I guess something like this was inevitable, I thought, taking in a deep breath. Just act like how you acted with every other NPC. You handled Esteth and Shaltir. You got this. I gave myself an internal prep talk before leaving the lab. Scene change. Demiurge's POV. I've always admired my colleagues in Nazarek for what they do. Eclair, who works diligently to keep every part of the Supreme Being's home polished. The Pleiades maids for guarding the 9th floor. Not to mention every one of the floor guardians who have tirelessly defended Nazarek from outside invaders that dare trample on our creators. Each and every one of us fulfills our roles for the Supreme One, Lord Ins, the last Supreme Being and by far the smartest of them all. However, if I was forced to choose out of every denizen of Nazarek that I truly admired, it would be Citronidas. Yes, the Enigma himself. Out of all the denizens of Nazarek, I'd argue that he is the most overlooked. While in terms of combat, Citronidas is stronger than me. However, his presence is shadowed by the likes of Shaltir, Cositus, Sabas, and Albedo. In terms of AoE, he stands no chance against the ice demoness Death herself. It doesn't help that for the most part, Citronidas locks himself up in his lab, not coming out for days, possibly weeks at a time. Because of this, unless you've seen his charming face or wanting to study magic, you'd often forget that he existed in the first place. But, what he lacks in pure combat, Citronidas makes up for intelligence, magical prowess, and alchemy. Though on paper, I'm supposed to be the smartest being in Nazarek, I could never understand, let alone comprehend what goes on in the plague doctor's mind. For the most part, I'm able to read people, their thoughts, their actions, and their body language. However, no matter how hard I try, I could never truly analyze Citronidas. I could only make assumptions about what he's thinking. His movements are elegant and his actions ever-changing. The mask and cape he wears prevent me from reading any real emotion. Citronidas's entire character is shrouded in a cloak of mystery. You can consider him a wild card of sorts. An unknown being that is quite unpredictable. But what puts me on edge is this layer of politeness he carries whenever he talks. I can't quite put it into words. However, you can never tell if he's actually being polite, or just messing with you. It's this ambiguous nature that makes him so dangerous and scary. You'll never know what ideas formulate in his head. That's what makes him one of the 4 smartest beings in Nazarick. While the Floor Guardians defended Nazarick from invaders, Citronidas provided the Supreme Beings with everything they needed. I could only fathom what knowledge Citronidas must have picked up on for being so close to the Supreme Beings themselves. Citronidas was the one who provided the multitude of potions and scrolls for the Supreme Beings on their raids, many of which succeeded only because of his alchemic skills alone. It is thanks to him that Project Rubedo was completed ahead of schedule, just before the Great Raid on Nazarick. It is thanks to Citronidas that my master, Albert Alon Odal, was able to succeed in his Armageddon evil experiment. Though it didn't result in a world item, it became a divine class item. The next best thing. Oh, how I'll always remember the sheer bliss my master had when he used the item. He told me that he single-handedly took over Asgard with the item for 2 days straight. Being so helpful to all of Nazarick, it is no wonder why his alchemy lab is filled to the brim with anything magic or alchemy related. From Lord Tabula's notes, magical artifacts, and flasks or scrolls. If you needed something, you would have to go to his domain. Citronidas's lab is situated on the 9th floor. However, it is mostly hidden from view. The lab itself is heavily guarded by magical enchantments and a great wooden door. Not a flimsy wooden door, but one that can make a king jealous. Only a select few in Narek have witnessed the lab's interior. I only overheard from the other supreme beings that his shelves were more packed about everything magic related to Ashurbanipal itself. Since being transported to this new world, I've only seen Citronidas once. And that was during the Floor Guardian summon on the 6th floor. I scolded myself every day for not taking the initiative to converse with him. However, my recent investigations suggested that Citronidas had been exiting his lab more frequently as of late. Naturally, I had to use the opportunity to converse with a fellow colleague and share ideas. I couldn't order Citronidas to suddenly visit me. I had no such authority. I could only hope that he accepted my measly request. To my delight, one of his assistants informed me that he was coming to the bar. To be honest, a part of me was nervous. Another part was joyous at the idea of discussing the Supreme One's 10,000-year plan. I took a sip of one of the drinks sous-chef graciously provided me. Only time will tell, I thought. I can't wait to get an insight of that brain of yours, Citronidas. Scene change. Narrator's POV. Citronidas arrived at the bar not too long after departing from his lab. By getting used to the surrounding layout of the 9th floor over the week, he was more confident about not getting lost. The bar looked like something out of an expensive and luxurious hotel. With the detailed walls and pristine island, one could mistake the area to be of Victorian descent. However, the modern furniture and appliances scattered around the room dismissed the idea. Unlike in the anime, the bar was much bigger. A flat-screen TV, luxurious seats that could easily be worth a liver. You get the picture. So that must be Demiurge, huh? Citronidas thought, analyzing the archdevil from the entrance. He had his typical look. Demiurge wore his signature striped orange suit. His jet black hair gelled back and his expensive circular glasses added to his formal and sharp aesthetic. Hello, Demiurge. Citronidas started, gaining the attention of the demon. Citronidas, it is quite good to see a fellow colleague. Demiurge swiftly replied, keeping a similar tone of politeness. I do hope my little request hasn't disrupted any plans. Demiurge slightly bowed his head as an apology. No, it is quite all right. I wasn't doing anything rather important at the moment, Citronidas said, relieving the archdevil slightly. Demiurge gestured to the seat in front of him. A table for 2 that was separated by an elegant table. The perfect place to discuss plans. Are you hungry? I'll call over sous-chef if needed. I will say that the food he makes is exquisite, Demiurge said, in the hopes to flatter his colleague. I admire the offer. However, such things are unnecessary, Citronidas commented. How truly foolish of me. Demiurge criticized himself, all the while maintaining his composure. Of course, Citronidas wouldn't want to eat in such a public place. He only lets a select few see his true face. Furthermore, Citronidas most likely has plenty of work to do. He only lied about being free as he didn't want to disrespect me. Pull yourself together, Demiurge. So far so good. Should I go watch a movie later? It has been a while, Citronidas thought, totally unaware of the chaos in Demiurge's head. In that case, why don't we cut to the chase? Demiurge offered. Citronidas slightly nodded his head downwards in agreement. I wanted your input on some things actually. Demiurge started, slightly tightening his black gloves. Really? Citronidas asked. Not in a surprised tone but, rather a more curious one. Indeed. It has been around 10 days since Nazarick's mysterious transportation to this new world. And, having examined the nearby areas with shadow demons and doppelgangers, I couldn't help but notice their magic system. Demiurge shared his thoughts with his colleague. Citronidas tapped his fingers on the table in a rhythmic pattern, thinking about what to say to the archdevil next. The tier magic here shares a striking resemblance to the one in Yggdrasil. Nay, it is an exact copy. But what's odd are the new abilities I've seen. Yggdrasil had no martial arts, which is something unique to this world, Citronides said with a layer of politeness. Demiurge tried reading every movement Citronides took, his every change in tone. Yet, he couldn't fully comprehend any deeper meaning than what Citronides stated. I would love to thoroughly study this new magic system. However, I've only been outside only once and have been busy in the lab, Citronides added. Then why didn't you take the offer of Lordins and go out on an adventure to further study the world's magic? Demiurge questioned. Demiurge's voice was filled with confusion. And rightfully so. Is there something I'm missing here? Demiurge thought, trying to connect the invisible dots together. Citronides contradicted himself. Considering how smart he is, he couldn't have done that. The archdevil furrowed his eyebrows. Unless, I'm missing something of importance here. The reasoning is quite simple. While joining Lordins and Narberl would be beneficial in the short term, Citronides paused for a moment before speaking again. In the long term, my absence from Lordins's group has more drastic advantages, Citronides concluded. How truly foolish of myself. Demiurge criticized himself, internally hitting himself in the head. Of course, Citronides would do such a thing. And for someone such as myself to not have grasped his reasoning earlier, I've made myself look like a total fool. Demiurge sighed, all the while keeping his exterior calm and collected. Please, enlighten me. I've tried my best to grasp the grand plan of our Lord. However, I believe someone of your caliber can reveal a new side to our Lord's plan, Demiurge said, in a half-pleading and flattery voice. You truly don't know? Citronides rhetorically asked, still keeping his polite tone. Demiurge couldn't tell if his colleague was mocking him, or truly confused by his obliviousness. I'm truly imprudent? For me to not even know what Citronides is referring to. I have no words. His every action is covered by a dark shadow, Demiurge concluded, internally sucking in his pride. The moment he arrived in Irantil as the mysterious adventurer Momon along with his companion Nabe, our Lord's plan has already been set in motion. It was as if lightning struck Demiurge's head. It all makes sense now, he thought, shocked by the revelations. Lordins wishes to establish a fake persona in order to calm the people of the kingdom when he eventually takes the throne, Demiurge thought. Precisely, Citronides simply replied. With how weak the majority of beings are in this world, his adventurer persona will become a legendary figure. A hero of sorts, Demiurge muttered. To think that Citronides has such a unique view, a different and incomprehensible way of thinking compared to me. Just marvelous. That is why I chose to refuse my Lord's offer. It would be in our best interest to have Momon be the main and sole attraction rather than to share his spotlight, Citronides said. Indeed. Of course, you could be an adventurer in another country, far enough as to not disrupt our Lord building his persona whilst continuing to study the world's magic, Demiurge added, to which Citronides nodded his head in agreement. I'm already seeing the dots connect. For Momon to be recognized as a true hero, he needs a villain. Demiurge couldn't help but let out a small smirk. Anyways, Demiurge's smirk quickly retracted. Back to martial arts, do you have any theories on how any Nazarick denizen can use them? I would suggest something, but I'm no expert in the art of magic, Demiurge said. Truly, I have no fucking clue, Citronides thought. I'll leave it to whatever comes to my mind. Random bullshit go. I only have theories considering my lack of knowledge. However, from simple observations, only New World denizens can use them. This results in an interesting idea. Breeding. You truly have a bright mind, don't you, Citronides? I wouldn't have come to such a conclusion in days, maybe even weeks. Oh, how I wish to peer into your thought process. Demiurge couldn't help but praise his colleague, already thinking about multitudes of scenarios. Will the offspring of two Nazarick denizens result in the child being able to use martial arts? If not, how about the mix between a Nazarick denizen and an outsider? This does bring into question how powerful the child would be between two parents, Citronides said. While I have started the Happy Farm project, that only aims to solve the issue of only being able to make scrolls due to lack of resources. However, the applications such breeding can result in is intriguing. If children between a being from Yggdrasil and an outsider result in powerful offspring, we can create an army. Demiurge chuckled. I can have my male evil lords forcefully reproduce with unsuspecting human females to give birth to powerful cambions. That brings the question of whether a different race results in a more or less powerful child. Oh, the possibilities are endless. Subarashii Citronides, Subarashii, Demiurge exclaimed, euphoric about new possible experiments to test out. I feel oddly calm about the archdevil talking about having his subordinates raping human outsiders. I guess I'm okay with people such as Riritudio's Custodio being raped. She was a total bitch. But, innocent women? I'm not sure. A part of me seems indifferent and uncaring while the other dislikes the idea. I guess my personalities still haven't mixed yet. I definitely don't like it if innocent women get raped. I'll just have to wait and see what will happen, Citronides thought. This does remind me of the idea about having Lordins produce an heir for Nazarick, Demiurge said, recalling his little conversation back on the 6th floor. Albedo is quite ignorant about this, but skeletons can't reproduce, Demiurge said. That said, considering the number of women that fawn over you, I believe you to be the next best option, Demiurge said with a sly grin. Oh, shit. I wonder what child will result with you having sex with Shaltir or Esteth. I know a few of the Pleiades maids have crushes on you along with your assistants. Pretty much any woman who has seen your true face. That is an issue for a later date, Demiurge. Citronides said, stopping the archdevil from getting any more ideas. Shaltir, Esteth, Zesshi in the future, that sounds like such a hassle. The plague doctor internally complained. Though the Zesshi one is on me, I brought that on myself. Of course, Citronides. I've overstepped my boundaries. I do hope you'll forgive me, Demiurge said, slightly bowing his head. It is quite all right. You're forgiven. Citronides simply replied. Demiurge raised his head back to face his colleague. Back to what you said earlier, about Momon being a hero for the people, don't you think a hero needs a villain? Demiurge asked curiously. He already thought of Jaldabaoth this soon? That is, quite interesting considering he made the whole thing up when Tuare gets kidnapped. Citronides curiously thought. That is indeed true. Considering the beings of this world are of relatively low level, Momon would need a challenge. An antagonist of sorts. Someone that poses a huge threat to the country. Something like an invasion. Demiurge's smile grew bigger. Not a bad idea, Citronides said. Precisely, though I only thought of the plan a few minutes ago, I believe that an invasion of a city can be used as a pretext to kidnap people for the happy farm. Demiurge exclaimed, taking another sip from his drink before putting it down again. Thus, when Momon eventually defeats this force of powerful enemies, he is recognized as a national hero. So, when Lordins makes Nazarick known and takes over the country, the people won't instantly run away due to fear. Citronides added. Indeed, Demiurge said, taking another sip of his drink. After a brief pause, Citronides decided to speak again. I must thank you for this discussion, Demiurge. However, it would be best for me to be leaving, Citronides said kindly. Of course, I must thank you for taking some time out of your day to visit me. I do hope we can meet again like this another time, Demiurge said, giving a warm smile. Indeed, another time, Citronides said before standing up and walking towards the exit. Take care, Demiurge. Citronides said his final farewells before leaving the bar and back to his lab. That was interesting, Citronides thought. I did a pretty decent job, didn't I? I guess giving Demiurge ideas might make certain events happen earlier than later. I wonder if this affects any subplots in the show. I'll just have to wait and see, Citronides thought. His footsteps echoed along the long hallways of the 9th floor before arriving back in his lab. I should prepare for the black scripture tomorrow. Maybe make those cardinals shit their pants out of fear. Chapter 9, What Fear Looks Like. Time skip, one day. Narrator's POV. The sky above was almost pitch black. If it wasn't for the glimmering stars in the distance and the light reflected by the moon, one could assume that their eyes were closed if looking upwards. The surrounding areas were quite dense with trees and vegetation. However, there were patches of open areas here and there. A group of 13 people could be seen traversing the quiet area dressed in unique clothing, from full sets of armor to elegant white robes and even a Japanese schoolgirl outfit. But, their items couldn't be scoffed at despite their odd appearance. What was special about these items were that they were exclusive to only the strongest humans in the region. Not just any normal strong human, but direct descendants from 6 great gods that arrived to save humanity 600 years ago. These beings were known as godkins. Even after their departure back to heaven, the 6 great gods' treasured relics and potent bloodline still flow within each being of the group. This group's name? The Black Scripture of the Slain Theocracy. A special forces unit comprising of individuals with heroic level abilities. The Black Scripture was dead silent, matching the tense atmosphere around them. Only the faint footsteps across the grass and the jingle of their armor created any real sound. It wasn't until one of the smaller members broke the silence of the group. How much longer do we have to go, astrologer? Said the man, who could be mistaken for a boy. The man had medium brown hair and was dressed in pretty much all black with clock-like patterns. He wielded a rapier with one hand along with a miniature toe fat. Didn't I tell you like 15 seconds ago, time fucker? Astrologer jokingly said, lightening the mood up a bit. How many times do I have to tell you? The small-statured man asked half jokingly and half annoyed. It's time turbulence? Turbulence. Time Turbulence shouted, repeating his last name. All right. How about we focus on the mission? Said a blonde-haired man calmly. His name was KSE. Why don't you shut the hell up? Retorted a more bulky man in a gruff voice. He wore bulky black armor around the legs and carried a shield in one hand. His name was Cedran. Settle down, guys, said the man who was leading the whole group. He wore a full set of multicolored armor along with wielding a powerful spear. Though at first glance, one can mistake his androgynous face and long black hair to be female. However, he was a man. This person was the captain of the Black Scripture, Zion. A/N, the actual name for the captain is unknown as of writing this. So, I just gave him a random fantasy name I thought of on the spot. Look, I know some of you have not been in the best of moods due to Clementine's defection, Zion said, turning his head around to eye a few of the members. However, we must focus on our task. Zion finished, turning his head back. He said his last sentence dutifully. As the captain of the Black Scripture, Zion takes his job seriously and won't slack off. However, at times he can be optimistic and more laid back depending on circumstance. Task? We've been walking for good knows how long. When is this catastrophe dragon lord supposed to revive so Care can brainwash it? said a man with a tattoo on his face along with holding a long chain. The guy threw both his hands into the air, creating a Y shape. His name was Beaumarchais. Astrologer sighed, shaking her head slightly at her companion's constant whining. As I've said before, the Dragon Lord will re-emerge near Irantal. We won't have to. Astrologer's talking was interrupted when she felt like something was off. What's wrong, Astrologer? Zion asked, worried about his team members' sudden lack of talking. The other scripture members stopped in their tracks and looked at the girl. Something is coming our way, Astrologer said hesitantly. Her fingers were twitching with fear as her legs moved akin to shaking jello. What? Another wave of those vampire wolves we killed like what? 2 minutes ago, asked a rather old man with a surprising muscular body for his age. The old man put down his abnormally and comically large axe down on the ground that any typical human couldn't even lift. No, something, Astrologer, who was forming tears in her eyes, couldn't even finish her sentence as she was interrupted. God damn it! Speak up, girl, shouted a man in a red skin-tight bodysuit. His name was Tenho. Astrologer couldn't formulate any proper sentence as she raised a shaking finger into the air. She pointed past where the captain was and kept her finger there. The other members, curious as to what Astrologer was pointing at, turned to where she was pointing. Cedran squinted his eyes. The dark night and the faint light made it hard to see long distances. The vegetation that lay ahead didn't help either. I don't see anything, Cedran said to himself. Some of the other members seemed to agree with his statement, nodding collectively. However, Zion knew something was off. Zion was quite experienced in terms of combat. Keeping the country safe from many threats, along with constant training with the secret ace honed his skills drastically. Something powerful is heading towards our direction at an alarming rate, Zion thought. Zion tightly gripped his polearm, gritting his teeth and getting into a stance. Prepare your weapons, he said with a tone that wouldn't take any other suggestion for an answer. Though some of the Black Scripture members obediently followed the orders of the captain, others were more hesitant. Not in a defiant way, but in a confused one. Not seeing the point of doing so. But, not the time turbulence was cut off from speaking when something flew at an immense speed towards their direction. The sheer force of the unknown figure made the trees divert and split. Just like how Moses parted the Red Sea, so did this unknown figure. Stand your ground, Zion shouted at the top of his lungs, raising his polearm in a defensive position. Some of the weaker members of the scripture were being pushed away by the wind of the unknown being. However, when Zion's spear clashed with the mysterious figure, every person flew back at least a couple of meters. The impact between Zion's spear and the weapon of the unknown being created shockwaves that could have blown out the ears of any average human nearby. Zion carefully examined the facial features of the unknown being. What he saw could only be described as nightmare fuel. The most noticeable feature being so close to the thing was its mouth. Zion, who presumed the monster to be female, had a gaping circular maw. Rows of razor-sharp teeth lined the inside of the monster's mouth. There was also the monster's abnormally long tongue, something that would be biologically impossible for a normal human. The closest thing Zion could relate the looks of the monster to would be a lamprey. The monster's inhuman eyes glowed an ominous red. Her form was more hunched over and simian, with deadly claws on both hands and feet. The monster wore a black ragged cloth that fluttered from the powerful winds. Her untidily silver-kept hair too fluttered in the wind, swaying in all directions. The monster's weapon, an abnormally large lance, was held in her right hand grinded against Zion's polearm. Zion could hear the faint cranking of metal on his weapon. A few yellow sparks flew out before quickly dissipating. Is this monster a being under the catastrophe Dragon Lord? Zion thought, keeping his feet firmly against the ground. The monster was none other than Shaltir Bloodfallen in her true vampire form. Currently, she was consumed by pure rage and bloodlust from sensing her summons to have been killed. Considering that whoever killed them were enemies, she threw herself at the opportunity to fight. What the hell is that thing? Screamed a man wielding a large white lance that could be mistaken for a greatsword. I don't fucking know, but it's hella scary, Beaumarchais screamed back. The winds and falling trees were still raging, making it hard to hear each other. Shaltir growled at Zion's spear blocking her spew at lance. She changed tactics and jumped back, distancing herself from the opponent. Prepare for a fight, Zion shouted at the top of his lungs. And get care ready to use it, he continued. Shaltir immediately rushed towards Zion again, this time aiming for Zion's abdomen. But what about the Dragon Lord? Said a woman in white robes. This monster alone is worth it, Zion shouted. Shaltir paid no heed to the ongoing conversation, attempting to kill the Black Scripture captain. However, her lance was blocked for a second time by Zion's polearm. This only enraged her more. Shaltir directed her attention to the pest in front of her. However, something triggered her sixth sense, warning her that something dangerous was going to happen. The enraged Shaltir turned to face an old-looking woman who wore a kipao with a dragon stitched on it. Shaltir changed tactics and decided to eliminate the old woman first. The old man with the large axe decided to step in and help his captain in restraining the monster. The man raised his hands in the air, axe in hand and swung with all his might. Seeing so many outside interferences, Shaltir cast mass hold species to capture them. The old man was suddenly stuck, unable to move any part of his body. He wasn't the only one to. The man holding the white lance, KSE, Time Turbulence, Beaumarchais, and Astrologer couldn't move for the life of them. No matter how hard they thrashed, they couldn't move an inch. Zion kept his spear tightly at hand, not letting Shaltier's lance go any further. The sheer pressure that built up made the metal start to loudly creak. Is that from my weapon or the monster's? Zion thought. It doesn't matter. Care needs a few more seconds left to activate it. I'll just need to hold out, he thought, keeping his stance firm. The seconds needed for Care to use Downfall of Castle and Country quickly passed as Shaltier was hit by the mind-controlling spell. What is this? Shaltier thought, shocked by the situation. It felt as if her mind was being consumed by an unknown force. Something is wrong, she thought. Is this mind control? She wondered. It was impossible for Shaltier to get brainwashed considering her immunity to mind control magic. Shaltier grit her teeth, trying to fight the corroding influence with Herculean effort. Seeing that the monster was hit with the brainwashing spell, Zion stepped back. However, he still kept his caution at an all-time high. As a last-ditch effort to break free from the unknown mind control spell, Shaltier did the only thing she could before succumbing to her fate. The vampire, using her class skill, created a purifying javelin. A gigantic lance that dwarfed her and the scripture captain's weapon. The violent yellow spear crackled in the air. Its sheer pressure made the members of the black scripture sweat. How could something so holy be created by such an unholy creature? They all thought. With all her might, Shaltier threw the holy javelin towards Care in an attempt to stop herself from being brainwashed. Cedran jumped between the monster and Care with his shield primed to protect his comrade. Sadly, it was to no avail. Shaltier's javelin pierced through both the warrior and the old woman. The last thing Shaltier could remember was seeing the pair cough out tremendous amounts of blood. Shaltier's hideous form reverted back to her normal and more elegant form. However, her face showed no emotion, just like an emotionless doll. Shit! Divine chant, use your healing magic on Cedran and Care, Zion said urgently. Some of the other frozen members, still in effect by Shaltier's mass hold species, could only frown at their friends' injuries. Yes, Zion. Divine chant said instantly, rushing to the aid of her wounded friends. Light healing, heavy recover. The lady in white robes said urgently. Her hands glowed a light and warm green as she cast the healing spells. Though the spells worked to some extent and relieved both members' pain, albeit by a little, along with them stopping the urge to cough out blood, it was no use. The wounds were too great to heal. Shit, we're going to need more healers to close those wounds, Divine Chant muttered. After a few moments, the other members were finally able to move their joints and muscles. Care, Astrologer shouted as tears formed in her eyes. She went to examine the wound of the person who acted as a mother to her. She hoped the wound was light. However, with what Divine Chant said, along with the weapon the vampire used, she knew in her heart Care wasn't going to live much longer. Some of the other members rushed to Cedran's side, worried about their friend. Even the calm and collected KSE ran to his friend. Holy shit! Tenho exclaimed, mortified by his colleague's wound. Not only was his shield shattered, but a massive hole formed on his upper abdomen. It was the same for Care. Only, it was less serious as she was hit last. Hey, stay with us. Time Turbulence shouted at Cedran, shaking his shoulders in an attempt to wake the man up. I'll be, this fucking hurts. I'm good. Cedran muttered under his breath, too weak to speak properly. The captain sighed in relief that the fight was over. Anymore. I'm not sure that my weapon would have lasted. What's the material made in that thing anyway? Zion thought, carefully eyeing the still monster. What the hell do we do, boss? This ain't no dragon lord, that's for sure. The old man holding his axe said. Well, it should be under our control, right? Beaumarchais replied, walking towards the monster, relaxed that it wasn't attacking anymore. It wasn't until Beaumarchais got too close that Shaltier, Spewit lance at hand, dashed towards the unknowing man. Beaumarchais? No, Astrologer screamed, trying to warn her friend about the incoming danger. However, it was too late. Shaltier's lance impaled the chain-wielding man through the stomach. Shaltier, as quickly as she attacked, jumped back to her original place, reverting to her emotionless form. Beaumarchais looked down to see what damage was done. His organs were falling out of his stomach like noodles. His intestines, lungs, stomach all fell out of the hole created by the lance. Blood gushed out of the wound, pooling around his boots. Then, Beaumarchais fell to his knees as his face planted to the floor. The man was dead, unable to stand due to the loss of organs and blood. Shit. Time Turbulence shouted in surprise. Yet another one of his companions had perished to the fiend. Stay back, guys. It's not worth it. The captain said, sighing at the end. We can't finish the mind control, huh, Captain? KSE asked. No, Zion shook his head. Care and Cedran have suffered fatal wounds along with the death of Beaumarchais. It's best if we fall back and leave the vampire's mind control incomplete. Zion gave his thoughts with every other member of the scripture agreeing with the statement. A few of the members went to Cedran and Care to support them while walking. Divine Chant was behind the two casting healing magic on the way to relieve pain. It wasn't until the group walked a couple of meters that a mysterious voice made them stop in their tracks. Well, what do we have here? Said the ominous voice. Instantly, the black scripture members armed themselves, prepared for another attack. Who the fuck is out there? I'll hoop yo ass. The man with the white lance exclaimed. My, that was rather impolite, wouldn't you say? Said the mysterious being who stepped out of the dark vegetation. The being's tone was oddly polite and well-spoken like a noble. Normally, it wouldn't be a problem. However, for some reason, the being's tone made each scripture member's skin crawl. The unknown figure's clothes blended in with their dark surroundings. A majestic cape in all black covered him from shoulder to the ground. However, there were some minor patches of gray sewed onto the robe here and there. Most likely a makeshift patch to fix some holes of varying sizes. The cape was slightly open, giving view to what was behind. The shirt and pants, which also looked expensive, were black. The cape and sleeves were lined with black feathers. The sleeves also sagged at the end, creating an oval-like shape. However, what stood out wasn't the expensive robe nor toe fat, but the mask. The mask resembled that of a bird with its beak around 50 centimeters long. The area around the eye sockets had a black trim. But the eyes, those ominous glowing white eyes, they were both hypnotic yet horrifying. Both eerie yet calm. The scripture members didn't know how to feel. How could someone like that not be detected? Zion thought, gripping his spear again. It's, why you? Astrologer couldn't help but mutter. She couldn't forget what Citronides looked like. The person who gave her nightmares ever since the disappearance of the sunlight scripture. Who? KSE asked Astrologer. Citronides. Astrologer meekly said. Oh, Citronides said. Astrologer couldn't tell if the man in front of him was either surprised or amused. You know of me? The plague doctor asked. The sunlight's scripture. She muttered. So this is one of the beings that took down Negun. Zion eyed the mysterious man carefully. While some stayed cautious, other members' eyes widened with disbelief and shock. The sunlight scripture. The ones that were killing innocent humans in the name of those 6 great dumbasses. Citronides said, taunting the group in front of him. It was successful as the old man wielding the axe dashed towards Citronides. Jelmud, stand down. Zion tried to order his friend. Sadly, his order went of deaf ears of the old man. How dare you mock the name of the 6GRE? The old man didn't even get to finish his sentence. Corrosion. Citronides muttered under his breath. The palms of his hands glowed an ominous dark green as Jelmud felt his entire body start to sting. It was bearable for the first second. However, the pain that followed only worsened. Ah! Jelmud screamed at the top of his lungs. It felt like every part of his body was bit by fire ants. No, it felt even worse. Something akin to a red-hot needle that pierced both every millimeter externally and internally. Make it stop, please. Make it Stuadesh. He tried to scream more, but his vocal cords didn't allow that. Not because he was tired or they were sore, but because they weren't there at all. His vocal cords dissolved into a black-like tar that trickled down his esophagus. Jelmud frantically looked all over his body and was horrified by what he saw. He was melting. His skin slowly turned from its typical color to a hideous, gooey, black tar. He fell to the ground, unable to stand properly. His feet already dissolved into a black puddle that pooled under him. His skin melted, muscles melted, organs then bones melted. After all that, Jelmud was no more. He was reduced to a pile of black tar that pooled where his body used to be. So did his magical artifacts and weapon turn into the tar-like material. A great and honest man, a comrade, and the unofficial uncle, reduced to nothing in a matter of a few seconds. At least that is taken care of. Citronides stated before looking at the shocked faces of the scripture. Astrologer silently cried and shook out of fear. Time turbulence let out a tear for the fallen comrade. Zion grit his teeth out of frustration, unable to be the competent leader he's supposed to be. Now, where were we? I remember. Citronides said. The members couldn't tell if his tone was filled with mockery or was simply getting back to what he was saying. Even the smartest among the group couldn't predict Citronides's next move. What do you want? The white-robed woman said. Her voice filled with fear and hesitation after witnessing such atrocious actions and being unable to do anything about it. Straight to the point, I like that. What I want is simple, for most of you to die, Citronides said. Though blunt, the tone he said the sentence in was polite. However, that politeness both agitated the members and made them scared. That is total bullshit. We're not going to let this thing trample all over us, right? Exclaimed the lance-wielding man. We should at least kill the man quickly while getting back to base to heal Cedran and care. Tenho added his thoughts. While KSE and Zion said nothing, they were thinking about possible options. Ren is right, we should kill this parasite in front of us so we can go back to base with no issues, said a man with magnificent black robes. If you're so confident in your abilities, Citronides took a few steps forwards, coming out of the dark shadows more. Why don't you fight me? The plague doctor taunted. The few that wanted to fight turned to their leader with glaring eyes. Though reluctantly, Zion gave a slight nod of approval. There are too many variables. It's better to get rid of this person now. With how dangerous Astrologer thinks he is, it is better safe than sorry. Zion concluded. This is for Jelmud. Fucker. Ren screamed at the top of his lungs, fueled by his anger. Magical weapon enchantment? Sharpness? Ability boost? He exclaimed, stacking martial art after martial art. As Ren charged towards the plague doctor, who stood still, the man in black robes chanted a spell. Penetrate, maximize magic, dark fire. The man in dark robes exclaimed. His palm lit up with a mix of red and black as a dark ball of fire shot towards the plague doctor. How pitiful, really, Citronides said with disappointment. I thought more of the black scripture. Citrinides ignored the magic shot at him and focused on Ren, who was closing in on him. The white lance, now glowing a warm yet dangerous light, aimed for Citrinides's neck. Grand power strike. Ren unleashed another martial art, bolstering the effective damage his weapon would do. Silent magic, miasma. Body of effulgent Heliodor. Citrinides said in a low voice. The enchanted and strengthened magic lance reached its target, slashing through Citrinides's neck. Ren smiled wickedly before feeling a sharp pain in his stomach. What? But I cut right through his neck? How is his head not decapitated? Ren thought, before falling to the floor. The empowered magic shot that the third seat cast towards Citrinides was absorbed by a purple shield that surrounded his entire being. He nullified my 4th tier magic without batting an eye. What monster is this? The third seat internally freaked out. Ren's death was anticlimactic and a lot less painful compared to Jelmud's. Though his stomach felt like it was going to explode and he choked on the foam that came out of his mouth, he didn't melt into a pool of tar. Tenho, who was stacking martial arts, stopped what he was doing as his hands shook with fear. Ren is dead. He was perfectly fine before. The monster didn't even cast an offensive spell. Maybe I shouldn't attack, he reasoned, staying back from the fight just like KSE and Zion. Screw this. Time Turbulence exclaimed, fed up with all his colleagues slowly dying in front of him. Over magic, time deceleration. Time Turbulence gathered most of his mana in the body before channeling it into one of his most powerful spells. The world around Time Turbulence slowed down to an immense degree. He turned to see his friends, who were unmoving. Well, they were moving just really slowly. Compared to Time Turbulence, you could say that they were frozen in time. Time to kill this fucker. Heh, a time pun. Time Turbulence thought. Time magic? How interesting. Citrinides said. His voice clearly caught the short man off guard, draining all the color in his face. What? How? You're supposed to be unmoving, still. Time Turbulence shouted in shock and surprise. I have magical artifacts that nullify time magic for me. Besides, this isn't even true 10th tier magic. Citrinides said with clear disappointment. Wadesh, before the man could argue any further, Citrinides raised a hand. Sorry to interrupt. However, things are getting boring for me. I'll just kill you, another person, and finish off those dying two behind you. Citrinides said, his voice echoing throughout the area, making Time Turbulence sweat bullets. Twin magic, implosion, twin magic, acid arrow. It all happened at the same time. Both Time Turbulence and Divine Chant imploded in on themselves. It was like their organs and bones collapsed in on themselves and exploded, covering the green grass red with blood and organs. The two acid arrows went directly for the heads of the dying Cedran and Care, killing them instantly and painlessly. With the death of Time Turbulence, his magic ceased to work, speeding back time to its original state. The members closest to Divine Chant jumped and screamed in fear. One moment, she was there. The next moment, her guts covered the ground and blood covered their clothes. Astrologer, who was silently crying, now let out loud sobs of pain and misery. What happened? Zion could only think. This man, we stand no chance. We were caught off guard. He concluded. To take so many of us, so many of humanity's greatest warriors on at once, what a monster. Though not showing it on his face, Zion felt true fear. We need to leave, he said. His voice quivered in fear. He couldn't help it. But boss, we can't just leave. This Citrinides will chase us. KSE whispered loudly, not wanting to back down and willing to avenge his friends' deaths. No, we need to retreat. We were caught off guard and lost too many men. Zion firmly stated. No worries. Before Time Turbulence died, I only said that I would only kill him and one other person. Those two behind you were bound to die anyway. I gave them the mercy of death. Citrinides said. You monster. Astrologer shouted, furious at the man who killed so many of her allies. Not quite, the plague doctor rebuked. Now, I would leave you be. However, you still have something that I want. Citrinides stated. What would that be? Zion said firmly. Citrinides pointed to the dead woman, who was being held by Astrologer. The dress. The plague doctor replied. One of the most powerful treasures of the theocracy. Tenho asked with half shock and half anger. Interesting. He said one of. Does that mean the theocracy has other world items? This wasn't mentioned in the plot. Citrinides thought, curious to what other treasures the theocracy had. The cardinals would not be pleased. Not one bit. Zion thought really hard about the situation. Just the dress. Zion asked with caution. Why you can't be serious, Captain. The third seat gasped. That is one of the prized treasures of the great gods. Of Sirs Hannah? We can't just give it to an outsider. He rebuked with fury. Yes, just the dress. Citrinides reaffirmed. This made the captain think even more. Either give up the dress to the unknown and powerful outsider, refuse and have our numbers dwindle even more, or run and hope for the best. Zion bit his lip to the point of bleeding. The other Black Scripture members gave their thoughts on the matter while the plague doctor patiently waited. Their thoughts were all valid, both with pros and cons. However, Zion needed to make a decision. He wasn't sure if the monster in front of him would suddenly change his mind if he took too long. Astrologer, hand over the item, he said with clear sadness and regret in his voice. Bulletin dash god damn it, do it now. We have lost enough today. Zion shouted back, letting all his frustration and anger out. The members flinched. It was uncommon, nay, it was very rare to see the dutiful captain act in such a manner. But, with the situation in front of them, they understood what type of pressure Zion was under. Astrologer was hesitant. But with the looming fear of Citronides along with the outburst of her captain, she took off the dress from the dead woman and walked up to the plague doctor. Her legs were like jello, shaking with every step. But, she handed the dress to Citronides at the end. Downfall of castle and country. I must thank you for handing it over with minimal effort, Citronides said, slightly bowing due to his politeness. But for both our sakes, I suggest you should take those bodies with you and their artifacts, Citronides added, holding the dress in his hand. Damn, this dress looked simple in the anime. But actually, holding it? It looks like it's worth millions in USD, Citronides thought. That reminds me, I should make up a story on how I got the world item. Considering my mysterious nature, that shouldn't be a problem. Besides, Ins should still be a salaryman under all those bones. He should be easy to fool. However, I should be wary of Demiurge. Anyways, my job here is done. I'll be leaving the rest of you alone, for now at least, Citronides said before vanishing into the vegetation behind him. The remaining members tried to use analyzing magic but couldn't find him anywhere. Citronides left them to their own devices. Fuck. Tenho couldn't help but shout in frustration and jump on the ground. How many did we lose? Cedran, Care, Gelmud, Ren, Turbulence and Divine Chant? That's half our scripture along with Care? 7 deaths in total, Tenho exclaimed, letting out tears behind his mask. I can't believe you gave this. Citronides' downfall of castle and country. KSE said to Zion. I had no other choice. It was either the item or our lives. We're still needed in the theocracy and to push back the elves in the elven front. Zion said. I'm such a fucking incompetent leader. I didn't even try and fight Citronides. I sent my men, my friends to die. Fuck. Zion tried to keep a strong and calm mind, but failed. He blamed himself for the deaths of his friends tonight. Let's go home. Time skip. Hours. Scene change. Well, how was the mission, Zion? Said a girl who was solving a multicolored cube. She wore a schoolgirl outfit covered in magical artifacts. Her hair was shoulder length and divided into 2 colors, black and white. So too were her heterochromia eyes. We encountered a vampire. Cedran and Care were badly injured while Beaumarchais lost his life. Zion said with sadness. Oh, was this Vampidesh the vampire was a girl? Zion stated, making Zeshi frown. That isn't the only bit of news. There was another person. He went by Citronides. Zion said. Citronides? Isn't that one of the names astrologer mentioned? Zeshi thought. And is this Citronides strong? Zeshi asked. She put down the Rubik's Cube and started to rub her belly in excitement. This is where Zion bit his lip. While he respected Zeshi for being the theocracy's ace, she was a wild card. If he mentioned how strong Citronides really is, Zeshi would immediately leave the theocracy and search the ends of the earth for the mysterious man. I'm not sure. However, he did have powerful magic that astrologer couldn't recognize nor measure. Gelmud, Ren, Turbulence and Divine Chant lost their lives to his magic, Zion concluded. In the end, he gave a half-truth. The best type of lie. The half-elf suddenly felt excitement as she let out a mischievous smile. To kill so many members in a fight. I'm not sure how strong this Citronides is. However, if he can best me, I must find him and make him impregnate me, Zeshi concluded. He also took one of the sacred treasures, Zion added, sighing at the end. Downfall of castle and country, Zeshi asked curiously. Zion nodded once, before looking away, too ashamed for letting an enemy possess one of the country's sacred treasures. That does suck, Zeshi replied, picking up her Rubik's Cube again. However, if this Citronides does beat me, I don't care if he burns the item to cinders. I just want his seed and for him to raise a family with me, the half-elf said internally. The sheer thought of being defeated and courting her future husband made her underpants wet. How did the cardinals react? To lose one of the great treasures? Zeshi asked. She was curious about the expressions shown by the men. Of course, they were not pleased. With half the scripture dead, it only fanned the flames. Thankfully, we have reserves for the scripture and equally powerful godkins, Zion replied. Though not as skilled, they have the potential. With just some training, we'll be back to our main strength in a matter of months, Zion concluded. Well, thank you for the info, Zion, Zeshi said, trying to solve the cube. Still can't complete the whole thing, Zion asked. Sadly, I haven't. The best I've gotten is completing 2 sides, Zeshi said with a hint of frustration. Within her entire lifespan, she wasn't able to solve the thing no matter how hard she tried. Don't stress yourself too much, Zion said, trying to cheer up the girl. There have been very few within the 600 years of the theocracy's history that have been able to solve it. It is a divine test of willpower created by the Six themselves, Zion added. That's easy for you to say considering you can solve the thing easily, she retorted. No shit. That's because you're focusing on only solving one side at a time. Zion refrained from laughing at Zeshi's struggles. Anyways, I best be going. I do need to train our new black scripture members, Zion concluded. Take care, I guess, Zeshi muttered, focusing on the troubling task ahead of her. Zion walked out of the vault the half-elf was guarding, leaving the girl to her own devices. Oh, how I can't wait to meet you, Citronides. I do hope you can defeat me. Chapter 10, When an Alchemist Fights a Vampire. Citrinidas's POV. After culling half the members of the Black Scripture, I stayed hidden using perfect unknowable to watch them leave the premises without detecting me. I didn't have to wait long. They gathered the dead bodies along with their weak and uninteresting artifacts and retreated to the theocracy. After the group left, I came out of the shadows as the spell neared its duration limit. I put away the glorious world item I held in my hand in my inventory. Before leaving, I took one last look towards Shaltir, who witnessed the ordeal with dull and lifeless eyes. I don't know how to explain it in words. However, a part of me didn't want to leave her in such a state. That must be the NPC side of me caring for the denizens of Nazareth. I concluded. I could have left the premise and told Ins about Shaltir's brainwashed state tomorrow, but I didn't. I kept on looking at the still vampire. Should I try and fight Shaltir? I thought. The idea just popped into my head from nowhere. Of course, there was no need for me to fight her. Fighting Shaltir, an NPC designed to kill with my alchemic build, is frankly quite stupid. However, if I were a real NPC, it would make some sense if I tested the parameters of my colleague's brainwashed state or tried to snap her out of it entirely. Testing the magic I've learned wouldn't be a bad idea either. It would be helpful to experience a real fight so I get used to combat and witness my limits. The idea was quite tempting. Once Shaltir detects any attack thrown her way, she'll aim straight for my head. I tapped my foot on the ground, thinking about what to do next. There are no downsides to fighting her. Except maybe dying. Dying is bad. But I could always escape the area before anything becomes too dangerous. I could give it a shot. Besides, I'm quite excited to test out new magic. However, there is the small issue of Platinum Dragon Lord fighting Shaltir just before she fights Ins tomorrow. I'm not too sure if my battle affects his battle. Though in canon, the Dragon Lord attacks her once and runs away. He'd most likely do the same in this timeline. Screw it. I'll have a quick fight with Shaltir and test out my magic. I do have the perfect test dummy right here. Besides, I do need a cover story to tell the other floor guardians. It wouldn't really make sense for me to not try and measure her brainwashed state. I concluded. A/N, I just wanted to try and write a fight scene XD. Give me your thoughts after reading. Deciding to have a quick skirmish and test out my skills, I prepared myself for the battle. Just like Ins did in the show, I started to cast buffing spells to increase my odds of survival. This was very important because my build wasn't min-maxed for PvP. It was built for alchemy. That doesn't mean I have no strong or alternative way of attacking others. Maybe I don't compare to Sabas, Shaltir, Cositus, or my sister Albedo in combat. But I do have the upper hand when it comes to fighting with poison-related magic and powerful debuffs. I'm not going to be like Ins in the show and destroy a huge portion of the forest. I'm not equipped enough for a fight on that level. I'm just going in with the gear I have at hand. Taking into account all the variables, I'd probably be able to hold out for a couple of minutes before things get too dangerous or out of control. Body of Effulgent Beryl. Body of Effulgent Aquamarine. False data, life. False data, mana. Blessing of Aristotle. Veil of Mystery. Quick March. Haste. Greater Hardening. Penetrate Up. Unholy Aura. Alchemic Veins. I cast a few of the more useful buffing spells in my arsenal along with a few more just to be safe. I then took out a few potions from my inventory that increase certain stats and damage along with casting other trap-related spells in the area. That should be fine for now. Besides, it's not like I want to kill Shaltir. That's too much for me to handle. At least for now. I'll leave Ins to deal with the mess. I just want to test out some magic while I have the perfect test dummy. I thought. Let's hope that this works. I said to myself before casting a powerful magic spell onto Shaltir. I raised my hand into the air before chanting the incantation. Triplet Maximize Magic, Corrosive Bombardment. Multiple incantations colored a dark scary green surrounded Shaltir as I cast the powerful 10th tier spell. The green incantations suddenly glowed. The dark forest quickly lit up like a light show for anyone that watched in the distance. Beams of powerful energy that emanated a green light shot out of the magic circles with ferocity as they exploded when getting into contact with Shaltir. While not doing as much damage to the surrounding forest compared to Fallen Down, the area did look like it was freshly bombed. It reminded me of some of the missile strikes I saw in the Russo-Ukrainian war from my previous life. It also reminded me of war footage I saw of the United States fighting in the Middle East. Targeting Shaltir wasn't the only thing corrosive bombardment did. Each impact released a small yet deadly pool of acid, eliminating any weak traces of life in the area and inflicting a deadly corrosion effect on anyone left alive. With the number of strikes that hit Shaltir, the fumes of acid covered a large portion of the area in a green haze. From the distance I was from, I heard faint coughing and the sound of throwing up. Quickly, I saw a figure fly into the air and away from the acidic mist. It was Shaltir Bloodfallen, now in her crimson-red armor. Angel wings sprouted from her back as they flapped in the sky. The vampire's blood-red armor had traces of corrosion on some areas. I also noticed blood trickling down her mouth, ears, eyes, and nose. I thought that Shaltir would laugh or instantly attack me, but that wasn't the case. She looked at me from the sky with confusion littered across her face. "Cit. Citrinitas," she muttered in confusion. Why are you here, darling?" she asked. "You're not in the right state of mind, Shaltir. Snap out of it," I said, getting into character. Of course, I knew that wouldn't work. Mere talking couldn't get rid of the world item's effects. Meh, it's not like she'll remember anything once she's revived, I thought. The vampire hesitated. I was ordered to attack anyone who had ill intent. But, why am I attacking you? She asked. Suddenly, Shaltair's face grew angry. It was like a switch changed her personality. This is quite interesting. Her lore and the effect of the world item are conflicting with each other, I concluded. No matter, I must follow my orders. There are no exceptions, she said, gripping her spewit lance tightly. I didn't expect Shaltair to be so fast. She covered 3/4 the distance between her and myself almost instantly. Keep in mind we were roughly 100 meters apart. I can't let her get so close to me. I must keep my distance if I want to survive, I thought, conjuring my inventory to my right instantly. I took out a glass vial called Splash Potion of Swiftness before throwing it at the floor. The potion took effect immediately as I jumped backwards with immense speed, dodging Shaltair's attack. Triplet Maximize Magic, Forced Deceleration, Widen Magic, Malignant Force. I cast 2 potent spells. One which slowed the acceleration of the incoming Shaltair while the other was a gas that consumed the space between myself and Shaltair. While both were strong in their own regard, using both in effect was a dangerous combination. While Forced Deceleration slowed the user to a heavy degree, Malignant Force was different. At a base level, Malignant Force acted like nuclear blast. Malignant Force didn't carry that destructiveness and destroyed the area between the user and enemy. Hell, at a base level, Malignant Force did no damage at all. However, Malignant Force makes up for the lack of destruction with pure debuffs. Corrosion, blindness, deafness, decreased damage output, weakened defenses. Any debuff you could think of, Malignant Force had. In combination with Forced Deceleration, the longer you stay in the gas, the worse the effects get. Fuck, Shaltair thought. She tried her best to escape the deadly gas. However, with how heavy she felt due to Forced Deceleration, she was forced to stay in the gas longer than expected. Shaltair could already feel the minimal effects. Her head felt light and she found it harder to see. Her regeneration skill tried to keep up with the flesh-eating acid but it only prolonged its effects. Well played, darling. But, if you think that this combo of yours will do anything, you're dead wrong. Purify. Shaltair's entire body glowed a white light as she flew out of the deadly gas. She nullified all my debuffs? Probably due to her cleric class. However, there must be some sort of limit to how many of those she can cast, I thought, taking note of the spell for the future. Darling, you know you shouldn't hurt your beloved like that, right? You need to be punished. Resist Break, Triplet Maximize Magic, Vermilion Nova. I suddenly felt some of my magic defenses deplete as Shaltair cast a powerful 9th tier spell. Protection Energy, Fire. I shouted in a hurry as my eyes widened. I didn't think Shaltair would cast a spell of such power so early on. The area surrounding me was suddenly consumed by an intense fire that shot up in a column of flames. Every part of my body felt like I was in boiling water. Even with my previous buffing spells, powerful items and a maxed out resistance bar, I still felt that much pain. I didn't have any way of escaping the spell due to the properties of Vermilion Nova. I could only endure the pain with all my current resistances. I didn't shout in agony as I took out a few splash potions to restore my depleting health. So that's what pain feels like, huh? I thought. Are you proud of my magic, Citronitas? I'm only this powerful because of you. No matter, you must die, Shaltair said, raising her hand into the air. Shaltair then generated a huge lance that glowed blue. This skill is called Purifying Lance. She said as she hovered in the air. Quite the unique skill for someone like you to possess, I replied with politeness. With a thrust, she threw the lance towards my body at a breakneck speed. I immediately felt its potent holy energy emanating from the object as it flew towards me. Considering my -500 negative karma, if such a spell hit me, I would be gravely injured. Beelzebub. I said under my mask. The dangerous holy object that was about to pierce my heart was consumed by a black void of nothingness. The skill, which I used on Dominion Authority, worked similarly to Rimuru's Gluttony from Tensura. I was able to consume projectiles and summons or beings up to a certain degree. When consuming something, I'm able to regenerate a percentage of HP or MP depending on the level and amount of things I consumed. If my HP was full, I got more MP and vice versa. I was able to restore most of my lost HP from Shaltair's previous attack. However, the vampire took advantage of my spell's casting duration and dashed towards me. With her spewit lance at hand, she thrusted the weapon at lightning speeds towards my body. I was only able to dodge so many of her attacks due to previous buffs. But, she was able to get a hit or two on me, slightly draining my HP in a physical fight. I stand no chance. I couldn't even escape Estetha's clutches for goodness sake. I need to do something to stop Shaltair from getting so close. A few more well-aimed hits and I'm crippled, I concluded, planning to gain distance from her. Penetrate Maximize Magic, Withering Wave. I muttered. I took advantage of how close Shaltair was to me by casting one of the few offensive close-ranged spells I have. Thankfully, the spell was on the more powerful side as it was a 10th tier spell. A wave of translucent purple energy hit Shaltair at point-blank range. I was already able to see the effects of the spell. Shaltair's armor and exposed areas of flesh slowly started to wither away. However, she didn't stop attacking me to heal her wounds. Her Purify skill still must be on cooldown for removing such potent debuffs from earlier, I thought. Her movements slowed down as I saw her eyes frantically move in all directions. This is good. My speed buffs are nearing their end. I can recuperate from there, I concluded, teleporting meters away from Shaltir using greater teleportation. You don't have to do this, Shaltir, I stated. I hack. Shaltir continued to cough a fountain of blood as I saw her body slightly spasm. Silent magic, life essence. I was able to see Shaltir's current effects from the useful spell. Holy shit, Withering Wave did that much damage. It didn't say it would do that in the spell description. Shitty devs indeed, I thought. The vampire was missing a quarter of her health. But, due to the powerful corrosion attribute affecting her, that number would only go down by the second. Greater lethal. Shaltir muttered under her heavy breaths. Never mind. All that lost health and sizzling flesh was restored. Fucking shitty devs. On a positive note, her armor wasn't repaired. I thought. I must continue to attack you, darling. Shaltir said with clear regret and sadness. Fighting me will be considered a betrayal to Nazarick. You know that, don't you? I asked. Shaltir looked away from my gaze. I don't know why I'm doing this. She muttered silently as a tear fell down her cheek. You know that I will have to inform Lord Inns about this, I stated. Lord Inns. Shaltir repeated my words with confusion. Indeed. Compared to you, I stand no chance. I must tactically retreat to drop off the item I took and inform the others, I said. I've tested enough of some spells. I at least know what my more powerful ones do, I thought. By the time the Supreme One revives you, you'll be back to normal. Though, you won't remember any of this. I reassured the girl as I cast a gate spell back to my personal chambers. The spell closed right after I entered. Shaltir didn't even try to chase me. I guess that's a good thing, I thought, taking my mask off and putting it on the desk next to me. Inns won't find out about Shaltir's brainwash in 2 days. Tomorrow is when the graveyard incident happens in Irantal, which means that's where Clementine dies. If I recall, Inns did mention her corpse was missing. I thought, tapping my foot on the expensive wooden flooring. I should be able to think of a story to tell Inns about why I have a world item with me about the Shaltir is brainwashed ordeal by tomorrow. Preferably after he completes his quest in the graveyard of Irantal. Or, maybe I should give him a visit while he's at the graveyard. I shrugged my shoulders. I'll probably think of a plan once I wake up. It is pretty late and I haven't slept for days, I thought. What should I do with the lady anyways? I have a few options for her. I'm thinking too much. I moved those thoughts out of my head before going to bed not long after. Time skip, one day. Momon's POV. Why are you standing there? Yeah, give up, said the woman in front of me. She played with her stilettos by chucking them into the air. Her posture was uncaring and playful as if she were taunting me. In all honesty, it was quite pathetic. I gave Narberl her orders. I thought I should finish up as well, I said. My adventurer armor muffled my voice slightly. But, it didn't really matter. You serious, bastard? The blonde questioned, still playing with her weapons. You don't even have any martial arts. Your stance was all over the place and you couldn't swing a sword properly. You really think you can beat me? Her voice was filled with arrogance. There's a limit to how much you piss me off, she exclaimed. This is so pitiful, I thought. All bark and no bite. Let's get this over with, I stated. At least we agree on something. Stride of Wind, greater evasion, ability boost, greater ability boost. With each martial art, she got lower and lower into her stance. Just like a spring ready to bounce and release its tension. She is quite quick for someone of her level, I thought, analyzing her movements. Die. Clementine exclaimed with hate and fury. She stabbed one of her stilettos into my right eye socket and then twisted it. As she did, a shock of lightning surrounded and tried to fry my undead body. I'm not done yet. She pulled out her second stiletto, doing the same thing to my other socket and turning it. A wave of fire consumed my entire body. Alas, it did nothing. These weapons weren't a thing in Yggdrasil. I should send them to Citronidas. He might like them, I thought. Fed up by her futile attempt, I grabbed her by the waist, locking her in place and making her unable to escape. No way. Impossible? How are you not dead? Clementine said in shock. I guess there's no hiding my identity, I said, using magic to reveal my true form. Undead? Elder Lich? She asked. I guess you're right. So how was it? Fighting a magic caster who only used swords. I taunted her. Don't underestimate me, she exclaimed. Really? But I didn't even use any of my magic on you. You were so weak I had to handicap myself to such a low level. In the end, you still lost, I said. Watching the despair on her face was really a sight to see. Fuck, you've got to be joking, she said. I ignored her pleas. Well, let's get started, I said, tightening my iron grip on her. This can't be happening. No way, bastard, Clementine said as I continued to squeeze. If you were weaker, I would have killed you with this. I gestured to the small sword in my hand. The symbol for the Swords of Darkness. The group was really a bunch of people I admired and cared for, even if I knew them for such a small amount of time. In honesty, their group dynamics reminded me of my friends and myself going on adventures with low-leveled equipment back in Yggdrasil. It pained me to hear about their deaths. Death by sword. Death by broken bones. Death by crushing. In the end, there is no difference. You die either way. Her cat-like eyes widened with fear. The metal of her armor started to creak a horrible sound and slowly fell off bit by bit. "Shit, you bastard!" she exclaimed, using her hands to attempt to smash my skull. She only damaged her hands in the process as they bruised up. "Don't flail so much," I calmly said. I squeezed harder as more adventurer tags from her armor fell to the floor. The lady started to gasp and gag. "You took time in killing them, didn't you? Isn't it fair if I do the same?" Clementine started to punch my head multiple times in succession, uncaring for the blood that spewed out of them. The fear of death overtook her senses. In a desperate attempt, she even tried to bite me. However, that only resulted in her teeth fracturing and falling off. Tears of blood had already gushed out of her eyes, nose, and ears. More pieces of armor fell to the ground as she kicked her legs with all the remaining energy she had. I kept on squeezing as she vomited blood and stomach acid all over my body. But I didn't care. I squeezed harder and harder. It was at this time that her internal organs came out of her mouth. She puked her stomach and intestines all over me. But I still didn't care. I kept on squeezing and squeezing. Her movements and flailing had ceased a while ago. Clementine was useless against the dance of death. I brought my other hand to her waist just to finish off the process. Finally, her spine snapped in half as I dropped her to the cold ground. "Clean dot," I muttered, clearing off all the blood and gore that she covered me in. "At least that's finally over," I thought. "Swords of Darkness has been avenged," I concluded. From behind me, I heard Hamsuk call out and run to my direction, only for there to be a loud thud and the muttering of Narbarrel. I turned to face my subordinate. "Narbarrel, I presume you've dealt with the task?" I asked. "It is as you say, Lord Inns. The skeleton dragons and the pest have been dispatched," Narbarrel informed, bowing after briefing me. "Good, good. I'm quite proud of you for completing your task dutifully," I said, bringing joy to the battlemaid's face. Narbarrel usually doesn't smile. I've remembered most NPCs' backgrounds and lore to honor their creators. The only other time she smiles is with Citronides, the unofficial ladies' man of Nazareth, if I recall. I thought, remembering a past life now long gone. If only I read Citronides' lore. I'm regretting it now because he's so fucking scary. I only know that he's mysterious and can be thinking of anything. Hell, he probably knows I'm a salary man, I thought. It does make me wonder what type of gag the boys added in the alchemist's lore. I remember Albert lost a bet with Lucifer and had to add he has a soft spot for cats in Demiurge's bio. Fun times. If I had a mouth, I would have smiled from the fond memories of my guildmates. Lordins, are there any issues? Narbarrel's talking snapped me back to reality. There is no issue at all. Thanks for ch. My reply was interrupted when a purple swirl appeared in front of me, Narbarrel and Hamsuk. Narbarrel got into a fighting position, ready for an attack. But she stopped when noticing who came out of the portal. "Lord Citronides?" she asked in confusion. A slight blush formed on her face which was only noticeable for a few seconds before disappearing. "Lordins and Narbarrel, it is a pleasure meeting you," Citronides said with his usual politeness. "Hello, Citronides." I waved my bony hand at the alchemist. Damn it, did I really just say, "Hello, Citronides" to the smart and mysterious plague doctor? Was that too casual? Considering his polite tone, my simple greet must have been rude. Pull yourself together, Suzuki. You're like a CEO of a powerful company? Act like you mean it. What brings you here? Did you change your mind about wanting to be an adventurer? I asked, not wanting the atmosphere to be awkward. From my peripheral vision, I saw Narbarrel slightly biting her lip. The girl really wanted Citronides to join her, huh? How does he handle so many thirsty women? I can't even handle albedo. No, I didn't want to join as my appearance would conflict with your plans, Citronides stated. Plans? What plans? However, something unforeseen has happened. The mere sentence was ambiguous and could have had many meanings. Unforeseen? Has Citronides found out about my identity even though we've had so little contact? Jesus, this man is dangerous, I thought. However, my emotional nullifier took effect, calming me down to a more reasonable degree. Unforeseen? Please, enlighten me about what you're talking about, I said, keeping my tone rich and proper, at least to the best of my abilities. This place isn't the best place to talk about the subject at hand. We must go back to Nazareth to safely discuss the topic at hand, Citronides informed me. I don't even know what we're talking about. But Citronides jumped in before I could speak. I was wondering what you would do with that body, he said, pointing at the corpse of the lady I just killed. Narbarrel looked at the corpse with soul-piercing eyes, but didn't say anything. Clementina's corpse? What would Citronides want that for? Maybe transmute her into a chimera? Did he want to investigate martial arts? I could only speculate the different possibilities Citronides could use the corpse for. I have no need for her corpse. I believe that her death was enough. But if you have a use for it that can benefit Nazareth, by all means, take it, I said, hoping to please my friend's most beloved creation. Citronides nodded, whisking away the corpse into an unknown second portal next to him. Please, if you'll follow me. We have some urgent things to discuss, Citronides said, slightly emphasizing the word urgent. I and Narbarrel nodded, following Citronides into the gate before it closed. Now that we're in Nazareth, what do you want to discuss? I asked curiously. Citronides created a mini portal that floated in the air, sticking his hand in it before pulling something out. Don't tell me, is that a world item? My jaws dropped. However, compared to Citrinidas's next spoken words, that shock could be considered nothing. Shaltier has been brainwashed. Time skip, hours, scene change. Clementine's POV. The last thing I could remember was dying. I felt unimaginable pain. A pain so brutal and unbearable I couldn't compare it to anything else. All other ways to pass on seemed childish compared to mine. Blood poured out of every orifice in my body. My organs, ruptured and crushed. My bones broke and shattered. The mere thought of that monster. It made my skin crawl. But, how was I thinking? I had to have died. No, I know I died. But, I suddenly woke up in a dark and mysterious place. My eyes slowly adjusted to the dark room as I was able to make out my surroundings. The room I was in seemed to be the size of an average room. However, the walls were anything but home-like. They were ancient as small patches of moss and vines were littered across them. The floor was no different too. A hard and stony surface that was made of the same material as the wall. The stone was cold, almost burning my bare skin as I lay naked and exposed. Of course, I tried to move but the chains on my neck and hands prevented me from doing that. I was about to call out, shout even when the metal door in front of me opened. 3 figures walked into the room I was situated in. The first one was a demon in an orange striped suit. The other 2 behind him, monsters from hell. AHH, you're finally awake. I'm truly glad, said the orange-suited demon. Where am I? Who are you? Silence. My voice suddenly disappeared. Let's cut to the chase. My name is Demiurge, and I believe you're in no space to negotiate. The demon said. Citrinidas has been kind enough to give you a second chance at life. Not only that, you've been given the special privilege to personally help Nazarek. These 2 demons behind me. Well, Demiurge gestured to the demons behind him. They stepped out from his shadow, revealing their exposed bodies. You shall help give birth to powerful Cambions. No, 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 this can't be happening. The demons stepped closer, towering over me. Please, anyone, help me.